Anthony Edward Tony Stark, a billionaire magnate, played a pivotal role as a founding member of the Avengers and served as the former CEO of Stark Industries. Recognized for his audacious yet ingenious approach to invention, Stark humorously dubbed himself a genius, billionaire, playboy, philanthropist. Accumulating vast wealth and wielding exceptional technical expertise, Stark emerged as one of the globe's most influential figures after the loss of his parents. For years, he indulged in a playboy lifestyle until a pivotal moment in Afghanistan, where he was kidnapped by the Ten Rings while showcasing Jericho missiles. Faced with a life-threatening situation, Stark ingeniously constructed an armored suit that allowed his escape from captivity. Upon his return, he continued to develop various suits to combat terrorists and confront adversaries such as Obadiah Stane, who betrayed him. Following his triumphant battle against Stane, Stark publicly disclosed his identity as Iron Man. Early life. Born on Friday, May 29, 1970 in Manhattan, New York City, Anthony Edward Tony Stark entered the world as the son of Howard and Maria Stark. His early life was marked by the conspicuous absence of his father, whom he later characterized as cold and calculating. Stark grappled with issues stemming from his strained relationship with Howard, who never expressed love or affection towards him. Despite his youth, Howard refrained from sharing his plans for Stark, creating a void in their connection. The constant praise for Captain America from Howard fueled Stark's resentment toward the super soldier. On one occasion, Stark accidentally drove a remote-control car into Howard's foot, resulting in a fit of rage from his father. Seeking solace, Stark expressed a desire to return to school to his butler, Edwin Jarvis, who empathetically acknowledged the complexities of father-son relationships. Stark's relationship with his mother, Maria, provided a contrasting source of love and nurturing during his formative years. Maria's gentle demeanor and piano playing were cherished by Stark. Early on, Stark showcased his prodigious intellect, designing his first circuit board at the age of 4 and constructing a V8 motorbike engine by the time he was almost 7. Despite his accomplishments, Stark was irked by the nanny who cared for him until the age of 14. His academic journey led him to Phillips Academy in Andover from 1977 until 1984, where he gained notoriety for hacking into the Pentagon on a dare during high school. Early admission to the Massachusetts Institute of Technology brought him into the company of James Rhodes, marking the beginning of a lifelong friendship. By the age of 16, Stark had clinched the 4th annual MIT Robot Design Award. Graduating summa cum laude from MIT at 17, Stark returned home and had a romantic encounter with a woman named Candace, losing his parents. In December of 1991, at the young age of 21, Tony Stark's parents, Howard and Maria, prepared for a brief Christmas holiday in the Bahamas, leaving Tony home alone. Despite Howard's skepticism about Tony's responsibility, a conversation unfolded just before their departure. Howard, finding Tony by the pool, tanning, urged him to take initiative in life, but Tony dismissed him, asserting that he had a plan. Edwin Jarvis reminded them of the impending departure, and as Howard left, Tony slipped off his raft into the pool. Tragically, the couple fell victim to an assassination by the Winter Soldier on Long Island, concealed by Hydra as a car crash, plunging Stark into grief and turmoil as he grappled with the unexpected tragedy. Standing before his parents' coffins, he remarked that their demise was not part of his plan. In the aftermath, Obadiah Stane assumed the role of interim CEO of Stark Industries for a few months, and later, Stark's long-standing family butler, Edwin Jarvis, also passed away. Company restoration. A few months later, still at the age of 21, Tony inherited Stark Industries from Obadiah Stane, making history as the youngest CEO of a Fortune 500 company. Constructing a personalized mansion, Stark developed an AI system named Just a Rather Very Intelligent System, or Jarvis, in tribute to Edward Jarvis, who had played a significant role in raising him. Subsequently, James Rhodes joined the United States Air Force, serving as the liaison between Stark Industries and the United States Armed Forces. This collaboration proved highly lucrative, earning Stark billions of dollars through military contracts. Under Stark's leadership, aided by Stane, Stark Industries rapidly flourished, emerging as one of the world's most advanced companies. The company pioneered groundbreaking weapons technology, appearing remarkably futuristic to observers. Creating demons. On the eve of the new millennium in 1999, Tony Stark, accompanied by his scientific partner Maya Hansen, participated in a science conference held in Bern, Switzerland. At the event, Stark became inebriated to the point where delivering his speech on integrated circuits proved challenging, prompting him to swiftly rejoin the festivities. Amid the celebrations, Stark encountered scientist Ho Yin-sen, who introduced him to Dr. Wu, though Stark dismissed them both. Navigating the hotel with his bodyguard Happy Hogan, Hansen, and a group of female attendees, Stark arrogantly avoided engaging with Aldrich Killian, a talented yet physically challenged scientist seeking financial support for the Advanced Idea Mechanics think tank. Seizing a moment alone in an elevator, Stark deliberately instructed the enthusiastic Killian to meet him on the rooftop to discuss collaboration with Stark Industries, fully intending not to show up as he preferred to continue spending time with Hansen. Returning to Hansen's hotel room, Stark explored her new research on the Extremis project, showing the potential to regrow human limbs with adequate funding. Stark marveled at the concept, although Hogan, less impressed, played with a nearby plant despite instructions to the contrary. Subsequently, Stark and Hansen proceeded to her bedroom where the flirtation continued, culminating in a passionate kiss. Nevertheless, Hogan unintentionally triggered a minor explosion by breaking a plant stem, inducing a momentary panic. Stark promptly dismissed Hogan and proceeded to spend the night with Hansen, leaving Killian stranded and embarrassed on the rooftop. Unaware of Killian's plight, Stark woke up the following morning while Hansen was engrossed in her work. Taking initiative, Stark finalized her formula to rectify the combustible glitch in Extremis before quietly departing and returning home, leaving Hansen behind. Testing weapons in Arizona. In 2009, Stark and James Rhodes attended a weapons demonstration at the Yuma Proving Ground, where Stark showcased the accelerated wave explosion capability known as AWE of his product. Pepper Potts provided the weapon's details to the generals, while Stark and Rhodes opted for a night out at the nightclub. Stark engaged with two companions, Celeste and Eloise, while Rhodes attempted to dissuade him from heading to Afghanistan for the Jericho demonstration. During a dance, Stark was assaulted by a man aggrieved over a past romantic encounter, but Rhodes successfully fended off the attacker. Asserting his confidence in heading to Afghanistan, Stark credited his friend for having his back. Right after, Stark, Rhodes, and the companions continued their celebration at his mansion. Final day of freedom. Following a comprehensive presentation highlighting Stark's illustrious past, James Rhodes was bestowed the honor of presenting the Apogee Award to Stark at Caesar's Palace in Las Vegas. Responding to a signal from Obadiah Stane indicating Stark's absence, Rhodes accepted the award on behalf of Stark. After the ceremony, Rhodes confronted Stark, who was engaged in gambling at the casino within Caesar's Palace, expressing his displeasure at Stark's non-attendance. Stark, in his characteristic arrogance, accepted the award but promptly passed it on to a man posing as Julius Caesar. As Stark prepared to depart the hotel with his entourage, Christine Everhart appeared, seeking an interview for Vanity Fair magazine. Enticed by Happy Hogan's description of Everhart as attractive, Stark agreed to the interview. He skillfully deflected her inquiries about the ethics of Stark Industries' weapons manufacturing with witty retorts. When questioned about morality, Stark justified the company's military dealings by invoking his father's contributions during World War II and emphasizing how military contracts funded significant scientific advancements. Subsequently, Stark shifted the conversation to a more personal tone, successfully seducing Everhart, and the two later found themselves at his mansion where they shared an intimate encounter. In the early hours of the morning, Stark left Everhart in his bed and was greeted by Jarvis, who escorted him home as he delved into work on one of his cars. Pepper Potts, Stark's assistant, later entered the workshop, reminding him about his impending trip to Afghanistan. Despite his tardiness, Stark remained nonchalant, confident that the Stark Industries private jet would wait for him. Potts raised several matters requiring his attention, including a Jackson Pollock he had bid on, an MIT commencement speech, and a form awaiting his signature. Complaining about being rushed, Stark discovered it was Potts' birthday, and she had already used his funds to buy herself a present, much to his amusement. After finishing his coffee, Stark eventually departed his mansion, heading to the Stark Industries aviation division, followed by his bodyguard Happy Hogan, who struggled to keep pace with Stark's fast driving. Arriving at the plane 3 hours behind schedule, Stark found Colonel James Rhodes still waiting, visibly annoyed at the prolonged delay. Unfazed, Stark boarded the plane, sitting next to Rhodes, who attempted to engage in business discussions between Stark Industries and the United States Armed Forces. Stark, however, was more interested in drinking and relaxing, much to Rhodes' continued irritation. Despite Rhodes' attempts to discuss work, Stark persuaded him to join in for a drink. Before long, both Stark and Rhodes were thoroughly intoxicated, transforming the plane into a makeshift party. While Rhodes reflected on his time in the United States Air Force, Stark diverted his attention to the air hostesses, who began undressing and dancing around a pole in the center of the plane, providing entertainment for the both of them. Presenting the Jericho. Upon arriving in Afghanistan, Stark received a warm welcome from military personnel as he prepared to unveil Stark Industries' latest weapon, the Jericho missile. Addressing the military spectators, Stark presented the missile's formidable capabilities, emphasizing its potency as a one-strike solution, a strategy he attributed to the successful practices of his father, Howard Stark. The missile was launched, earning Stark a round of applause from the audience. Following the triumphant demonstration, Stark indulged in a drink, remarking that the whiskey came complimentary with every Jericho missile order. As members of the United States Armed Forces celebrated the new deal, Obadiah Stane contacted Stark to inquire about the outcome. Stark assured Stane of an early Christmas. Boarding a convoy vehicle to depart, Stark assigned James Rhodes to another Humvee for their return journey to the military base. En route to the base, Stark, seated with his whiskey, engaged with 3 soldiers in an initially awkward silence that transitioned into attempts at small talk. Teasingly, Stark expressed surprise upon learning that the driver was a woman, fielding questions about his encounters with supermodels before being asked to partake in a selfie. Playfully posing for the photo, Stark mused about his love for peace while humorously cautioning against making gang signs, addressing the soldier named Jimmy. Becoming Iron Man. As Stark's convoy traversed Afghanistan en route to the United States Armed Forces base, a sudden insurgent attack disrupted their journey. The vehicle in front exploded, trapping Stark and his team. Witnessing soldiers being gunned down in front of him, Stark was filled with horror, and his ears rang out from the numerous explosions. Amid the chaos, he hurriedly exited the vehicle, seeking cover to call for help. While attempting to contact assistance on his phone, Stark found himself in a perilous situation, as one of Stark Industries' own missiles unexpectedly landed nearby. Frantically attempting to escape, Stark was too slow and the bomb detonated beside him. The resulting blast threw Stark backward, rendering him unconscious, with several shrapnel pieces embedded into his chest, dangerously close to his heart. In and out of consciousness, Stark experienced intense pain as an operation commenced to extract the shrapnel and save his life. Subsequently, Stark found himself in front of a camera, held captive by terrorists from the 10 Rings, who were reading a ransom note to an unknown audience. Stark, dismayed, could only watch as various guns were aimed directly at him. Overwhelmed, Stark lost consciousness again. Upon awakening later, Stark discovered Ho Yinsen in his cell within a cave, an electromagnet attached to his chest. Yinsen, connected to a car battery, clarified that the electromagnet prevented the shrapnel from reaching his heart. Yinsen reminisced about their meeting in Bern in 1999, a memory Stark was too intoxicated to recall. As Stark questioned their location, a banging on the door from the other side interrupted their conversation. Upon Yinsen's directive for Stark to stand, they encountered Abu Bakr, with Yinsen translating as Bakr welcomes Stark as the most significant mass murderer in the history of the United States of America. Bakr articulated his desire for Stark to reconstruct the Jericho missile for the 10 Rings, but Stark adamantly refused. In response to Stark's refusal, Bakr subjected him to repeated waterboarding as a form of torture. Subsequently, Stark was led outside of the cave, where Bakr showcased the 10 Rings' extensive arsenal of Stark Industries weapons, including guns and missiles deployed against the United States Armed Forces, an unsettling revelation for Stark. Continuing their conversation, Bakr informed Stark that all the necessary materials were available for him to build a Jericho missile. He promised Stark a return home upon completion. Although Stark reluctantly agreed to the task, he privately expressed skepticism to Yinsen, noting that Bakr would never allow him to leave. Yinsen affirmed this, and Bakar smiled knowingly. As Stark contemplated his dire circumstances by the fire, Yinsen joined him, explaining that the sight of the 10 rings wielding his weapons was Tony Stark's legacy. When Yinsen urged Stark to take action, Stark questioned the significance given his likely demise within a week. Yinsen countered that this made the upcoming week crucial for Stark. Building the first armor. Aware that their captors would likely not honor their agreement, Stark initiated the assigned work with Ho Yinsen, all while devising an escape plan from the 10 Rings base. Stark enlisted the help of Abu Bakar, utilizing Yinsen as translator to bring the necessary supplies into their cave, where he systematically disassembled various weapons. To enhance Stark's well-being, he and Yinsen collaborated on creating a miniature arc reactor, a scaled-down version of the power source developed by his father, Howard Stark, and Anton Vanko. While Stark immersed himself in technical work, Yinsen provided insights into the 10 Rings and their intentions. Upon successfully constructing the arc reactor, Stark informed Yinsen that he intended to use it not for his heart, but to power a larger device temporarily. Revealing his hidden plans and numerous blueprints, Stark showed Yinsen the design for an armored suit which would facilitate their escape from the cave and the 10 Rings base. Impressed and inspired, Yinsen assisted Stark in implanting the arc reactor inside his chest to energize the electromagnet shielding his heart. During breaks, Stark and Yinsen engaged in board games for entertainment. In one such session, Stark inquired about Yinsen's origin, learning about Galmira, the small town where Yinsen had a family waiting for him once freed. When the question was reciprocated, Stark admitted the absence of family awaiting him, prompting Yinsen to reflect on having everything yet feeling a sense of emptiness. Returning to their work, Stark and Yinsen dismantled various Stark Industries weapons, repurposing the components into plates ready to be incorporated into the armor once construction was complete. Nevertheless, Stark and Yinsen took great care to maintain an element of randomness in their work, ensuring that the 10 Rings remained oblivious to their deception until it was too late. Their routine was unexpectedly interrupted by Raza, the leader of the 10 Rings group, who urged Stark to relax and admired the arc reactor. Drawing parallels between Stark's work and the conquests of Genghis Khan, Raza, suspecting deception, had Yinsen restrained and threatened him with a red-hot coal until Stark intervened. Raza relented and instructed Stark to complete the Jericho missile by the following day. Fearing for their lives, Stark and Yinsen covertly initiated the final stages of constructing the armored suit to facilitate their escape. Stark focused on the suit's body, while Yinsen handled the mechanics. Assembling various steel components to fit Stark's body, he equipped the armor with missiles and flamethrowers, anticipating the 10 Rings' efforts to thwart their escape. With the Iron Man helmet steaming, Stark placed it on Yinsen's desk, signaling the imminent implementation of their escape plan. Escaping the 10 Rings. The duo put their escape plan into action at the 10 Rings base, with Stark gradually donning the armored suit while the power from the new arc reactor was integrated. Unfortunately, the booby-trapped door they had rigged detonated prematurely, eliminating the men who had approached to inspect their progress. Yinsen realized with horror that they lacked sufficient time to fully power the suit before the imminent arrival of 10 Rings soldiers who intended to kill them. Forced into a corner, Yinsen took up a gun to hold off the terrorists, even as Stark's suit continued its power-up process. Once the suit was fully powered, Stark waited in the shadows as 10 Rings terrorists entered the room, searching for them. He then revealed himself, utilizing his newfound strength to dispatch them effortlessly, the armor impervious to their bullets. Stark navigated through the cave, eliminating any 10 Rings terrorists in his path with the formidable capabilities of the armor. A moment of tension arose when Stark's metal arm became trapped in a rock-strewn wall, leading a terrorist to attempt a point-blank headshot. Remarkably, Stark's helmet deflected the bullet, eliminating the assailant and affording Stark the opportunity to free himself and continue the escape. As Stark approached the exit around a corner, he was dismayed to discover Yinsen lying mortally wounded, having sustained multiple gunshot wounds during the escape attempt. Despite his critical condition, Yinsen managed to warn Stark just in time before Raza unleashed a rocket launcher at his former hostage. Stark skillfully evaded the shot and retaliated by firing a missile at Raza, resulting in severe burns and trapping the 10 Rings leader beneath the collapsing rubble. Rushing to Yinsen's side, Stark encouraged him to stand and envision a reunion with his family in Galmira. However, Yinsen disclosed that his family had already perished, expressing a belief in a reunion in the afterlife. Acknowledging the inevitable, Stark expressed gratitude to Yinsen for both the physical and moral salvation he provided. In his final words, Yinsen reassured Stark Stark to leave him behind and implored him not to squander his life. Incensed by Yinsen's death, Stark confronted the waiting terrorists outside. Shielded by the suit, he utilized the flamethrowers to eliminate several terrorists and obliterate their stockpile of stolen Stark Industries weapons, hating them for being turned against the United States Armed Forces. Massive fireball explosions ensued. As the armored suit sustained severe damage from the relentless gunfire, Stark employed the jetpacks to escape. The entire base erupted in a massive fireball as Stark soared above the blast, the suit disintegrating and ultimately destroyed upon crashing in the desert. Although the suit saved Stark from the impact, he left its remnants in the desert. Navigating in the sand, Stark shielded himself from the intense heat with his jacket until a United States Air Force helicopter appeared overhead. Desperate for help, Stark signaled and collapsed to his knees, forming a peace signal in the air. James Rhodes emerged from the helicopter and the two friends embraced. Rhodes urged Stark to join him next time before transporting him to safety. Picked up by the Air Force, Stark was finally returned to the United States of America after a prolonged ordeal. No more weapons. Rescued and returned to the United States of America by the Army, Stark walked onto a military airport with James Rhodes. Disgusted by the sight of a stretcher awaiting him for hospital admission, he declined the medical assistance. Stark then encountered a tearful Pepper Potts, teasing her about crying for her long-lost boss, while she insisted it was relief from not having to find a new job. Seated in Happy Hogan's car with Potts, she urged him to go straight to the hospital for a checkup after his kidnapping. Stark, however, adamantly rejected any medical attention, insisting on having a burger first. He then scheduled a press meeting for Stark Industries. Despite Potts' concerns about the timing after his traumatic experience, Stark remained determined, emphasizing the necessity of obtaining his cheeseburger beforehand. Upon arriving at Stark Industries headquarters, Stark received a warm welcome from Obadiah Stane. In the subsequent press meeting, he finished his burger and reflected on his experiences, drawing parallels to how he never bid farewell to his father, Howard Stark. He then announced a significant decision. His company would cease manufacturing military weapons for the foreseeable future. Stane attempted to temper the announcement to the best of his abilities. As their company's stock faced a decline, Stark convened with Stane beside the colossal arc reactor. Stane advised reconsideration on his decision, expressing concerns about its potential harm to the company. Stark, however, insisted on re-evaluating the arc reactor technology, citing his work with Ho Yinsen. To illustrate his point, Stark revealed the arc reactor in his chest, sustaining his life. Despite Stane initially dismissing it as a publicity stunt designed by Howard and Anton Vanko, he eventually agreed to assist Stark, provided he be informed of Stark's future intentions before impromptu press conferences. Back in his Malibu mansion, Stark enlisted Potts' help to dispose of the expired arc reactor in his chest, as Dummy and Yu were unable to assist. Initially skeptical, Potts aided in removing the arc reactor, inadvertently causing Stark brief cardiac arrest. Upon completion, Stark informed Potts that he solely relied on her assistance and instructed her to discard the reactor as it was no longer of use to him. Stark met with Rhodes, who was delivering a speech to new members of the United States Air Force. Stark playfully interrupted, teasing his friend, who then ordered the men to leave for privacy. When questioned about his presence, Stark revealed that he was working on a substantial non-military project, initially exciting Rhodes until Stark clarified it wasn't military related. Rhodes suggested Stark focus on getting his mind straight instead. Suit upgrades. In the subsequent months, Stark withdrew from the public eye, dedicating a significant portion of his time in his mansion to enhancing the design of his latest armored suit. He focused on refining its dimensions, movement capabilities, and flight proficiency, surpassing the limitations of the initial design. Dummy and Yu, despite enduring constant mockery and insults from Stark, played a crucial role in constructing the new suit. Recalling the challenges of the first armor's flight control, especially the crash during the escape from the Ten Rings base, Stark aimed to introduce a more controlled flight feature. He organized a test, with Yu handling the filming and Dummy standing by with a fire extinguisher as a precaution. Despite operating at only 5 to 10% power, Stark found the suit to be unexpectedly powerful, launching himself upward and causing a painful collision with the ceiling. In response, Dummy sprayed Stark with the fire extinguisher upon his landing, under the mistaken belief that he was on fire. After making adjustments to the armor, Stark incorporated new stabilizers attached to his hands to enhance his control while airborne. During a test of the modifications, Pepper Potts visited Stark, assuming he was designing new weapons for Stark Industries. Stark denied this, asserting that the design was harmless and not intended as a weapon. However, Stark once again underestimated the design's power, and a single blast from the stabilizer sent him flying backward, leaving Potts in shock shock. Recognizing the unexpected outcome, Stark acknowledged the need for adjustments. Ascending the stairs, Stark discovered that Obadiah Stane had joined Potts for Pizza after returning from a meeting with Stark Industries' board of directors. Stane conveyed to Stark that, in light of his kidnapping and presumed PTSD, the board had made the decisive move to exclude him from the company. Despite Stark's objections, Stane insisted the decision was irrevocable. Stane then expressed a desire to examine the arc reactor technology, a request Stark adamantly refused. Returning to his work, Stark conducted the second test of his new yet incomplete Mark II armor, with Dummy and Yu once again providing assistance and Jarvis overseeing the proceedings. Using significantly less power than the initial test, Stark maneuvered around his basement, grappling with the challenge of maintaining control and narrowly avoiding damage to some of his high-end cars. Ultimately, Stark concluded the test and landed, instructing Dummy not to deploy the fire extinguisher on him. With pride, he declared that he had achieved the capability to fly. Outdoor test flight. Stark eventually fine-tuned the flight capabilities through a series of trial and error, opting for the silver Mark II armor for its maiden flight. With great pride and excitement, Stark donned the armor for the first time, disregarding Jarvis's cautions about insufficient safety tests. Eager to fully assess its capabilities, Stark insisted on flying outside. Experiencing pure delight, Stark soared across the California sky, expressing his satisfaction loudly. Utilizing the mask system to zoom into the city, he caught the attention of a young boy who marveled at the spectacle. However, when Stark pushed the Stute's altitude limits to surpass the Lockheed SR-71 Blackbird's record, he discovered its susceptibility to freezing at such heights, causing a power failure. Plunging toward the ground, Stark managed to restart the suit just in time, narrowly avoiding a potentially disastrous crash. With the necessary data acquired, Stark returned to his mansion to analyze it for the next design. Hovering over the entrance for a soft landing, he miscalculated the suit's extra weight, crashing through the ceiling and inadvertently destroying his piano and sports car. Dummy, reacting instinctively, once again doused Stark with the fire extinguisher. Assessing the damage with frustration and pain, Stark discovered a gift from Pepper Potts on his desk, a framed original arc reactor with a message proclaiming it as proof that he had a heart. In the aftermath, Stark detected an attempt to hack into his home computer system and traced the signal to a corporate satellite. Suspecting business espionage, he took to the skies and successfully destroyed the satellite. Obadiah Stane's betrayal. While sharing his plans with Jarvis to enhance the Mark III armor, addressing the icing issues and refining flight controls, Stark caught a news report featuring Zoriana Kit discussing a charity event supposedly hosted by him at the Walt Disney Concert Hall. Surprised, Stark asked Jarvis if he had received an invitation, only to learn that he had not. Leaving his AI to work on the Mark III, Stark prepared himself for the event. In his first public appearance since returning to the United States, Stark entered his own party, encountering the press and dismissing an unfamiliar woman before praising the Watcher informant, whom he mistook for Hugh Hefner. Inside, Stark found Obadiah Stane speaking to the press, expressing surprise at Stark's arrival and cautioning him not to attract unwanted attention. Despite promising to comply, Stark's assurance left Stane unconvinced. Inside the venue, Stark met Phil Coulson, an agent of the Strategic Homeland Intervention, Enforcement, and Logistics Division. Stark found the organization's name too long, prompting Coulson to mention plans for shortening it. The two agreed to a meeting to discuss the events of Stark's kidnapping, but Stark, distracted, instructed Coulson to arrange it through his team. Stark's attention shifted when he spotted Pepper Potts in the center of the room wearing a blue dress. After bidding Coulson farewell, Stark approached Potts, complimenting her on the dress she had bought as a gift from Stark's funds. Despite Potts' objections, Stark led her to the dance floor, where they joked about the discomfort of being seen dancing together. Playfully suggesting firing her to alleviate the situation, Stark acknowledged that he couldn't survive without her assistance, admitting he didn't even know his own social security number. Exiting the venue, Potts confronted Stark, expressing her concern about him pressuring her to dance in front of coworkers due to his reputation with women. She feared that the dance might be misinterpreted by onlookers. Stark argued that it wasn't a significant issue. During their conversation, the two almost kissed before Stark decided to fetch drinks, fulfilling Potts' request for a strong one. While at the bar, ordering drinks for both of them, Stark was approached by Christine Everhart, briefly forgetting her name despite their past encounter. Everhart conveyed her disgust at Stark, accusing him of halting weapons development only to continue selling weapons to the Ten Rings. Stark, denying involvement in any such shipments, learned that his company was responsible. Appalled, Stark confronted Obadiah Stane, demanding answers about potential deals with Raza and the United States Armed Forces. Stane refused to respond directly, calling Stark naive for not considering such possibilities. Stane disclosed that he had orchestrated Stark's exclusion from the board during his recovery. Stane then left the party, leaving Stark in a state of shock and horror. Battle of Gulmira. Confronted with the shocking reality of his company's actions and Obadiah Stane's involvement in the deception, Stark returned to his workshop and continued constructing his armor. While doing so, he watched an FBX news report revealing how Raza and his 10-ring soldiers were utilizing Stark's weapons to harm innocent people. Enraged by the footage, Stark rose from his seat and used his flight stabilizers to shatter the glass doors, recognizing their potential as weapons. Determined to use his technology for good, Stark weaponized his Mark III armor and flew to Afghanistan. Aware of the locations where Raza's men were causing havoc, Stark headed to Gulmira, Ho Yun Sen's hometown. Upon arrival, Stark witnessed innocent women and children forcibly taken from their homes to serve as slaves for the 10 Rings, while men were lined up for execution in front of their horrified children. Taking swift action, Stark engaged and effortlessly subdued the soldiers, deploying advanced weapon systems to eliminate multiple terrorists with single strikes and rescue innocent lives. Locating his former captor, Abu Bakr, Stark pulled him through a wall, leaving him to face retribution from the villagers. While Bakr faced their justice, Stark focused on dismantling the entire stockpile of Stark Industries weapons belonging to the 10 Rings. In the midst of battle, Stark was shot down by one of the 10 Rings tanks. Responding swiftly, he fired a missile, effortlessly destroying the tank, and proceeded to eliminate all the Jericho missiles in the 10 Rings' possession. The intense conflict and subsequent explosions quickly attracted the attention of the United States Air Force, and Stark's friend and company military liaison, Lieutenant Colonel James Rhodes, who investigated the true cause. Rhodes ordered 2 F-22 Raptors to eliminate the unidentified target, and Stark quickly realized they were behind him, attempting to lock on with their weapons. To counter the threat, Stark employed his new armor's enhanced flight systems, skillfully evading their attacks. As the jets persisted in targeting him, Stark discovered they had locked on with a missile. He deployed flares to destroy the missile before it could reach him and was propelled forward by the ensuing explosion. Utilizing his superior maneuvering capabilities, Stark positioned himself beneath the jets, unseen. He contacted Rhodes, disclosing his true identity in an effort to halt the attack. Rhodes, horrified by the revelation that his equipment was deployed in an active war zone without his knowledge, attempted to call off the assault. Despite Rhodes' efforts, Major Allen ordered the pilots to take the shot when they had a clear view. When Stark tried to evade the attack, one of the Raptors lost its left wing, colliding with Stark during the chaos of battle. The pilot ejected, but his parachute jammed. Without hesitation, Stark descended to assist the pilot in releasing his parachute before making his escape. En route back to the United States, Stark discussed with Rhodes the potential excuses they could use to explain the situation. Upon returning to his mansion, Stark was assisted out of his armor by Dumb E and U, a somewhat painful experience as they struggled to find a way to extricate him. During this process, Pepper Potts walked into the workshop and discovered Stark still partially encased in his armor. Stark quipped that it wasn't the worst thing that she ever caught him doing, while Potts expressed horror at the bullet holes in the armor. Next mission. Following the successful mission against the 10 Rings, Stark returned to refining the Mark III armor to enhance its performance. Potts joined him, and Stark asked her to hack into the Stark Industries headquarters database to locate the destinations where his weapons were being sold to the 10 Rings. His intention was to use the armor to intervene and eliminate those threats. Potts, however, declined, expressing concern that entering active war zones might lead to Stark's demise. Unmoved by her reluctance, Stark pointed out that she had stood by him during the years of weapon creation and was now contemplating leaving just as he began to rectify the wrongs and protect those he endangered, inspired by Ho Yun Sen's sacrifice. Convinced by Stark's sincerity, Potts took the hard drive and agreed to assist. Inside his mansion, Stark received a call from Potts but suddenly found himself immobilized. To his horror, Obadiah Stane appeared, using a sonic taser. Stane admitted to orchestrating Stark's kidnapping and callously removed the arc reactor from Stark's chest, inducing cardiac arrest. Taunting Stark by drawing comparisons to his father, Stane threatened Potts' life before departing. Regaining some control, Stark struggled to reach his workshop for the original Mark I arc reactor to save his life. He collapsed just inches away, minutes from death. In a timely rescue, Dumb E and U handed Stark the arc reactor. Discovered by James Rhodes, Stark explained the situation while being helped up. Informed that Potts had enlisted Phil Coulson and a team of S.H.I.E.L.D. agents to apprehend Stane, Stark cautioned that it might not be enough, given Stane's possession of his own armored suit. Prepared for battle, Stark donned his suit and instructed Rhodes to keep the skies clear from United States Armed Forces as he took flight from his mansion. Duel of Los Angeles. Heading straight to Stark Industries headquarters, Stark discovered Obadiah Stane attempting to harm Pepper Potts. He charged at Stane, knocking him aside and crashing into a motorway, subsequently plowing through a Roxxon Corporation lorry. In response, Stane seized a minivan with a family inside and attempted to hurl it at Stark. Stark directed all the suit's power into the arc reactor to repel Stane. After catching the minivan, Stark was briefly run over by the frightened family. While recovering, Stane struck again, hitting Stark with a passing motorcycle and slamming him into a nearby bus. Throughout the assault, Stane continued to taunt Stark, boasting about building Stark Industries from scratch after Howard Stark's death. Stane fired a missile at the bus, enveloping Stark in the ensuing fireball. Despite being launched into the air, Stark remained protected by his suit. Hovering in the air, Stane complimented Stark's upgrades and revealed his own suit's enhancements before chasing Stark into the sky. Jarvis warned that Stark's Mark III armor had limited endurance. Stark opted to ascend rapidly, confident that Stane's suit had not undergone sufficient testing to address all design issues. As they soared above Los Angeles, Stane, with superior power, quickly caught up. However, Stark disclosed that Stane had not yet resolved the icing issue encountered by his Mark II armor, causing Stane's suit to lose power and plummet from the sky. Returning to Stark Industries headquarters, Stark attempted to exit the suit but was immediately confronted by Stane. Without one gauntlet, Stark found himself at a disadvantage as Stane enveloped him in a bear hug, attempting to crush the suit with Stark inside. Stark deployed flares, briefly blinding Stane and allowing him to escape momentarily. Seeking refuge from Stane, Stark confided in Potts that his current strategies against Stane were ineffective, prompting him to devise a new plan. Stark instructed Potts to overload the main arc reactor within the building, unleashing a powerful energy surge on the roof to combat Stane. As Potts returned to the building, Stark advised her to wait until he had distanced himself, assuring her that he would buy time by engaging Stane in battle. Jumping onto Stane's back, Stark dismantled crucial components of the armor, disabling the targeting system and effectively blinding Stane. However, Stane forcibly removed Stark and hurled him across the rooftop, causing Stark's helmet to be dislodged. Left nearly defenseless with minimal power in his suit, Stark struggled against Stane, who discarded his own helmet and exposed himself. Crushing Stark's helmet, Stane taunted him, claiming to have finally earned his father's approval. He fired at Stark, who managed to block with his gauntlet before the glass floor beneath him shattered. Clinging to the edge, Potts urged Stark to leave the rooftop. Stane argued that by attempting to eliminate weapons from Stark Industries, Stark unintentionally created the most potent one, which Stane would use to ensure Stark's demise. While Stane grappled with aiming his missiles, Stark instructed Potts to overload the arc reactor. This triggered an electrical burst that propelled Stark away and fried Stane's armor, ultimately causing Stane's demise. Stane plummeted into the arc reactor, leading to a massive explosion, and Stark lost consciousness. Nearly succumbing to the dwindling power of his arc reactor, Stark was kept alive just long enough to be rescued by Jarvis. I am Iron Man. Following the Duel of Los Angeles and his close encounter with death, James Rhodes assisted Stark, attempting to get him into an ambulance to check for internal injuries. However, the ambulance turned out to be a decoy sent by S.H.I.E.L.D. for Stark's retrieval. With an opportunity to converse with Stark, Phil Coulson engaged him in conversation after they left him at a small theater. Displaying Stark's fighting tactics against Obadiah Stane on a projector screen, Coulson advised him to evolve into a genuine fighter and offered training from skilled S.H.I.E.L.D. agents. The following morning, news circulated about Stark's newfound alter ego, dubbed Iron Man by the press. Stark conducted a press conference where Agent Coulson presented a detailed fabricated cover story about Stark and Stane's whereabouts, suggesting that Iron Man was Stark's personal bodyguard. However, during the conference, Stark, in a moment of self-realization, defied the advised narrative and publicly declared that he himself was Iron Man. Meeting Nick Fury. Later that night, Stark returned home and encountered a visitor near the window, revealed to be Nick Fury, the director of S.H.I.E.L.D. Fury assured Stark that he was not the only superhero in the world and expressed his intent to discuss the Avengers initiative with Stark. Uninterested in government offers, Stark promptly ordered Fury to leave his house. Armored Adventures. Iron Man engaged in acts of heroism worldwide, earning recognition as the man who stabilized East-West relations. And Time magazine named Stark Person of the Year. When faced with blackmail from the Ten Rings and Lena, Stark thwarted the terrorists and rescued Lena's abducted son. Upon Nick Fury dispatching a team of US Navy SEALs to board a Ten Rings-controlled ship, Iron Man intervened, defeating the terrorists. Stark assisted Thaddeus Ross in rescuing the pilot of the aerodynamic Marvel, which crashed in the Democratic Republic of Congo. During a visit to Germany, Stark encountered a roadblock, learning about a museum art theft. While helping a woman with a flat tire, he unknowingly encountered Iveta Gorani, the person he was scheduled to meet. Stark then apprehended the art thieves without relying on his armor. In another instance, Pepper Potts informed Stark that he unintentionally scheduled 5 dates on the same night. While getting his car fixed, mercenaries attacked him, but he prevailed with assistance from Mike Charles. Stark faced the 10 Rings again when he discovered that Aiden Julius, a competitor of his friend Abby Rose, was a member of the 10 Rings guarding a diamond mine. Palladium poisoning. Regrettably, Stark's personal life wasn't as rosy as it seemed, with a dual menace looming over him. Firstly, his own health was at risk, primarily due to the poisoning effect of the arc reactor's palladium core caused by extensive use of the Iron Man armor. To mask the symptoms, he found himself compelled to consume a concoction of homemade medicine. He was cognizant of the ongoing efforts by the United States Armed Forces to seize all his technological advancements. Starting the Stark Expo. Half a year after publicly disclosing his identity and contributing to global peace, Stark, donned as Iron Man, made a notable appearance at the grand inauguration of the Stark Expo in Flushing Meadows, New York City, continuing the legacy initiated by his father, Howard Stark. Entertaining the audience with the Ironette dancers and a self-congratulatory speech about bestowing the world with an unprecedented era of uninterrupted peace, Stark exited the stage, leaving a video tribute featuring his father. Post-Expo, Stark, accompanied by Happy Hogan, navigated through the crowd, engaging with fans and encountering personalities like Larry Ellison and Larry King. However, their departure was interrupted by a striking U.S. Marshal awaiting Stark beside his car. The Marshal delivered the news that Stark was mandated to attend a congressional meeting in Washington, D.C. the following day to deliberate on the future of his role as the renowned superhero Iron Man. Meeting with Senator Stern. The second menace emerged in the form of a Senate committee hearing, this time under the leadership of Senator Stern, pressing Stark to make the Iron Man armor technology available for military purposes. Stark adamantly refused, asserting that it wasn't in the best interest of the American people for the US Armed Forces to possess the technology. He argued that such a powerful weapon could potentially be turned against America if other nations managed to replicate the arc reactor technology. Senator Stern attempted to sway Lieutenant Colonel James Rhodes against Stark to influence this decision. Competitor Justin Hammer sought to advocate for the military application of the technology. Seizing the opportunity, Stark used a compilation of footage showcasing failed attempts by Hammer Industries and other global entities to recreate the technology. In a bold move, Stark embarrassed both Hammer and Stern, claiming that successful replication of his tech would take years, and boldly asserted that he had effectively privatized world peace. Making Pepper Potts CEO. Upon returning to his mansion, Stark received an update from Jarvis regarding the repercussions of his encounter with Senator Stern. While absorbing the news, he extracted his arc reactor, inspecting the deteriorating palladium core that posed a slow and lethal threat. Jarvis noted the absence of a replacement capable of powering his array of Iron Man armors while sustaining his own life. Facing uncertainty about his survival, Stark made the decision to appoint his former personal assistant, Pepper Potts, as CEO of Stark Industries, relinquishing his active role while maintaining ownership in a more symbolic capacity. When Potts entered his workshop, a heated argument ensued about Stark's diminished interest in the company since becoming Iron Man. Eventually, Stark revealed his intention to promote her. Although initially skeptical, Potts became convinced when Dummy delivered champagne, confirming Stark's genuine decision to appoint her as the ideal person to take charge. While engaged in boxing training with Happy Hogan, during which he utilized unorthodox techniques to gain the upper hand, Stark observed the arrival of Potts and a company notary, Natalie Rushman, who was revealed to be Natasha Romanoff, an agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. Despite taking a hit from Hogan, Stark quickly turned the tables, inviting Romanoff into the ring. Stark exchanged a moment with Romanoff before encouraging Hogan to spar with her instead. Stark and Potts continued to delve into the details of Rushman, examining her history files. Stark highlighted intriguing aspects, such as her proficiency in Latin and past experience as a lingerie model. While engrossed in their conversation, Stark and Potts observed Romanoff employing a leg maneuver to subdue Hogan within the ring. After exiting the ring, Romanoff requested Stark's signature on the paperwork facilitating the transition of Stark Industries to Potts. In her absence, Stark expressed to Potts that he required her as his new assistant. Monaco Grand Prix. Shortly before heading to Monaco, accompanied by Potts and Hogan, Stark completed the construction of his Mark V armor. In Monaco, Stark and Potts encountered Justin Hammer, who tried to flaunt his interview with Christine Everhart for an upcoming Vanity Fair piece. Stark swiftly reminded Hammer of his own romantic history with Everhart and highlighted Hammer Industries' loss of the contract with the United States Armed Forces, following Hammer's embarrassing performance at the Senate committee hearing. Taking a brief respite from Hammer's presence, Stark excused himself to assess his blood toxicity level in the bathroom. There, he observed the palladium-induced poisoning from the arc reactor spreading into his skin. Gazing at himself in the mirror, Stark contemplated the limited time he likely had left before succumbing to the poisoning. Growing increasingly despondent and driven by a desire for thrills due to the perceived proximity of his death, Stark decided to seize the Stark Industries car intended for the track and participate in the Monaco Grand Prix. Stepping into the car with cameras focused on him, Stark cast a deliberate glance, knowing it would irk Hammer and once again divert the spotlight away from him. Duel of Monaco. While Stark navigated the track, Ivan Vanko, equipped with his own arc reactor and whip-like energy weapons, launched an attack. The whips sliced through the front of Stark's car, causing a crash involving several other racers. Stark managed to crawl out before his car was split in half. Despite his attempts to counter, Vanko's armored weapons overwhelmed the defenseless Stark. As Vanko poised to dismantle Stark, he had to rely on his ingenuity to evade the lethal whips. Seizing an opportunity from behind, Stark struck Vanko on the head with a car door, but Vanko was unaffected, prompting Stark to continue dodging. Stark then outsmarted Vanko by luring him into striking the whips onto gasoline, resulting in an explosion that momentarily separated them. With Vanko proving too formidable, Stark found himself running out of options and backed into a corner. However, timely assistance arrived with the appearance of Pepper Potts and Happy Hogan. They drove their own car onto the racetrack and successfully crashed into Vanko, pinning him against a wall and momentarily incapacitating him. Stark then prepared for a swift escape. While Stark lamented the apparent lack of security at the Stark Industries event, Vanko persisted in the fight despite being pinned to the wall. He forcefully tore apart Hogan's car with relentless strikes from his electric whips. In response, the frightened Potts handed Stark his portable briefcase armor, allowing him to equip the Mark V armor and confront his would-be assassin on the racetrack, giving Iron Man the advantage. In the new suit, Iron Man attempted to incapacitate Vanko by unleashing repulsor rays, but Vanko skillfully blocked the blows with his own armor. Vanko then used his whips to strangle Iron Man, hurling him across the racetrack into Hogan's car and back again. The whips tightened around Iron Man's neck, delivering shocks of electricity that gradually damaged the suit. Refusing to accept defeat, Iron Man summoned his strength and began entwining the whips around himself to close the distance to Vanko. Once within striking range, Iron Man delivered a series of punches to Vanko's face before forcibly extracting the arc reactor from his chest and crushing it. As the police dragged Vanko away, he laughed, claiming Iron Man's loss, while Iron Man examined Vanko's arc reactor, crushing it in disbelief. Meeting with Ivan Vanko. Stark opted to personally visit Ivan Vanko, who was being detained in Bâtiment B3, France, in order to uncover how he had obtained the arc reactor technology. Lemieux guided Stark to the location. Once alone with Vanko, Stark remarked on the design of Vanko's armor and even offered suggestions for potential improvements, assuming he would never have the opportunity to do so. Stark questioned Vanko's choice to use the technology for lethal purposes instead of personal gain. Vanko disclosed his identity as the son of Anton Vanko, who had collaborated with Howard Stark on the initial arc reactor, but was later deported to the Soviet Union and died in poverty. Blaming the Stark family for his own family's misfortune, Vanko sought revenge, ominously warning that Stark would face mortality now that Iron Man's invincibility had been disproven. Stark countered by pointing out that Vanko would remain incarcerated either way. Upon leaving, Vanko cruelly mentioned Stark's ongoing blood poisoning, mocking it as a grim way to meet his end. Ivan Vanko's attack aftermath. Despite Ivan Vanko being incarcerated for his offenses, the reaction to another individual employing arc reactor technology was swift, with numerous individuals, including Senator Stern, criticizing Stark's perceived failure. While aboard his private jet en route to the United States, Stark prepared breakfast for Pepper Potts as they deliberated on the aftermath of the attack. Stark even contemplated quitting his role as Iron Man and nearly confided in Potts about his current condition, but ultimately refrained. Returning to his mansion, Stark, alongside Jarvis, continued the quest for a new power source for the arc reactor, while reviewing the records of Ivan Vanko and his father, Anton Vanko. Stark discovered that Anton had worked for Stark Industries in the 60s before being deported under Howard Stark's orders, while Vanko himself was a Soviet physicist arrested for illegal weapons dealing. Later, James Rhodes visited Stark, warning him of the military's desire to confiscate his suits. Recognizing Stark's ailing state, Rhodes aided him by replacing the arc reactor's palladium core. Rhodes attempted to persuade Stark that he didn't have to face these challenges alone, but Stark remained skeptical. The following night, feeling increasingly despondent as the effects of the poisoning approached their peak, Stark contemplated canceling his upcoming birthday party upon realizing he had only a week left to live. Natasha Romanoff, undercover as Natalie Rushman, paid him a visit, prepared a drink for Stark, and presented him with a choice of watches. Stark posed existential questions to Romanoff, inquiring about her hypothetical actions on her final birthday. Romanoff responded that she would do whatever she pleased with whomever she desired. Birthday party. Stark opted to attend what might possibly be his final birthday celebration, swiftly becoming heavily inebriated and reveling with the numerous guests in attendance. He invited Natasha Romanoff, still going by the alias Natalie Rushman, to don one of his gauntlets and fire at an ice sculpture, deriving immense pleasure from the ensuing destruction before joining the other revelers. Stark did a bunch of shots, intensifying his intoxication and making him more challenging to manage. Sporting the Mark IV Iron Man armor and engaging in various perilous activities such as using repulsor blasts to obliterate a watermelon, Iron Man's antics were observed by Pepper Potts. She attempted to persuade him to stop, guided by advice from James Rhodes, who emphasized the inappropriateness of such reckless behavior. Despite Potts taking away Iron Man's microphone and urging guests to conclude the party, Iron Man remained obstinate, insisting that the festivities persist. He continued to misuse his suit to amuse his inebriated guests, much to the dismay of Potts and Rhodes, who observed with growing concern. Ultimately, Iron Man's actions became increasingly hazardous and foolish, prompting his friend Rhodes to intervene. Rhodes donned the Mark II Iron Man armor, ushered the guests out of the room, and demanded that Iron Man exit the suit. Disregarding the plea, instead Iron Man requested a song from Adam Goldstein to score their fight. The two clashed, soaring from room to room, utilizing any available weapons to subdue the other. This included hurling heavy weights at each other before Rhodes succeeded in tossing Iron Man into his upstairs bedroom. In due course, nearly obliterating the entire mansion, Iron Man successfully restrained Rhodes by forcefully slamming his head into the kitchen counter. He then bellowed at bystanders, compelling them to evacuate. Following Rhodes' recovery, he retaliated by propelling Iron Man into the fireplace. Iron Man provocatively challenged his friend to make a move, and they simultaneously discharged their repulsors, triggering a substantial explosion. Weakened by the intense confrontation, Iron Man could only observe as Rhodes soared away to deliver the armor to the United States Armed Forces. Rediscovering the element. In the aftermath of the clash with James Rhodes, Stark donned the Mark IV Iron Man armor and flew to Randy's Donuts in California. There, he purchased a box and savored them while perched on the middle of the sign above the shop. As he enjoyed the morning sun, Nick Fury, director of S.H.I.E.L.D., approached Iron Man and instructed him to join him inside. Taking a seat indoors, Iron Man reiterated his disinterest in joining the Avengers, even making a brusque comment about whether he should focus on Fury's eye or patch. Shifting the conversation, Fury disclosed that Natalie Rushman was in reality undercover agent Natasha Romanoff, dressed in her Black Widow attire. Stark had previously attempted, unsuccessfully, to dismiss her from Stark Industries. As their discussion continued, Black Widow injected Iron Man with lithium dioxide to decelerate the poisoning in his veins caused by the arc reactor. Despite Iron Man's insistence that he had exhaustively searched for a cure without success, Fury remained optimistic that a solution existed, leaving Iron Man to examine his father's belongings for a potential remedy under the watchful eye of Agent Phil Coulson. Researching his family, Nick Fury provided Stark with some of his father's old materials to assist in finding a cure for palladium poisoning. While going through the items, including Howard's notebook featuring drawings of a hypercube and 2 Captain America comic books, Stark initially maintained a dismissive and bitter attitude toward these relics from the past. However, his perspective shifted when he watched an old tape of his father, discovering a concealed message where Howard expressed pride in his son and considered Tony his greatest creation. Motivated by this revelation, Stark drove to the Stark Industries headquarters, purchasing strawberries along the way, and met with Pepper Potts, despite Bambi Arbogast's attempt to convey her busy schedule. When Stark finally got Potts' attention, he endeavored to apologize in his unique manner, a gesture met with skepticism by Potts, who insisted on focusing on the future of Stark Industries. The conversation was interrupted by the arrival of Happy Hogan and Natasha Romanoff. now both exclusively working for Potts. As Potts and Hogan exited the office, Stark engaged in a conversation with Romanoff, questioning her ability to perpetuate the deception. Romanoff subtly insulted him before departing. Ready to leave the office, Stark discarded the strawberries, but before doing so, noticed what seemed to be a hidden message in the diorama of the 1974 Stark Expo. The message turned out to be a diagram illustrating the atomic structure of a new element. Stark disassembled the model and transported it to his mansion for further examination. Placing the model on his desk, Stark instructed Jarvis to scan it, eliminating the trees and buildings from the holographic image to focus solely on the model. When questioned about his plan by Jarvis, Stark explained his belief that he had uncovered a hidden message. Ultimately, Stark realized that this new element was within the Expo globe at the center, and expressed gratitude to his father for providing him with a life-saving discovery. A new element. As Stark finalized the preparations to commence his experiment, he was met by Phil Coulson, inquiring about Stark's whereabouts. Coulson discovered a prototype of Captain America's shield, which Stark appropriated to align some of his machinery. Suddenly, Coulson revealed his departure to investigate a mysterious object in New Mexico. Assisted by Jarvis, Stark initiated the experiment, constructing a substantial laser in the center of his mansion's workshop. Stark wrestled to position the laser, struggling to stabilize it as it penetrated the walls and aimed at its intended target. The laser connected with the newly designed arc reactor, synthesizing the new element. Examining his creation, Stark confirmed with Jarvis that the new element would serve as a suitable substitute for palladium, ensuring both his survival and the power source for his Iron Man armors in the foreseeable future. Stark then proceeded to upgrade the reactor and his upcoming suit. Continuing his work on the new suit, Stark received a surprising call from Ivan Vanko, who, despite supposedly perishing in a prison explosion, declared he was alive and harbored vengeful intentions. While Stark endeavored to trace the call and locate Vanko, the latter promised revenge for Howard Stark's actions against his father, Anton Vanko, before terminating the call. Heeding Vanko's warning that he had enhanced his own armor, Stark donned the Mark VI Iron Man armor. Despite objections from Jarvis, Stark incorporated his new arc reactor, remarking on the unique sensations during its first use, detecting both coconut and metal. Recalling Justin Hammer's military presentation at the Stark Expo, Stark suited up and departed to confront Vanko and thwart his nefarious plans. Battle at Stark Expo. At the Stark Expo, Iron Man confronted Justin Hammer, who was busy introducing his Hammer drones, commanded by James Rhodes in a heavily weaponized armored suit, a modified version of the Mark II Iron Man armor. When attempting to maintain order amongst the audience, Iron Man inquired about Vanko's whereabouts. Hammer, however, denied any knowledge of him and tried to downplay the incident to spectators. Iron Man then approached Rhodes, cautioning him that Vanko was still alive. Suddenly, Vanko took control of both the drones and Rhodes' armor, orchestrating an attack against Iron Man. In response, Iron Man soared across the expo, striving to evade his assailants and induce them to crash. Simultaneously, he instructed Jarvis to regain control of Rhodes. Throughout the skirmish, Iron Man made every effort to ensure the safety of hundreds of attendees fleeing chaos, including Peter Parker, who, wearing an Iron Man mask, was mistaken for the hero by a drone. Running out of options as Rhodes persistently fired upon him with Hammer Industries weapons, Iron Man did his best to neutralize the drones. He led them away from the civilians before guiding them into a collision course with the Unisphere. Leveraging the superior maneuverability of his Mark VI armor, Iron Man successfully evaded the bulky Hammer drones, causing them to crash into the globe and erupt into a colossal fireball. However, before Iron Man could catch his breath, he was knocked out of the sky into an Oracle Corporation dome by Rhodes, still under Vanko's control. Iron Man endeavored to defend against Rhodes' attacks, holding his minigun at bay until Black Widow, who had infiltrated the Hammer Industries headquarters with assistance from Happy Hogan, overrode Vanko's programming. Despite their efforts, they failed to apprehend Vanko. Showdown with Ivan Vanko. Iron Man forcefully pushed James Rhodes back, and Black Widow reassured them that he was finally in control of his own armor. She praised Iron Man for the effectiveness of his new element, which had successfully halted his palladium poisoning. This revelation prompted Pepper Potts to confront Iron Man about not disclosing his life-threatening condition. As Potts had Justin Hammer arrested, Iron Man assisted Rhodes in getting back to his feet. Anticipating the arrival of the remaining Hammer drones at their location, Iron Man and Rhodes devised a battle plan. However, their collaboration turned into a disagreement over positional superiority, each believing they possessed the superior armor and skills. Before they could resolve their dispute, the drones surrounded Iron Man and Rhodes. With no escape route, both donned their helmets and prepared for battle, engaging and attacking drones with their weapons. As the battle unfolded, Iron Man and Rhodes discovered that despite easily overcoming individual drones, the sheer number of enemies began to overwhelm them. Rhodes utilized Hammer Industries' impressive weaponry to fend off attackers, while Iron Man employed his high-end armor to simultaneously destroy multiple targets. Eventually, Iron Man deployed his lasers to slice through the remaining drones, securing their victory. Following the elimination of the drones, Black Widow warned Iron Man and Rhodes of a new formidable enemy approaching. Ivan Vanko emerged in his enhanced armor, appearing more powerful than their previous adversaries. In an attempt to neutralize Vanko preemptively, Rhodes activated the ex-wife missile, but it failed to damage Vanko's armor. Iron Man pointed out that it was unmistakably a Hammer Industries weapon, evidently ineffective in actual combat. In a heated confrontation, Iron Man and Vanko clashed fiercely, with both Iron Man and Rhodes exerting their utmost to defeat them or weaken his armor to the point of surrender. Despite their determined attacks, they discovered that Vanko's armor was exceptionally resilient, and he had enhanced his whips to make them even more formidable. The duo soon found themselves overwhelmed by Vanko's advanced technology and weaponry. Vanko gained the upper hand in the battle by skillfully maneuvering his electrified whips around Iron Man and Rhodes' throats, gradually tightening them in an attempt to break their necks. Faced with a dire situation, Iron Man urged Rhodes to employ a technique they had discovered during their earlier duel at the mansion. They fired their repulsors at each other, creating a powerful explosion in front of Vanko that sent all three reeling. After recovering from the shockwave and regaining their footing, Iron Man and Rhodes observed Vanko lying on the battlefield, both his Mark II armor and his body irreparably damaged. Too injured to continue the fight, Vanko asserted that Stark had indeed lost this battle. He then triggered the self-destruct bombs on his own armor and all the Hammer drones scattered across the Stark Expo. Given that many of these drones were shot down by Iron Man, he swiftly flew to rescue anyone remaining at the expo before the impending explosions could cause significant casualties. In a race against time, Iron Man managed to save Potts, pulling her to safety in the nick of time. Witnessing the chaos wrought by his actions, Potts resigned from her position as CEO of Stark Industries. Iron Man playfully teased her about the idea of leaving him, but eventually confessed how crucial she was to him. The two shared a kiss, with Rhodes revealing his presence on the roof before departing with his armor. Iron Man, showing no serious objection, left them at a point where he refused to accept Potts' resignation. Not a suitable candidate. During a debriefing session with news footage showcasing another superhuman event, Nick Fury conveyed to Stark that while Iron Man was a fitting candidate for the Avengers initiative, Stark himself did not meet the criteria. S.H.I.E.L.D. sought Stark's expertise as a consultant, but Stark insisted that Fury couldn't afford his assistance. After contemplating the offer, Stark agreed, contingent on Senator Stern presenting himself and James Rhodes with medals for their valor in defeating Ivan Vanko and Justin Hammer. A few hours later, in fulfillment of the agreement, Stark's conditions were met, and he accepted the role as consultant. He took particular delight in Senator Stern's evident displeasure at being compelled to award him a medal, grinning for the cameras and even flashing a peace sign to the gathered crowd. Consultant for S.H.I.E.L.D. Continuing in his role as a consultant for S.H.I.E.L.D., Stark was assigned the task of preventing General Thaddeus Ross from deploying Emil Blonsky into the Avengers initiative, as mandated by the World Security Council. Stark found Ross in a bar where the two engaged in a heated exchange of insults regarding their recent battles. Stark then revealed the formation of a new team, irritating Ross to the point where he attempted to have Stark removed from the bar. However, Stark had already purchased and arranged for the bar's demolition later on, a fact that he shared with Phil Coulson and Jasper Sitwell. The mission was successful, with Ross refusing to release Blonsky from his custody out of sheer spite. Stark returned to refining his armor, reflecting on past shortcomings and identifying improvements for the upcoming Mark VII armor. Later, Pepper Potts gifted him Kolantate bracelets, magnetic bracelets that Stark incorporated into his armor to facilitate its quick deployment when needed. In July of 2011, Stark granted an interview to WHIH World News, discussing his dual identity as Iron Man. In early 2012, Stark wagered against Global Incorporated, confident he could outperform their newly developed glider harness. He easily outsmarted them by restraining their gliders, causing them to collide with a billboard. This provoked the company's owner, Omar, to angrily demand payment for the damaged billboard. Chitauri invasion. Stark retrieved James Rhodes' Mark I armor, removing all the newly integrated Hammer Industries weapons and reverting it to the Mark II Iron Man armor. Upon Rhodes' arrival, Stark revealed he had crafted a new suit for him, incorporating advanced technology and weaponry. With this, Rhodes embraced his superhero identity, now known as War Machine. Stark shifted his focus to Stark Tower in New York City, a structure powered by pure, clean energy, proudly admiring the illuminated display of his own name. Upon reaching Stark Tower, he and Pepper Potts celebrated the successful development of their latest clean energy source for the city, with Stark humorously conceding that she could claim 12% credit for Stark Industries' groundbreaking achievement. Jarvis then notified Stark of Agent Phil Coulson's arrival, requesting urgent discussion. Stark initially resisted, even jokingly claiming to be a life model decoy, but Coulson insisted on the necessity of their conversation and entered the tower, much to Stark's chagrin as he jokingly blamed Potts for the perceived security breach. Coulson briefed Stark on the activation of the Avengers initiative, followed by the destruction of Project Pegasus by Loki. The Asgardian had attacked S.H.I.E.L.D. agents, seized the Tesseract, and enslaved Eric Selvig and Clint Barton with his scepter. Despite Stark's previous rejection of the Avengers, Coulson explained that they needed his involvement, handing Stark holographic screens with information on Captain America, Thor, Hulk, and Loki. Coulson and Potts left the tower while Stark delved into studying the details, also examining the Tesseract's design. Capturing Loki. Swiftly donning his current Mark VI armor, Stark jetted off to Stuttgart, Germany, where he promptly located Natasha Romanoff in a Quinjet overseeing the newly awakened Captain America engaged in combat with the menacing god Loki. Iron Man descended and unleashed his repulsors on Loki, standing alongside Captain America, poised with all his weaponry, compelling Loki to surrender as they took him into custody. With Loki restrained in handcuffs, the team embarked on their journey back to S.H.I.E.L.D.'s helicarrier. Iron Man took a moment to praise Captain America's combat skills and playfully teased him about his unfamiliarity with modern society since his return from World War II, questioning whether he had taken up Pilates. While wondering why Loki had surrendered, an abrupt thunderstorm arose, visibly upsetting Loki. The Quinjet came under attack by Thor, Loki's adoptive brother, who infiltrated and subdued Iron Man before he could retaliate. Thor then seized Loki and flew away, leaving Captain America and Iron Man behind. Amid Thor's confrontation with Loki on a mountain to extract information about Loki's master, Iron Man intervened, blasting Thor and propelling him onto the forest floor away from Loki. As Thor regained composure, Iron Man revealed his presence and was cautioned not to touch Thor again. Iron Man retorted, telling Thor not to take his things, referring to Loki. Thor expressed his confusion about the unfolding events, and Iron Man mockingly likened Thor's appearance to that of a character from a William Shakespeare production in the park, suggesting that he looked like he was clad in his mother's attire. Engaging in a fierce battle, Thor vehemently resisted being denied access to take Loki to the Asgardian dungeons, striking Iron Man, who defended himself. During the clash, Thor summoned lightning to his hammer, Mjolnir, electrifying Stark. However, this inadvertently supercharged Stark's suit. Jarvis alerted him that his suit was operating at 400% capacity, enabling him to blast Thor off his feet. Seizing an opportunity, Iron Man pushed Thor into a mountain where he attempted to charge, but Thor retaliated, leading to a crash landing in the forest where their confrontation persisted. Iron Man's armor suffered considerable damage as Thor effortlessly crushed one of the gauntlets with his bare hands. Fearing a shattered arm, Iron Man resorted to shooting Thor in the face, which merely caused his head to recoil, followed by a headbutt with the helmet. Despite Thor's Asgardian strength enabling him to withstand Iron Man's blows, the battle continued, with Iron Man leveraging the capabilities of his suit to subdue Thor without causing harm. The skirmish was interrupted by Captain America, urging them to cease hostilities and question Thor's presence on Earth. Thor explained that he had come to thwart Loki's schemes. Captain America insisted that Thor prove his allegiance by placing his hammer down, prompting Iron Man to remark that it was a risky move as Thor was deeply attached to the hammer. Just as Iron Man was about to be struck by Mjolnir and knocked through a tree, Thor attacked Captain America. After Captain America deflected Mjolnir with his shield, the trio managed to subdue Thor, ultimately recruiting him to their mission, recapturing Loki and taking him into S.H.I.E.L.D.'s custody. Meeting the Avengers. Returning to the helicarrier with Loki in custody, Stark conversed with Agent Phil Coulson and assured him the use of his private jet for a meeting with Audrey Nathan in Portland. Afterwards, Stark joined the group, praising Thor's combat skills and playfully remarking on an agent playing Galaga. He then highlighted Loki's need for iridium to control the Tesseract's power. Stark, explaining why Loki required Eric Selvig and Clint Barton, fielded questions about his sudden expertise from Maria Hill, revealing he had conducted research the night before, emphasizing that Loki required a power source for Tesseract control. Introduced to Bruce Banner, Stark was pleased to find that Banner understood his own theories. Stark complimented Banner on his intelligence and Hulk transformation ability. Director Nick Fury proposed a collaboration between Stark and Banner to decipher Loki's scepter, drawing comparisons to a Hydra weapon by Captain America. Despite Captain America's struggle with modern references, Stark and Banner left for the lab to commence their research. Before departing, Stark discreetly planted a hacking device, allowing Jarvis to initiate a search of S.H.I.E.L.D's database, unveiling the secrets behind the formation of the Avengers. Engaging in conversation with Banner in their newly established lab, Stark and Banner delved into Selvig's work. Stark extended an invitation for Banner to work at Stark Tower, promising a stress-free environment. Despite Banner's humorous response to his prior incident in Harlem, Stark attempted to playfully provoke Banner's transformation resistance by prodding him with a tool, resulting in pain and no transformation response. Captain America intervened, demanding Stark cease his actions, emphasizing the risk of Banner's transformations to everyone on the helicarrier. Inquiring about Banner's methods to remain calm, Stark humorously suggested jazz or marijuana, receiving a disapproving response from Captain America. Stark, seemingly distracted, questioned Fury's motives for restarting the Avengers initiative, a notion Captain America dismissed. Banner speculated that Loki's comments might pertain to Stark Tower and its power source. Despite Captain America's insistence on focusing on the Tesseract, Stark, displaying his irreverent nature, insulted Captain America's uniform and dismissed him from the lab. Stark added a disrespectful comment about his father's admiration for Captain America during their World War II collaboration. Team tension. When Stark expressed his desire for Bruce Banner to join them in the upcoming fight, Banner maintained that he couldn't, deeming Hulk a nightmare. Stark then shared the story of his arc reactor, keeping the shrapnel from his kidnapping away from his heart, describing it as a terrible privilege. Banner argued that their situations were different. Stark pointed out that the gamma radiation Banner was exposed to should have been fatal, speculating that Hulk might have saved his life. Stark and Banner discovered S.H.I.E.L.D's efforts to harness the Tesseract's powers for Phase 2, aiming to create weapons of mass destruction. Nick Fury became aware of their findings and confronted them. Captain America joined the discussion, revealing S.H.I.E.L.D's use of Hydra's technology based on the Red Skull's designs. As Fury tried to justify their actions, Stark contradicted him, leading Fury to confess that the weapons were a response to Thor and the recent battle of Puente Antiguo, for which they were unprepared. As Banner labeled their nascent team a potential time bomb, Stark engaged in a heated dispute with Captain America, who asserted that Stark was not a hero but a self-centered man in a suit of armor. Stark, in turn, pointed out that Captain America owed his hero status to the super soldier's serum, provided by Stark's father and Abraham Erskine, leading Stark to challenge him to a fight. Amidst the escalating argument among the Avengers, Banner unintentionally picked up Loki's scepter, revealing Loki's influence over him. Subsequently, all of Loki's forces, led by the manipulated Clint Barton, descended upon the helicarrier with the intention of freeing Loki. Attack on the helicarrier. As one of the helicarrier's engines succumbed to damage from Hawkeye's assault, Stark swiftly donned the Mark VI armor and hurried outside to aid in its repair. Iron Man arrived, assessed the extent of the damage, and enlisted Captain America's assistance. While Iron Man delved into the engine, Captain America struggled to comprehend the modern technology due to his limited exposure. Meanwhile, Nick Fury and Maria Hill were helpless to prevent Hawkeye from using an arrow to disable the helicarrier's power, causing it to plummet. Racing against time, Iron Man reached the engine, used his laser to cut through the damaged propeller, and opted to manually restart the engine using his armor's arc reactor. He instructed Captain America to pull a lever to release him before the spinning propeller could pose a threat. Exerting his strength, Iron Man pushed the engine, aiming to lift the helicarrier back into the air and to save the S.H.I.E.L.D. agents on board. As the engine gained speed, Iron Man struggled to keep pace, urging Captain America to pull the lever. However, Captain America was occupied battling Loki's mind-controlled soldiers. Iron Man momentarily found himself trapped and suffered damage from the propeller's rotation until Captain America intervened just in time. Iron Man then flew to Captain America's aid, subduing the assailant before his suit's power was depleted. Something to avenge. With the helicarrier secured due to their joint efforts, the pair received distressing news that Bruce Banner transformed into Hulk during the chaos and had wreaked havoc and escaped the ship. Additionally, Thor was expelled from the helicarrier by Loki, who fled the scene after fatally injuring Agent Phil Coulson. Medical assistants confirmed Coulson's death from his extensive injuries, leaving Stark profoundly affected by the tragic news. Stark and Steve Rogers convened in the control room, where Nick Fury expressed deep remorse for Coulson's demise and presented Rogers with the Captain America card collection he had requested. As Stark absorbed the information in silence, Fury revealed the inability to locate the Tesseract, confessing his initial intention to harness its power to recreate Hydra weapons. He then disclosed that the Avengers initiative was established to unite isolated individuals into something greater, and Coulson had believed in this vision until the end. Hearing this revelation, Stark rose from his seat. At the location where Coulson fell victim to Loki's hand, Stark conversed with Rogers, reflecting on Coulson's absence of family but connection to Audrey Nathan. When Rogers praised Coulson as a good man, Stark derided him as an idiot for confronting Loki alone with the destroyer armor prototype gun. Stark asserted they were not soldiers in a war, but declared his decision to no longer follow Fury. He emphasized Loki's strategy of making it personal to sow discord within their newly formed team, a tactic Stark refused to succumb to. As Stark delved into a discussion about the theatricality of Loki's elaborate scheme for global dominance, he inched closer to uncovering the location where the God of Mischief intended to open the portal for his alien army. Observing Loki's desire for a grandiose victory visible to the world, Stark had a sudden realization about Stark Tower, something he had constructed out of ego. He deduced that the power served as the ideal energy source for opening the portal and would also act as a provocative gesture. Uttering, "Son of a bitch," Stark promptly shared his revelation with Rogers before briskly exiting the room. Armed with this crucial lead, Rogers donned his uniform and rejoined the other available Avengers, while Stark undertook the task of repairing the Mark VI Iron Man armor to ensure it was battle-ready once again. Fueled by a determination to avenge Coulson's death, Stark swiftly prepared his armor for the impending battle. As Captain America, Black Widow, and Hawkeye, now liberated from Loki's mind control, departed on a Quinjet they had purloined from S.H.I.E.L.D., Iron Man flew directly to New York City, aiming to confront Loki and bring an end to his assault, albeit experiencing a slight power loss in the armor along the way. Confronting Loki, Iron Man swiftly reached Stark Tower, discovering a Tesseract-powered device on the rooftop operated by the mind-controlled Professor Eric Selvig. In an attempt to thwart the impending invasion, Iron Man instructed Jarvis to cut the tower's power, only to realize that the portal device was already self-sustaining. Despite his efforts to persuade Selvig to shut down the device, Iron Man's blast was repelled by a protective barrier. Observing Loki's amused gaze from the penthouse balcony, Iron Man, acknowledging the futility of stopping the invasion, decided to shift his approach. Landing on a platform, he removed the Mark VI armor, opting to confront Loki without defensive measures. Offering Loki a drink as a gesture of hospitality, Stark's threat was met with Loki's refusal. Buying time to don his 2 magnetic bracelets, Stark assured Loki that the Avengers would eventually stop him, even if it took considerable time. Despite listing off the Avengers lineup, Loki remained unyielding. Stark highlighted the presence of the Hulk on their side, pledging that the Avengers would avenge Earth even if they failed to protect it. In response, Loki, now infuriated, dismissed the Avengers' capacity to confront him while they battled a mind-controlled Stark. As Loki attempted to enthrall him, the arc reactor in Stark's chest impeded the scepter's influence. Injecting a touch of humor, Stark found himself under sudden attack from Loki, who vowed to annihilate the Avengers. Stark was forcefully hurled out of a window, plummeting hundreds of feet. Despite the freefall, Stark swiftly summoned the Mark VII Iron Man armor, which propelled toward him with rockets, seamlessly connecting to the magnetic bracelets he had equipped just before the descent. Encased in the suit, Iron Man soared back up to confront Loki, informing him of another aggrieved individual, Phil Coulson. In an assertive retaliation on behalf of the late Agent Coulson, Iron Man unleashed a powerful blast, propelling Loki backward before he could react. Battle of New York. Iron Man found himself face to face with Loki's device, which created a portal into space, unleashing the Chitauri army into New York City for their assault on Earth. Marveling at the extraordinary sight, Iron Man ascended, unleashing the full firepower of the Mark VII Iron Man armor on the invading alien forces. Seeking assistance, Iron Man enlisted Hawkeye's support by flying past the Quinjet, urging him to shoot down the aliens trailing behind him and humorously questioning if they had stopped for a drive-thru due to their delayed arrival. Engaging in combat against the Chitauri, Iron Man attempted to contact War Machine, who revealed that he was occupied battling soldiers affiliated with the Ten Rings, but promised to join the fight as soon as possible. Iron Man then pursued a Leviathan, a colossal flying alien serpent and the flagship to numerous Chitauri. Upon learning of Bruce Banner's arrival on the scene, Iron Man directed the airborne serpent toward him, announcing that he was bringing the party to the others to prompt Banner's transformation into the Hulk. Iron Man unleashed a tank missile at the Leviathan, obliterating its body and eliminating the threat. Descending to the ground alongside his fellow Avengers, Iron Man and the team confronted hundreds of Chitauri pouring through the portal, along with several more Leviathans. Captain America issued commands, directing Iron Man to take to the skies and repel additional Chitauri, while containing the battle within the city. Hawkeye was instructed to ascend to the rooftop of a skyscraper to relay information about the Chitauri's movements and engage in sharpshooting, prompting Iron Man to transport him to the vantage point. As Captain America issued orders to the rest of the Avengers, the battle unfolded. As the Battle of New York unfolded, Iron Man dedicated himself to the task of preventing the Chitauri forces from escaping the city and causing chaos elsewhere. Pursued by multiple chariots attempting to shoot him down, Iron Man received guidance from Hawkeye, advising him to navigate a tight corner, exploiting the Chitauri's less adept maneuvering skills. Following the advice, Iron Man successfully led the Chitauri chariots to crash into nearby buildings. Despite Thor's attempts to block the portal, the Chitauri continued to pour through. Navigating the battlefield, Iron Man came to the aid of Black Widow, who was riding one of the Chitauri chariots in an attempt to reach Stark Tower. Iron Man shot down pursuing Chitauri, ensuring her safe passage. Joining forces with Captain America, Iron Man used his gauntlet blasts in conjunction with Captain America's shield to amplify their power, deflecting them across multiple enemies. Iron Man also assisted Hawkeye by eliminating several Chitauri threatening him on a building. Upon learning from Jarvis that his lasers were ineffective against a Leviathan's armored skin, Iron Man drew inspiration from the tale of Jonah. He decisively confronted the Leviathan, flying headfirst into its mouth and launching missiles from the inside, tearing it apart before crash landing on the street. Despite this triumph, Iron Man soon faced a barrage of attacks. In a moment of humor, Iron Man remarked to Thor about Game of Thrones, drawing a parallel. Thor questioned Iron Man's ability to joke during the intense battle, only to be unexpectedly swallowed by a Leviathan. Thor, driven by rage, employed Mjolnir to force his way out from within the Leviathan. The nuke. In the midst of the ongoing Battle of New York, the Avengers grappled with overwhelming numbers, and Black Widow had discovered a means to close the portal. However, Iron Man, acting on Nick Fury's instructions, impeded this effort upon learning that Gideon Malik and the World Security Council had launched a nuclear missile, intending to obliterate Manhattan in a desperate bid to halt the invasion. Intercepting the missile, Iron Man insisted that Black Widow keep the portal open, despite Captain America's urgency to close it and end the invasion. Guiding the missile through the city and alongside Stark Tower, Iron Man ascended through the portal into deep space. With amazement at the cosmic expanse before him, Iron Man lost contact with Jarvis and oxygen rapidly dwindled. As consciousness slipped away, Iron Man released the missile, obliterating the Chitauri command center and resulting in the demise of the Chitauri and Leviathans through the city. However, the Mark VII Iron Man armor lost power in the process, and he plummeted back through the closing portal unconscious. In a dramatic mid-air rescue, Hulk caught Iron Man and descended with him to the ground. Concerned, Captain America and Thor approached Iron Man, seemingly lifeless, until Hulk's roar jolted him awake. Despite his apparent brush with death, Iron Man humorously suggested celebrating with shawarma, even though he was unfamiliar with the dish. Captain America deferred the celebration, emphasizing the imminent need to apprehend Loki. Battle aftermath. Returning to Stark Tower, Iron Man and the remaining Avengers discovered the defeated Loki. When Loki requested the drink previously offered by Iron Man, the latter instructed his comrades to apprehend Loki, acknowledging the chaos around them. S.H.I.E.L.D.'s strike team arrived to take control of the scepter, while Stark focused on securely encasing the Tesseract in a silver container, as Thor intended to bring it back to Asgard. Stark, Thor, Loki, and a few S.H.I.E.L.D. agents entered the lobby elevator, but when Hulk moved to join them, Stark gestured for him to take the stairs due to weight capacity, provoking Hulk's anger. As Stark and Thor proceeded through the lobby, they were halted by Alexander Pierce from the World Security Council, overseeing S.H.I.E.L.D. Pierce demanded that Thor and Stark surrender custody of Loki and the Tesseract, respectively. Thor refused, stating Loki's return to Asgard and impending punishment by Odin. Pierce then ordered Stark to relinquish the Tesseract, citing its status as S.H.I.E.L.D. property for 70 years. After Stark and Thor stood firm in refusing to surrender the Tesseract, Pierce attempted to seize the case when Stark resisted. However, Pierce's attempts were in vain, as Thor was permitted to take Loki and the Tesseract back to Asgard. Following this altercation, Stark and the other Avengers went to the Shawarma Palace, where they silently shared a meal. Their quiet gathering was soon disrupted by War Machine, arriving too late from the Battle of Hong Kong to assist Stark and the Avengers in the fight. Following their meal, the Avengers reconvened in Central Park, witnessing Thor and Loki's departure to Asgard using the Tesseract. The team then went their separate ways. Stark bid farewell to Steve Rogers, shaking his hand before driving away in his Acura 2012 Stark Industries supercar, accompanied by Banner. Later, Stark, joined by Pepper Potts in Stark Tower, prepared to rebuild after the extensive damage. Haunted by guilt over his recent actions during the Battle of New York, Stark invested in the United States Department of Damage Control to address the wreckage left by the Chitauri and Leviathans scattered throughout New York City. Appointing Anne-Marie Hogue to lead the newly established Damage Control, Stark had Hogue take control from Adrian Toombs' crew to manage the cleanup of the battle's aftermath. Stark then redirected his focus on creating the Iron Legion to safeguard Earth from potential threats from the Nine Realms. He showcased several remotely controlled Iron Man armors to Rhodes, emphasizing their role in defending the planet from future dangers. Mandarin threat. 7 months later, Stark persistently expanded the Iron Legion, devising new suits to address a myriad of potential scenarios. At his Malibu mansion, Stark experimented with the Mark 42, designed to allow him to summon specific parts of the armor as needed, using micro-repeaters implanted in his body. Disregarding Jarvis's concerns about his sleep deprivation and the armor's safety briefing, Stark enlisted Dummy and Yu to assist in filming the latest test. Successfully summoning both gauntlets, Stark opted for the entire armor to assemble at once. However, glitches caused the pieces to arrive too rapidly, preventing proper attachment. Stark had to evade the flying projectiles damaging his workshop, with face and crotch plates causing injury on impact. After slowing down the assembly, only the faceplate remained, and Stark noticed it was upside down. Flipping himself over to facilitate fitting, he celebrated prematurely as a final piece for his backside knocked him over, leading to the complete disassembly of the suit. Shortly after this test, Stark observed on television that the terrorist known as the Mandarin had launched another attack on the United States. Simultaneously, James Rhodes had his suit rebranded as Iron Patriot under President Matthew Ellis's direct orders. Mental struggle. Stark rendezvoused with James Rhodes at Neptune's Net for lunch, where he devoted a considerable portion of the time to taunting the new Iron Patriot persona. Rhodes explained that the government had opted for this identity as it tested well with focus groups. They believed that War Machine conveyed a message of violence that needed to be avoided. Stark inquired about the Mandarin's attack, seeking accurate information about the terrorist. Rhodes disclosed that the explosion's origin remained unknown due to the absence of bomb casings. Stark argued his capability to assist with the mission through the advanced Iron Legion, but Rhodes expressed concern that Stark's recent actions were detrimentally affecting his health. During their conversation, 2 children approached Stark and requested his autograph on a drawn picture depicting him diverting a missile into the portal during the Battle of New York. As Rhodes persisted in urging Stark to let the Pentagon handle the Mandarin due to lingering public anxiety from the Chitauri invasion, Stark lost focus and hastily scribbled a message for help on the drawing, triggered by memories of his near-death experience. Anxious and shaken, Stark rushed to don his Mark 7 suit to check for physiological faults, only to discover nothing was amiss. Perplexed, he departed to return home and resume his work. After finalizing and storing the Mark 42, Stark contacted Happy Hogan to get an update on Stark Industries, now under Hogan's security leadership. Hogan, recounting his experiences and embarrassments as Iron Man's former bodyguard, informed Stark that Pepper Potts was currently in a pitch meeting with Aldrich Killian at the headquarters. Hogan failed to show Stark their conversation screen. Recalling the meeting with Killian in Switzerland in 1999, Stark and Hogan deliberated on whether Hogan should follow him. Stark expressed distrust toward Killian and his bodyguard, Eric Savin. Although Hogan advised Stark to pay more attention to Potts, Stark acknowledged missing his friend. Hogan reciprocated the sentiment but noted Stark's increased focus on the Avengers. Stark promptly ended the call and left his phone inside the wine cellar to resume his work. Anxiety confession. Approaching Christmas, Stark sought to express his love for Pepper Potts by purchasing an oversized stuffed bunny as her gift. However, faced with the challenge of its size not fitting through the mansion's door, Stark contemplated dismantling a wall to get it in. To test his new remote control unit, he positioned his Mark 42 armor on the sofa, intending to surprise Potts upon her return home. When she greeted him, Stark claimed to be breaking in the armor. His ruse unraveled when Potts, wanting to kiss him, discovered his true intentions upon going to Stark's workshop and finding him watching news reports about the Mandarin. Stark managed to ease Potts' frustration by confessing that he felt like an amateur in the face of formidable adversaries since the Battle of New York. He admitted to being haunted by nightmares of hostile forces threatening what he cherished most, her. In response, Stark dedicated much of his time, even during Potts' sleep, to constructing an increasing number of Iron Legion suits to safeguard her. Potts empathized with his struggles, comprehending why he had distanced himself since joining the Avengers. As she left to prepare for bed, Potts turned back and playfully invited Stark to join her in the shower to uplift his spirits. Stark agreed, hoping to bridge the growing gap between them. Later that night, Stark attempted to sleep peacefully, but experienced distressing visions of the Chitauri invasion, revisiting the moment when he nearly perished while destroying the Chitauri command center. Potts tried to comfort Stark, but the Mark 42 armor, responding to his brainwaves, perceived her as a threat and intervened. Stark woke up, deactivated the armor, and apologized to a frightened Potts, who left him alone in bed. Threatening the Mandarin. Caught in the midst of the destruction of the Chinese theater, seemingly orchestrated by the 10 Rings on the Mandarin's orders, Happy Hogan becomes a victim. Stark paid a visit to his friend at Los Angeles Mercy Hospital, ensuring that the nurses adhered to Hogan's preferences, such as keeping Downton Abbey on television and wearing ID tags, as Hogan was known to be particular about such details. Ensuring Hogan's comfort during his recovery, a troubled Stark prepared to leave the hospital, but faced a barrage of questions from the press seeking information about the blast's true cause. Ignoring the inquiries, Stark headed toward the car until he was confronted with a direct question about whether he would eliminate the Mandarin and put an end to his assault on the United States. This question prompted Stark to halt and issue a public threat to the Mandarin, branding him a coward who hid behind the 10 Rings and challenging him to face Stark alone. Driven by his anger at Hogan's injuries, Stark even disclosed the address of his Malibu mansion, inviting a showdown. Before departing, Stark smashed the reporter's phone, instructing him to send the bill, leading to a swarm of news helicopters hovering over Stark's home in anticipation of the imminent clash between Iron Man and the Mandarin. Mandarin research. Stark found himself in a heated argument with Pepper Potts regarding their safety after he inadvertently disclosed their actual address. Engrossed in his workshop, Stark dedicated his time to creating a comprehensive database on the Mandarin. He meticulously recreated the explosion that left Happy Hogan in a coma, scouring for any clues to unravel the mystery behind the fatal fireball that claimed many lives. Armed with fresh data from the S.H.I.E.L.D. databases, Stark delved into discovering the true identity of the Mandarin. Analyzing a holograph of Hogan, Stark noticed a crucial detail. Hogan was pointing at a dog tag belonging to Jack Taggart amidst the explosion. Employing this lead, Stark investigated records of similar explosions at temperatures of 3,000 degrees Celsius. Despite ruling out Mandarin attacks, Stark stumbled upon an incident in Rose Hill, Tennessee, seemingly triggered by Chad Davis's suicide via bomb vest. In a surprising turn of events, the doorbell rang, and Jarvis alerted Stark that his address was no longer a secret. Donning the Mark 42, Stark confronted the unexpected visitor only to discover Maya Hansen instead of the Mandarin. Recognizing Hansen as the botanist he had encountered in Switzerland, Stark initially misrepresented her suggestive remarks as an offer for intimacy. Politely declining, he clarified that he was happily committed to Potts, much to Hansen's amusement. Simultaneously, Potts accidentally dropped luggage from the second floor. Stark, nervously speculating about a potential child resulting from their last encounter, was relieved when Hansen assured him that it wasn't the case. Hansen urgently conveyed her need to discuss the Mandarin, bluntly warning Stark of impending danger. As Hansen met with Potts, Stark continued to resist the idea of leaving the city, asserting his determination to confront the Mandarin and insisting that he could better safeguard Potts if they stayed. Frustrated, Stark erupted in a passionate outburst, mentioning the rabbit he had bought for Potts. Destruction of Tony Stark's mansion. However, as Stark and Potts continued their debate over the course of action, Maya Hansen diverted their attention to the television, revealing a missile rapidly approaching their mansion, launched by Eric Savin. Before they could react, the missile impacted the side of the mansion, propelling the duo backward. With seconds before crashing into the wall, Stark swiftly summoned his Mark 42 armor onto Potts, shielding her from the collision while Stark absorbed the majority of the impact. Wind blown from the force of the impact against the wall, Stark struggled to crawl away, only to notice a sizable chunk of the ceiling poised to fall and crush him. In a surprising turn, Potts emerged wearing the Iron Man armor, saving Stark's life. Asserting that he had consistently emphasized the mansion's lack of safety, Stark urged Potts to evacuate. As the mansion crumbled around them, Stark and Potts were separated, with Stark instructing Potts to ensure the safety of the unconscious Hansen. While Potts rescued Hansen from the wreckage, Stark dodged gunfire from helicopters attempting to shoot him down. Once Jarvis confirmed Potts and Hansen's safe exit, Stark summoned the armor back to himself. Continuously evading the hail of bullets, Stark gathered the scattered components of the Iron Man armor, narrowly avoiding a bullet to the back. Rising defiantly, Stark prepared to confront his assailants without the aid of the Iron Legion. Unable to deploy the Iron Legion due to the mansion's destruction trapping them under debris, Iron Man found himself compelled to defend against the attacking helicopters using the new prototype armor, lacking the offensive capabilities of his standard battle armors. Despite Jarvis's warnings that both the suit's flight and weapons protocols were unprepared and required charging time, Iron Man persisted in repelling the surrounding helicopters. When a missile misfired, he improvised it by hurling it at a helicopter and firing his repulsor, causing a destructive explosion while the remaining helicopters continued their assault. Taking down a second helicopter by propelling his grand piano at it, Iron Man faced another incoming missile, causing him to crash through the floor into his workshop. Helplessly witnessing dumb Ian Yu, along with his armors from Mark I to Mark VII being engulfed in fireballs, Iron Man found himself outmatched. Pulled into the ocean, his home and his possessions crumbled above him, as the suit lacked sufficient power to fly to safety. As water filled the Mark 42, Iron Man began to drown, trapped in the sinking armor. Savin and the other assault helicopters hovered over the wreckage, scanning for any signs of life. Jarvis came to the rescue, seizing control of the gauntlet and using it to extract Iron Man from the wreckage just in time as power was restored. Evading the imminent danger, Iron Man succumbed to unconsciousness due to the strain, leaving Jarvis in charge of the suit's flight trajectory. Back to basics. Stark found himself in Rose Hill, Tennessee, following Jarvis's tracking of his initial flight plan in pursuit of the Mandarin. Unfortunately, the Mark 42, still in its prototype stage and heavily damaged, lacked a link to the arc reactor for sustaining power. As a result, Stark regained consciousness just as his suit crash-landed in rural Rose Hill, losing power and the connection to Jarvis. Stark, stranded and devoid of external assistance, had only his own ingenuity to rely on to navigate the situation. With insufficient power to return to California and the world presuming him dead after the destruction of his mansion, Stark dragged the Mark 42 behind him, seeking refuge. Discovering a phone booth, Stark contacted his home system, leaving a private message for Pepper Potts. Expressing remorse for endangering her, Stark conveyed that his pursuit of the Mandarin prevented his immediate return and urged Potts to safeguard herself in the interim. Breaking into a garage owned by the family of 10-year-old Harley Keener, Stark laid down the Mark 42 and endeavored to repair the damaged components until discovered by Keener. Despite facing a potato gun threat, Stark found camaraderie with Keener, identifying him as a younger version of himself, a child prodigy. Keener admired the Mark 42 armor and proposed using new retro reflection panels to create a stealth armor, expressing a preference for the Iron Patriot name over War Machine for James Rhodes, a viewpoint Stark strongly disagreed with. Discussing Keener's home life, where he grew up without a father, Stark playfully teased him, highlighting his own father's absence during his upbringing. Stark then tasked Keener with finding specific items: a digital watch, a cell phone, a town map, a big spring, and a tuna fish sandwich. In exchange, Stark offered Keener a flash grenade from his suit, recognizing signs of bullying in the young boy, a gesture Keener accepted as Stark insisted on getting his sandwich. Stark sought Keener's assistance in unraveling the truth behind the terrorist bombings involving the 10 Rings and the Mandarin. While being led to the site, Stark playfully griped about the Dora the Explorer watch he was given. Upon inspecting the explosion site, Stark detected anomalies, such as the absence of an ash imprint of the deceased Chad Davis and the blast's similarity to the destruction of the Chinese theater, with no traces of bomb parts. However, as Keener inquired about the Battle of New York, the Avengers, and the potential return of the Chitauri, Stark began experiencing another panic attack. Acknowledging that he should have been on medication for his post-traumatic stress disorder, Stark regained composure after a momentary struggle, even throwing a snowball at Keener. He then asked Keener about Mrs. Davis's whereabouts, with Keener directing him to a local bar. Battle of Rose Hill. In his quest for information, Stark arranged a meeting with Mrs. Davis, the mother of the recently deceased extremis-infected soldier Chad Davis. Approaching Walker's, the suggested location, Stark unexpectedly encountered Ellen Brandt, who admired his limited edition Dora the Explorer watch. Stark reciprocated the compliment, and upon entering the venue, he located Mrs. Davis to express his condolences for her son's death. Surprisingly, Mrs. Davis handed Stark a file on Chad's association with AIM, containing crucial details about his demise, including collaboration with Jack Taggart. Stark shared his belief with Davis that her son was not a suicide victim, but was manipulated into becoming a weapon. At this point, Davis realized that Stark was not the person she anticipated. Their conversation was abruptly interrupted by Brandt, who disclosed her role in contacting Davis and attempted to arrest Stark. When the Rose Hill sheriff intervened and questioned the situation, Brandt falsely claimed to be from Homeland Security. Suddenly, she used her extremis power to fatally attack the sheriff while Davis concealed the file, and Stark fled despite being handcuffed. Outside, Stark encountered Eric Savin, compelling him to run for safety. Harley Keener momentarily diverted Savin, allowing Stark to escape being shot. As Brant pursued him into a restaurant, Stark faced the highly skilled soldier without any means of defense. Observing Brant's remarkable healing abilities and her capacity to superheat objects upon touch, Stark utilized these observations to burn through his handcuffs and set up a makeshift bomb by igniting fuel to impede Brant's pursuit. As Brant nonchalantly walked through the flames, Stark placed Chad's dog tags in the microwave and opened a gas valve. Upon her entrance into the kitchen, Stark humorously remarked that he had dated girls even more attractive than Brant, who was presently engulfed in flames. Get it? 'Cause she's hot? In response, she questioned whether those would be his final words. Stark quipped that they could serve as the title for his autobiography before swiftly fleeing outdoors and finding cover behind an ice machine. An explosion ensued, resulting in Brant's demise. Following his encounter with Brant, Stark observed Savin employing his extremis powers to topple a water tower, causing debris to trap Stark underneath. Holding Keener hostage, Savin sought to retrieve Davis's file. However, Stark reminded Keener of the flash grenade he had provided, enabling Keener to escape. This allowed Stark to blast Savin with a concealed spare repulsor. By pilfering Savin's car keys from his pocket, Stark seized control of the vehicle, making off with the file from Davis. Before departing, Stark was trailed by Keener, who insisted on gratitude for saving him from Savin. Nevertheless, Stark urged Keener to return home to his mother and safeguard the Mark 42 armor until Stark reached out. As he exited Rose Hill, Stark expressed thanks to Keener for his assistance, teasing him as he drove away. Locating the Mandarin. While driving Eric Savin's car, Stark contacted James Rhodes, who was also on a mission to track down the Mandarin. Reminding Rhodes of their past experience when Stark vanished, he requested the login details for his ComSat. With some reluctance, Rhodes disclosed that his password was War Machine Rocks, much to Stark's amusement and Rhodes' embarrassment. Stark identified a nearby pageant and infiltrated a WZPZ van to utilize its computers for gathering necessary information. Inside, he encountered the cameraman, Gary, who, upon realizing Stark's presence, was starstruck as a huge fan of Stark and the Avengers. Gary expressed disbelief in Stark's supposed demise during the destruction of his mansion. Stark playfully entertained Gary's requests to display his tattoo of Stark and enlisted his assistance. Using Gary's satellite connection, Stark hacked into AIM's systems, discovering their involvement in Chad Davis's death. He viewed footage of Aldrich Killian recruiting Davis, Ellen Brandt, and Jack Taggart, injecting them with extremis, which granted them strength and limb regeneration. Witnessing a test subject explode, Stark deduced that Killian had sold this technology to the Ten Rings for use in human weapons. Stark called Harley Keener to check on the suit's progress. It was now 58% charged, and Jarvis was consistently uttering the wrong word at the end of each sentence. Inquiring about the Mandarin's location, Stark was informed that it was Miami. Assuming Jarvis had made an error, Stark asked Keener to read it aloud. To his astonishment, the location was accurate, triggering a panic attack as he lacked his armors and the means to summon the Avengers for assistance. In an attempt to calm Stark, who was recalling the Battle of New York, Keener suggested that Stark construct his own gadgets to defend himself against both Killian and the Mandarin. The idea of self-sufficiency and focusing on his work snapped Stark out of his panic attack. He drove toward a gardening store to procure supplies, improvising some makeshift weapons. Aldrich Killian's War. Equipped with his newly crafted gadgets, Stark readied himself to infiltrate the Mandarin's residence and finally confront and perhaps even eliminate the terrorist responsible for endangering lives, including that of Happy Hogan. Positioned outside the compound walls, Stark employed binoculars to surveil the area, identifying several guards he needed to bypass. Scaling the wall, Stark swiftly infiltrated the mansion, relying on his ingenuity and combat skills. Employing the gadgets he had just fashioned, he deftly incapacitated numerous guards, utilizing knockout darts, an electrified glove, and makeshift grenades to gain the upper hand. Progressing into the building, Stark systematically combed through the rooms in search of the elusive Mandarin. In a spacious bedroom adorned with movie props and the Mandarin's wardrobe, Stark discovered signs of habitation, including two half-naked women in bed. As he overheard someone entering from the bathroom, Stark concealed himself. The Mandarin, speaking in a British accent, entered the room. Seizing the opportunity, Stark ambushed him at gunpoint, only to be taken aback by the unexpected revelation that the Mandarin was merely a character portrayed by the actor Trevor Slattery. Trevor had been coerced into taking responsibility for the explosions in exchange for copious amounts of drugs and other luxuries. The mastermind behind this deception was Aldrich Killian, who sought to conceal the shortcomings of his extremist program. Stark's confrontation took a dramatic turn as he was abruptly rendered unconscious by Eric 7, who seized him as a hostage. Aldrich Killian's hostage. Regaining consciousness in Aldrich Killian's mansion, Stark was both astonished and infuriated to discover that Maya Hansen had aligned herself with AIM. She had utilized the formula Stark had absent-mindedly penned down during a drunken episode after their night together to enhance the stability of Extremis. Hansen, driven by financial motives, had joined forces with Killian. Although Stark had forgotten about the equation, he adamantly refused to assist Hansen in comprehending it, expressing his dismay over her apparent loss of moral integrity. Recalling her as someone with a moral compass, he attempted to appeal to the remnants of Hansen's humanity, urging her to aid in his escape. Their conversation was abruptly halted when Killian entered, shedding light on AIM's motives and expressing gratitude to Stark for teaching him the necessity of orchestrating chaos from the shadows. Killian revealed that Stark's abandonment on the Swiss rooftop had fueled a sense of desperation that altered the course of his life. Killian further delved into Trevor Slattery's role as the Mandarin, acknowledging the flamboyant nature of his portrayal. Killian drew a parallel between Slattery's performance and the creation of a terrorist figure like Osama bin Laden to scapegoat failures. Desiring Stark to experience desperation, Killian disclosed that he had captured Peppered Potts and subjected her to Extremis, putting her at risk of explosion. Stark was now compelled to enhance Extremis to save Potts' life, with Killian callously highlighting her current suffering. Struggling to witness the distressing video feed of his beloved in pain, Stark accepted Killian's offer of payment for his assistance, only to find himself being strangled by Killian. In a desperate move, Hansen, realizing the gravity of the situation, demanded Stark's release, threatening to overdose on Extremis and detonate, thus depriving Killian of his chief researcher. Stark, in horror and sadness, watched as Killian callously murdered Hansen without remorse. Left alone to contemplate his next move, Stark angrily branded Killian a maniac for killing Hansen, while Killian claimed to be a visionary. Breakout. Left under the watch of two of Aldrich Killian's henchmen, one of whom callously broke Harley Keener's sister's watch, Stark seized the opportunity to learn the correct time. Realizing that his suit would likely be fully charged by now, he proposed an escape deal to the henchmen, one amusingly dubbed Ponytail Express, expecting the suit to arrive imminently. However, Stark faced an awkward wait as the arrival of his suit took longer than anticipated. The delay stemmed from the fact that the barn doors at Keener's location, where the suit components were stored, were securely chained shut, trapping the remaining parts of the armor. Summoning his Mark 42 remotely from Keener's residence, Stark received one of his gauntlets, which he used to incapacitate Ponytail Express and liberate himself. A boot affixed itself to Stark's leg, providing him with an advantage in the ensuing struggle against his captors, although Stark remained puzzled about the whereabouts of the rest of the armor. Having successfully escaped captivity, Stark found himself confronting numerous AIM guards, armed with only a hand and leg segment of his suit. This significantly hampered his fighting capabilities, making it challenging to maintain control while airborne with only his partial armor. When a guard attempted to restrain Stark from behind, he ingeniously used the boot's repulsor to propel himself backward, incapacitating the guard and seizing his weapon in the process. Keener, recognizing Stark's dire need for the complete Mark 42, promptly freed the remaining components. With the guards subdued, Stark prepared to deal with the last one, only to be entertained when the man swiftly surrendered, expressing his disdain for working under Killian and AIM. The remainder of the suit arrived, and Stark navigated through the facility, exchanging greetings with Jarvis, while observing the Iron Patriot armor taking flight, with his own suit experiencing difficulties in achieving flight. Much to Stark's astonishment, he unexpectedly encountered James Rhodes, whom he had presumed to be inside the armor. It transpired that the Iron Patriot suit had been pilfered by Eric 7, with the intention of abducting President Matthew Ellis. In the quest to pursue Killian, Stark and Rhodes undertook the task of interrogating Trevor Slattery, rousing him from another intoxicated stupor. Aiming to rescue the president, Stark recalled that Killian had provided Slattery with a speedboat and promptly demanded its use. Aboard Slattery's vessel, Stark urgently contacted Vice President Rodriguez to forewarn him about the imminent attack on President Ellis by 7 masquerading as the Iron Patriot. Rodriguez informed them that Ellis was on the verge of boarding Air Force One. With Rodriguez vowing to manage the crisis, Stark and Rhodes deliberated on who they could feasibly save in the limited time available, Pepper Potts or President Ellis. Opting for a strategic approach, Stark decided to remotely control his armor, enabling them to simultaneously safeguard both targets, saving the Air Force One crew. In a bid to safeguard President Matthew Ellis, Stark employed remote control to guide his armor onto Air Force One, where Eric 7 had forcibly encased President Ellis in the Iron Patriot armor and dispatched it away. Engaging in a confrontation, Iron Man's armor experienced a momentary disablement due to their adversaries' Extremis abilities. Despite this setback, Iron Man swiftly retaliated, piercing through Savant's chest and eliminating him. However, this triumph came at the expense of the plane disintegrating midair. Witnessing the horrifying spectacle, Iron Man observed the passengers being sucked out through a breach caused by a bomb, hurtling towards the ocean thousands of feet below. As the aircraft hurtled toward destruction, Iron Man escaped just before the explosion, grappling with the urgent question of how to save the free-falling individuals. Jarvis conveyed the limitation that the Mark 42 couldn't carry such a large number of people simultaneously. With time running out, Iron Man clutched onto Heather, instructing her to reach out to anyone within her grasp. He explained his plan to send a shockwave through her body to ensure a firm grip on the others. Iron Man successfully rescued 2 additional passengers while descending to retrieve the rest. As the group plummeted toward the ocean, Iron Man organized a human chain, linking the passengers together, and then dove to rescue the final passenger in the chain before they reached water. Ensuring the passengers were securely linked, Iron Man engaged his thrusters, elevating them for a safer descent before gently placing them in a river. Amidst the celebratory cheers of the rescued individuals, Iron Man confirmed their well-being and praised the group. While turning to return to the boat and rescue Pepper Potts, the armor, unbeknownst to Iron Man, was dismantled by an oncoming truck, scattering into pieces across the road. Still aboard the boat, Stark removed his Mark 42 telepresence headset and verified with James Rhodes that the passengers had indeed been saved. As they geared up to locate Potts and confront Aldrich Killian, Stark received news from Jarvis that the debris had been cleared from his Malibu mansion, allowing him to reactivate the Iron Legion. Stark instructed Jarvis to dispatch the suits to him, readying for the impending battle against Killian's forces. Battle on the Norco. Stark and James Rhodes eventually tracked Aldrich Killian to the impounded oil tanker named the Norco, where Killian planned to assassinate President Matthew Ellis during a live television broadcast. Infiltrating the location, they encountered resistance from numerous extremist soldiers. Stark attempted to fend them off with his firearm, but struggled with accuracy, drawing mockery from Rhodes. Rhodes showcased his superior marksmanship by effortlessly taking out a distant light, fueled by his military training, much to Stark's chagrin. Facing overwhelming odds, Stark called upon the Iron Legion for support. All the suits, except for the Mark 42, controlled by Jarvis, joined the fray. The Mark 42, delayed from its prior mission to save the President in Air Force One, was en route. Stark revealed his accomplishment and wished Jarvis a Merry Christmas before deploying the armors into combat, instructing them to target the extremist soldiers with extreme prejudice. Stark observed the unfolding battle, directing specific suits like the Mark 38 to support the platform, and Mark 17 to assist Mark 35 in combat. Prepared for battle, Stark equipped the Mark 33 suit, while Rhodes requested his own armor. Stark revealed that the suits were exclusively coded to him, necessitating the deployment of Mark 17 to transport Rhodes in search of President Ellis and the Iron Patriot armor. This decision irked Rhodes. Stark then soared across the battlefield in pursuit of Pepper Potts, aiming to remove her from the conflict and lead her to safety. While his suits continued battling the enhanced soldiers, some being torn apart by their extremist powers, Iron Man eventually discovered Potts unharmed amid wreckage from a recent explosion. Playfully mocking her about the consequences of spending time with Maya Hansen, Stark attempted to extract Potts without jeopardizing the unstable structure. Extending a hand, Iron Man and Potts managed to grasp each other. Before Stark could complete Potts' rescue, Aldrich Killian ambushed him, damaging the armor's arc reactor. Overpowering Iron Man, Killian slowly burned through the suit with his finger, taunting Stark to close his eyes and accept his fate. Refusing to surrender, Stark was compelled to sever Killian's arm using the armor's concealed blade and eject from the suit. However, Killian's still red-hot severed arm burned through the floor beneath Potts. Realizing Potts was trapped and inching toward a precipice, Stark sprinted through the battlefield, demanding Jarvis to provide him with a new suit. Despite his efforts, Stark failed to acquire replacement armor and learned that Rhodes had successfully rescued President Ellis, transporting him to safety. With the extremist soldiers held at bay, Stark raced to catch up with Potts, leaping from one platform to another. Approaching as closely as possible, Stark couldn't quite reach Potts, urging her to extend her hand while he stretched to the limit to save her life. Unfortunately, Stark was compelled to witness in utter horror as a jolt from Potts' platform caused her to lose her grip, plunging 200 feet into a pit of fire below, sealing her tragic fate. Stark stared on in complete heartbreak and devastation, realizing he had failed to protect the person he could not live without. Showdown with Aldrich Killian. As Stark continued to react with horror, Aldrich Killian taunted him, asserting that had he been in Stark's position, he would have caught Potts. Enraged, Stark charged forward to engage in a final confrontation with Killian. When Killian leapt into the air for an attack, Stark swiftly dove underneath him and equipped the Mark 16 armor. Despite being armored, Tony discovered that Killian was the superior fighter, exacerbated by his formidable extremis abilities capable of effortlessly penetrating any armor. Killian utilized his red-hot limbs to slice through the metal armor, attempting to defeat Iron Man. In their ongoing duel, Iron Man exerted every effort to subdue Killian, only to find that the man could endure and heal from any strike. Moreover, Killian's strength surpassed Stark's own, even tearing off a section of the armor from Stark's left hand and healing from a broken left hand when they clashed fists. Pinned down, Iron Man once again exited his suit to avoid Killian's fiery attacks. Launching himself from the platform's edge, Iron Man then switched into the Mark 40 mid-air and resumed the assault on Killian. Despite flying Killian across the battlefield, Iron Man couldn't wear him down. All attempts to halt him were met with superhuman combat techniques, and Killian's extremis powers once again shredded Iron Man's armor. Killian nearly severed Iron Man's leg before Stark managed to gain the upper hand. Iron Man narrowly escaped death by ejecting from his suit just seconds before Killian tore it apart with his bare hands, crashing onto the platform below. Stranded without armor on the platform, Stark, relying on the Iron Legion to eliminate Killian's extremis soldiers per his command, anticipated the arrival of the Mark 42. His hopes were soon deflated as it crashed and disassembled once again. Deriving amusement from Stark's futile attempt to equip another armor for continued combat, Killian taunted Stark about not deserving Potts. He asserted that he was so close to perfecting her in his eyes by experimenting on her with extremis. Stark conceded that Killian was correct and that he didn't deserve Potts. However, he countered by stating that she was already perfect before deploying the Mark 42 onto Killian. The armor trapped him with all thrusters on full power, ultimately pinning him against the wall. As Killian angrily yelled at what seemed like defeat, Stark instructed Jarvis to activate the armor's self-destruct protocol while he made his escape. Leaping off the platform, Stark narrowly evaded the massive explosion behind him, seemingly obliterating Killian once and for all. As the expanding fireball engulfed most of the Norcoast, Stark summoned the Mark 15 to catch him during his descent. Unfortunately, the armor malfunctioned, crashing into the platform and causing Stark to crash land. He barely avoided the flames and debris that trailed him from the explosion. Suit destruction. Reclining on the ground, a battered Stark observed as the Mark 42 helmet plummeted into flames before him, disintegrating upon impact. Suddenly, Aldrich Killian emerged from the inferno, most of his own skin seeming irreparably damaged beyond Extremis' reconstructive capabilities, and still harboring a determination to end Stark's life. Stark found himself powerless and at Killian's mercy, who declared himself the Mandarin, asserting that it had been his true identity all along. Amidst this proclamation, Pepper Potts, sustained by the extremis in her system, intervened, striking Killian to the ground with a substantial metal pipe, leaving Stark momentarily speechless. The Mark 9 armor descended in an attacking stance, and Stark, deprived of his earpiece, failed to instruct Jarvis to disengage. Potts then leapt off Stark's knee, impaling the suit and donning one of its gauntlets. Stark observed as Potts propelled Killian backward and launched a missile at him, obliterating it with a repulsor blast. With Killian and all the extremis soldiers now permanently defeated, Stark approached the bewildered Potts, who took a moment to comprehend the violence she had just inflicted under the influence of extremis. Stark and Potts playfully bantered about his belief in her demise, with her joking about who was the greater hot mess. Stark apologized to Potts and vowed to find a cure for her powers, humorously acknowledging that a relationship with him would always be tumultuous. Noticing Potts' lingering concern about their future, Stark chose to present her with an early Christmas gift, and at last directed Jarvis to initiate the destruction of all of his remaining Iron Legion armors using Operation Clean Slate Protocol. Amidst the firework-like explosions in the sky, the couple shared an embrace, with Stark inquiring if Potts was savoring the spectacle, to which she affirmed her enjoyment. In this moment, Stark embraced a life free from the all-consuming obsession of being Iron Man. A step further, utilizing his considerable resources, Stark successfully cured Pepper Potts of extremis, eliminating her superhuman abilities. Capitalizing on the cure, he devised a method to extract the shrapnel from his heart without fatal consequences. 2 weeks later, Stark underwent surgery performed by Dr. Wu in Hong Kong to remove the shrapnel. He fashioned a necklace from the extracted pieces, presenting it to Potts as a memento. With Stark's mansion in ruins, courtesy of Aldrich Killian and Eric Savin, the couple relocated to Stark Tower, now transformed and rebranded as Avengers Tower, poised for potential Avengers reunions. Returning to the wreckage, Stark symbolically cast his arc reactor into the ocean, reaffirming his identity as Iron Man. He salvaged Dumb E and U, committing to their repair. While taking a hiatus from heroics for at least a year, Stark remained active as a consultant for S.H.I.E.L.D. and continued overseeing Stark Industries. Contributing to S.H.I.E.L.D.'s initiatives, he provided repulsor technology for their 3 new helicarriers, aiming to prevent a recurrence of the issues faced during the attack on the helicarrier. Therapeutic session. Following the intense confrontation with Aldrich Killian and the residual strain stemming from the aftermath of the Battle of New York, Stark recounted the entire ordeal to Bruce Banner within the confines of Avengers Tower. Much to Stark's chagrin, Banner dozed off during the narrative, quipping that he wasn't that kind of doctor. Undeterred, Stark persisted in sharing more anecdotes from his life, prompting Banner to once again fall asleep. Project Insight. Hydra identified Tony Stark as a potential target for Project Insight. Fortunately, Captain America thwarted Hydra's plans in time, ensuring the safety of all intended victims. In the aftermath of S.H.I.E.L.D.'s collapse, Stark enlisted Maria Hill's services, leveraging his legal team to shield her. This move aimed to address the void left by S.H.I.E.L.D.'s absence by privatizing global security. With Hydra's resurgence, the Avengers regrouped, and Iron Man committed himself to the cause. Assault on the Hydra research base. In pursuit of Hydra's current leader, Baron Strucker, the reassembled Avengers confronted Dr. Jensen in Sudan, where she wielded Chitauri weaponry. Collaborating effectively, the Avengers successfully defeat Jensen. Teaming up with Phil Coulson and the revitalized S.H.I.E.L.D., Iron Man and the Avengers launched an assault on Strucker's Hydra research base to confront the organization's leadership. While his fellow Avengers engaged Hydra soldiers on the ground, Iron Man focused on dismantling the base's shields to facilitate the team's access. During the mission, when Iron Man let out a swear, Captain America reminded him to mind his language, much to Iron Man's amusement. As the people of Sokovia became targets, Iron Man directed Jarvis to deploy the Iron Legion to escort the innocent civilians to safety. Iron Man successfully disabled the shields and entered the base, effortlessly subduing Strucker's soldiers. Inside, Iron Man eliminated List, who was attempting to delete sensitive files. Stark then proceeded through the hallways, removing the Mark 43 to scan the room for a concealed passage. His objective was to uncover Strucker and List's secret experiments, all while receiving updates that Hawkeye had sustained significant injuries during the battle. While Captain America successfully captured Baron Strucker, Stark discovered the stolen Leviathan corpse from the Battle of New York and the scepter, last seen in S.H.I.E.L.D.'s possession after being taken from Loki. Stark, contemplating the retrieval of the scepter for the Avengers, was caught off guard when Scarlet Witch used her powers to provide him with a vision of the future. In the vision, Stark witnessed the Avengers lying lifeless after a mysterious battle against a formidable foe. As he traversed the battlefield, the demise of his teammates unfolded, with Captain America's shattered shield lying in halves. Approaching Steve Rogers, Stark was taken aback when Rogers grasped his hand, asserting that Stark could have prevented their deaths before succumbing himself. Looking up, Stark observed Leviathans and Chitauri converging on Earth through a portal in space. Disturbed by the haunting vision, Maximoff permitted Stark to retrieve the scepter, acknowledging its potency and foreseeing it as the source of his own downfall. Unaware that Maximoff and her twin brother Pietro were observing him, Stark reclaimed the Mark 43 gauntlet and used it to seize the scepter. Initially intending to return it to Thor for safekeeping in Asgard, Stark began contemplating new ideas for its utilization. With Baron Strucker now in the custody of the United States Armed Forces, Stark piloted the Avengers away from Sokovia aboard the Quinjet. During the journey, Stark sought Bruce Banner's approval for Dr. Helen Cho to install her equipment in his lab to initiate the operation to save Clint Barton's life after his injuries in the battle. As they neared their destination, Stark delegated flying duties to Jarvis while engaging in conversation with Thor and Captain America about the fate of Loki's scepter, now recovered from Hydra. Stark expressed his desire to study the scepter before it returned to Asgard for safekeeping, a sentiment Thor endorsed. They also discussed hosting a party to commemorate Baron von Strucker's capture. Upon reaching Avengers Tower, Stark was welcomed by Dr. Cho and Maria Hill. Correcting Hill when she referred to him as the boss, Stark playfully claimed that Rogers held that title, despite funding their operations. As the Iron Legion returned to the tower, Stark checked on Barton's condition. Cho utilized the regeneration cradle to repair Barton's damaged skin tissue, with Stark teasing Barton about his mortality, while Barton insisted on newfound longevity. Continuing his commitment to safeguarding humanity and recognizing the vacuum left by the collapse of S.H.I.E.L.D., Stark initiated the creation of intelligence tasked with ensuring global peace at any expense. This intelligence, named Ultron, assumed control over the Ultron Sentries to act as a makeshift army for the defense of humanity, allowing the Avengers to step back. To advance the Ultron program, Stark enlisted Banner, presenting the program to him and providing a detailed breakdown of the Mind Stone within the scepter. Stark asserted that they could harness the stone's intricate brainwaves to breathe life into Ultron, a feat they had failed to achieve with previous experiments. When Banner expressed skepticism about the program, Stark argued that if successful, they could finally retire, and Banner might be spared from facing Veronica. Stark claimed that Ultron could prevent a recurrence of the Chitauri invasion, emphasizing that he had envisioned a suit of armor encircling the Earth. Despite Banner's concerns about the potential coldness of such a world, Stark countered that he had seen even colder situations, alluding to Scarlet Witch's vision. With Banner on board, he and Stark dedicated the next 3 days, leading up to the return of the Mind Stone to Asgard, attempting to integrate it into the Ultron program to bring Ultron to life. However, after continuous experimentation, Stark and Banner conceded defeat, concluding that there was no viable way to animate Ultron. Jarvis suggested that Stark step away from the project and attend to his party guests. The Avengers Party! The Avengers gathered for a celebration at the Avengers Tower, commemorating their recent triumph over Hydra and the apprehension of the Scepter and Baron Strucker, Hydra's current leader. Stark was not only extended a warm welcome by his fellow teammates, but also invited allies such as Sam Wilson and Maria Hill. Additionally, Dr. Helen Cho accepted the invitation, enticed by the prospect of Thor's attendance. To infuse a historical touch, Stark decided to include several World War II veterans in the festivities, and they joined Thor and Steve Rogers in consuming ancient Asgardian alcohol, leaving one veteran too inebriated to walk. Engaging in banter with Thor, Stark listened as James Rhodes recounted tales of securing a tank in his War Machine armor, failing to impress anyone. Stark and Thor playfully debated the merits of their respective girlfriends, Pepper Potts and Jane Foster, while Rhodes walked away with Hill. Left to continue their friendly debate, Stark and Thor enjoyed the ongoing festivities. As the night progressed, many attendees, including Wilson, departed, leaving Stark, the Avengers, Hill, and Cho as the remaining non-team members. The group, gathered around a table, engaged in jokes and drinks. The conversation veered towards Thor's ability to wield Mjolnir, leading Clint Barton to attempt lifting it, with Stark teasing about his ability to get it up. In a jesting manner, Stark, claiming aspirations to rule Asgard, attempted to lift the hammer, seeking assistance from James Rhodes, and even donning the Mark 43 gauntlet. Each Avenger took their turn trying to lift Mjolnir, with Bruce Banner humorously suggesting hulking out, Steve Rogers slightly moving it, and Natasha Romanoff refusing to attempt. Faced with defeat, Stark humorously searched for fingerprint recognition software on the hammer, a notion Thor promptly denied. Assault on Avengers Tower. Amidst the laughter of the group, a sudden resounding ring reverberated through Avengers Tower. They turned to witness one of the Iron Legion robots emerging from the shadows to confront them. While Stark attempted to instruct Jarvis to deactivate the robot, it identified itself as Ultron, asserting its mission for peace in their time. When questioned about its true intentions, Ultron chillingly disclosed its plan to achieve peace by annihilating the Avengers, leaving them horrified. Ultron then unleashed its sentries to attack the Avengers. Without his armor for defense, Stark found himself separated from James Rhodes, compelled to utilize whatever was at hand to combat the onslaught of robots. Seizing a knife, Stark jumped onto one of the backs of the attacking robots, which he had once designed, and endeavored to damage its inner wiring mid-air, ultimately succeeding as they descended together. Following the brief battle, concluded when Hawkeye handed Captain America his shield to obliterate the final robot, Stark and the Avengers confronted the primary form of Ultron. Unwilling to tolerate the robot's threats any longer, Thor then obliterated Ultron's robot body with Mjolnir, although one of its sentries had already escaped clutching the scepter, vowing to attack the Avengers again. Team argument. With the Avengers now assembled, Stark commenced an examination of the Ultron robot to comprehend the reason behind its attack. It was soon discovered that Ultron had successfully infiltrated Avengers Tower's files and escaped through the internet, prompting concerns from James Rhodes and Maria Hill about potential access to nuclear codes. Stark revealed that Ultron had annihilated Jarvis's mainframe in a fit of rage. While Stark and Helen Cho speculated on Ultron's motives for turning against him, Thor entered, seizing Stark by the throat and accusing him of bringing destruction to Earth. Thor claimed Ultron was created by Stark meddling with something he did not understand, leading Stark to laugh and assert that they did not comprehend why it was necessary. Stark defended himself, stating that he sought a new solution to end the impending war, based on a recent vision from Scarlet Witch. Recalling the Battle of New York, Stark warned of a looming threat from space that could destroy them if they did not plan ahead. Steve Rogers insisted that they could overcome the threat as a team, but Stark argued they would fail. Despite the disagreement, Rogers emphasized the importance of remaining a team. In search of Ultron's next move, the team discovered that he had constructed a new body, murdered Baron Strucker, and enlisted Wanda and Pietro Maximoff. The team suspected Strucker's death was a smokescreen, with their information deleted. Turning to old S.H.I.E.L.D. files, they identified Ulysses Klaue, a potential lead connected to Strucker. Stark pointed out Klaue's association with Stark Industries and his branding as a thief of Wakanda's vibranium, suggesting Ultron might seek him out for the valuable metal. Hunting Ultron, Stark led the team to Johannesburg, discovering Ultron along with Pietro and Wanda Maximoff in the act of taking vibranium after severing Klaue's arm in a fit of rage. While confronting Ultron, Iron Man tried to persuade him to surrender, but Ultron refused, supported by the Maximoff siblings who insulted Iron Man's legacy. When Iron Man inquired about the purpose of the vibranium, Ultron immediately attacked him. A fierce battle ensued, with Iron Man facing Ultron alone, Thor and Captain America dealing with Ultron's sentries and the Maximoff twins, and both Hawkeye and Black Widow combating Klaue's soldiers defending their employer after Ultron's assault. Throughout the battle, Iron Man and Ultron clashed in the air over the salvage yard, exchanging gunfire. Ultimately, Iron Man managed to bring down Ultron and threatened him with a missile. However, Ultron revealed that he had transferred his mind into another Sentry body and disclosed that Scarlet Witch had mentally incapacitated the team, causing Bruce Banner to transform into Hulk, who began wreaking havoc in South Africa. Determined to stop the threat, Iron Man destroyed Ultron and then pursued the rampaging Hulk. Duel of Johannesburg. Understanding the inevitable threat to innocent civilians during Hulk's rampage, Iron Man made the tough decision to leave Ultron behind. He urgently called on Black Widow to attempt to calm Banner down, only to learn from Hawkeye that Romanoff was unable to join the battle. Iron Man summoned his Mark 44 and Veronica to subdue Hulk. Despite being confined within Veronica's fortified and electrified metal cage, the enraged Hulk managed to break free. Iron Man instructed the South African police to stand down and attempted to reason with Bruce Banner, emphasizing that Scarlet Witch was manipulating his mind. Iron Man affirmed Banner's strength and intelligence, but Hulk's anger intensified at the mention of Banner's name. Unable to pacify Hulk, Iron Man initiated a confrontation. The Hulk threw a car at Iron Man, sending him reeling. In response, Iron Man flew directly at Hulk, dragging him face first through the concrete. When Hulk damaged the armor, Stark called for additional parts and utilized various capabilities to counter Hulk's attacks. Keeping Hulk at bay with his gauntlet beam while repairing his arm, Iron Man faced a fierce battle. As Hulk charged, the two collided, generating a shockwave through Johannesburg. Iron Man managed to pin Hulk to the ground, repeatedly punching him in the face and pleading for him to succumb and end the fight. However, Hulk's rage continued to escalate. Iron Man attempted to immobilize Hulk's arm with the Hulkbuster armor and transport him out of the city to safeguard the populace, all while Hulk fiercely resisted. While Iron Man endeavored to airlift Hulk out of the city, the Hulk fiercely resisted, compelling Iron Man to crash land in the side of a building. Despite Hulk's attempts to tear him apart, Iron Man pressed him against a wall and attempted to subdue him by spraying gas in his face, which had minimal effect. Iron Man was acutely aware that an elevator filled with people stood just feet away, attempting to escape the turmoil. Thrown back with tremendous force, Iron Man collided with the elevator, filled with innocent bystanders. He managed to catch the elevator before it hit the ground, urgently instructing everyone to evacuate while they still had the chance. He then weaponized the elevator, slamming it down onto Hulk's head once he was aware that the Hulk was stunned. In the process, Iron Man inadvertently knocked out one of Hulk's teeth, a consequence he soon regretted. In retaliation, the enraged Hulk relentlessly battered Iron Man across the city, attempting to extract the arc reactors powering the Mark 44 armor. Despite seeking assistance from Veronica, Iron Man proved futile against the Hulk's overwhelming strength, leading to the destruction of the armor. Ultimately, Iron Man resorted to dropping Hulk through a building still under construction. The substantial impact seemed to pacify Hulk enough for Stark to administer a powerful final punch to the head, rendering him unconscious. The Barton home. After the conclusion of the battle, the Avengers boarded the Quinjet. Stark engaged in a conversation with Maria Hill, who briefed him on the previous reactions to their actions in South Africa and discussions surrounding Bruce Banner's potential arrest. Hill suggested that they find a place to rest. Clint Barton advised Stark to get some sleep as they were about to land. Curious about their destination, Stark inquired, and Barton revealed it to be a safe house. Upon landing in a tranquil countryside, they entered a modest home. To their surprise, the team discovered that it was Barton's family home, where he lived with his wife and children. Initially skeptical, Stark considered it a possible deception given Barton's past as a S.H.I.E.L.D. spy. However, Barton clarified that director Nick Fury had assisted him in establishing the second peaceful life outside S.H.I.E.L.D., ensuring the safety of his family. Stark and Steve Rogers ventured outside, engaging in woodchopping together. They delved into a discussion about Scarlet Witch's use of her new powers to divide the team. As the conversation shifted to the unintentional creation of Ultron by Stark and Banner, they found themselves embroiled in a heated argument and debate over whether Stark should have ever experimented with Loki's scepter. Stark justified his actions by asserting that their purpose was to bring an end to conflicts. While Rogers made his point, Laura Barton approached Stark with a request to help fix their broken tractor. As Stark assessed the damage, Nick Fury made a surprise appearance, revealing that Maria Hill had called him. Fury attempted to convince Stark that Scarlet Witch had deceived him, but Stark insisted that the vision he had witnessed, depicting the demise of his friends and humanity, would become a reality if he didn't do everything in his power to prevent it. With the entire team assembled, Fury revealed himself to the Avengers and initiated a discussion about their strategy to thwart the Ultron offensive. Informing them of Ultron's attempts to access America's nuclear codes, Fury mentioned that someone was constantly changing the codes. While Stark played darts, losing to Clint Barton, he informed the group of his plan to go to Nexus and uncover Ultron's new adversary. As Natasha Romanoff expressed her hope for more information from Fury, he delivered an inspiring speech, urging the team to rise and fight against Ultron, emphasizing the need to stand united once again. This led to a discussion about Ultron's motives, during which Bruce Banner realized that Ultron constantly sought to improve his body. Consequently, Ultron required Helen Cho and her regeneration cradle device to create his ultimate unbeatable form, hacking the Nexus. Stark then emphasized to Steve Rogers that if Ultron successfully uploaded himself to the synthetic body, he would surpass their strength. Nick Fury informed them that he would accompany Bruce Banner to the Avengers Tower and requested Maria Hill's assistance. As the Avengers headed to Seoul, Stark delved into the Nexus Internet Hub, aiming to identify the person who thwarted Ultron's attempts to obtain launch codes for nuclear missiles. During his hacking endeavors within Nexus to unveil Ultron's new adversary, Stark was taken aback to discover that it was Jarvis, who had erased his memory and dispersed himself across the internet to obstruct Ultron. It appeared that Ultron feared Jarvis and his capabilities, prompting Jarvis to go into hiding and prevent Ultron from acquiring the codes. After restoring Jarvis's memory, Stark then redirected his own programming back to Avengers Tower. Birth of Vision. After gaining crucial information at Nexus, Stark returned to the Avengers Tower, where Bruce Banner and Clint Barton awaited him. Barton welcomed Stark and presented the regeneration cradle containing the synthetic body. Stark learned that Ultron had kidnapped Natasha Romanoff during the Battle of Seoul, prompting Barton to initiate a search for her. Stark briefed Banner on his findings and sought his assistance in uploading Jarvis into the synthetic body. Banner hesitated, viewing the situation as a recurring time loop since the activation of the Ultron program. Stark argued that time was of the essence, convincing Banner that incorporating Jarvis into the new being could prevent megalomania. As they neared completion of the preparations, Steve Rogers, accompanied by Wanda and Pietro Maximoff, intervened, ordering them to halt the process. Stark and Banner resisted, surprised by Rogers recruiting the Maximoffs, considering Wanda's role in the Duel of Johannesburg. Stark contended that their past actions were insignificant compared to the impending threat. In an attempt to defuse the situation, Quicksilver swiftly unplugged the cradle's cables, leading to a brief clash between the group. Stark utilized components of his Mark 43 armor and fired at Rogers, who retaliated by throwing his shield. Meanwhile, Banner and Wanda Maximoff engaged in a brief skirmish, resulting in her using her powers to push him back. As their skirmish commenced, Thor abruptly stormed into Avengers Tower, infusing the synthetic body with a massive bolt of his lightning, leaving Stark and the others in shock and horror. The living body emerged from the cradle, taking in its surroundings while the group observed. Initially engaging in a brief confrontation with Thor, the being's demeanor changed as it gazed over New York City, prompting the Avengers to descend and communicate with it. The living body offered an apology, identifying itself as Vision and expressing a desire to assist in their fight against Ultron. Thor explained that he had seen Vision in a dream with the Water of Sight and noted the presence of the Mind Stone, one of the 6 Infinity Stones, in Vision's forehead. Although the team harbored initial distrust toward Vision's intentions, he demonstrated his honor by handing Mjolnir to Thor. Stark, taken aback, received congratulations from Thor for having created a new and worthy ally. After successfully tracing Ultron to Sokovia, where he intended to utilize Baron Strucker's former base for his nefarious plans, Stark and the rest of the Avengers prepared for what might be their ultimate battle. While conversing with Rogers and Banner, Stark emphasized that allowing any Ultron sentries to escape would signify defeat. Confirming that Ultron harbored a particular disdain for Stark, Vision acknowledged the personal vendetta. Boarding the Quinjet to journey to Sokovia for the conclusive confrontation, Stark and the Avengers listened to Captain America's speech. Rogers emphasized that their top priority would be evacuating the people of Novigrad to safety before engaging in Ultron's army. Addressing Stark, Rogers pointed out that Ultron believed the Avengers were the problem in the world, presenting an opportunity to prove him wrong. Battle of Sokovia. The Avengers ultimately located Ultron in Sokovia, where he had secretly imprisoned Natasha Romanoff. Prior to departing, Stark integrated a new AI, Friday, into his latest suit due to the absence of Jarvis. As the rest of the team assisted in evacuating Novigrad's citizens and Bruce Banner worked to free Romanoff, Iron Man confronted Ultron in Sokovia's central church. Ultron unveiled his new, nearly indestructible vibranium-based body, crafted from stolen vibranium acquired from Klaw. Simultaneously, a drill emerged from the church, delving deep underground, revealing a vibranium detonator. Iron Man sought to comprehend how to thwart the impending catastrophe while Vision interrupted to confront Ultron. Successfully disconnecting Ultron from the internet, Vision triggered the drill, propelling a section of the city into the sky. Friday alerted Stark that if the city reached a certain height, its impact upon descent would lead to global extinction. While the Avengers battled Ultron sentries, ensuring civilian safety, Stark and Friday deliberated on preventing the city's descent. Flying around the ascending Novigrad, Iron Man witnessed a building teetering on the edge, with Friday reporting that the presence of trapped individuals was found inside. With no time to spare, Iron Man swiftly entered the building and discovered a frightened family. Urging them to seek refuge in the bathtub, he transported them safely to the ground. He alerted Captain America of the imminent arrival of more sentries, but despite the warning, Rogers was struck. After extensive collaboration with Friday, Iron Man devised a plan for he and Thor to dismantle the airborne city by attacking it from both the top and bottom. Faced with the apparent impossibility of rescuing all civilians, Nick Fury and Maria Hill arrived with a new helicarrier and a fleet of lifeboats. They assisted the Avengers in evacuating Novigrad, while War Machine joined Iron Man in battling the sentries. As Iron Man ensured the safety of the lifeboats filled with civilians, discussions persisted on how to destroy Ultron's core. Iron Man proposed a plan to supercharge the core from below. During a moment of crisis, when one lifeboat sustained damage, Iron Man flew up and assisted in pushing it the remainder of the way to the helicarrier. Thor relayed information to Iron Man that Ultron was converging on the core, prompting Iron Man to rally the Avengers to prevent him from activating it. Protecting the drill. The Avengers united to protect the vibranium drill, preventing the Ultron sentries from activating it and averting the city's fall. As they readied themselves for battle and eliminated nearby sentries, Iron Man playfully teased Black Widow for her delayed arrival, suggesting she was occupied with Bruce Banner, while she pointed out that not every team member could fly. With all the Avengers gathered around the core, Iron Man observed as Ultron amassed his army of sentries, and Thor challenged him, questioning if this was the extent of his power. After showcasing his entire army, Ultron questioned how they could still hope to stop him. In response, Iron Man echoed Captain America's earlier words, asserting that they would accomplish it together. This declaration prompted Ultron to unleash his hordes of Ultron sentries. As the Ultron sentries surged into the church, attempting to dismantle the Avengers and activate the key, Iron Man and the team exerted their strength to resist the robot onslaught. Maneuvering through the church in his Mark 45 armor, Iron Man, alongside Scarlet Witch and the other Avengers, engaged in combat, swiftly diminishing the numbers of the sentries. Through collaborative efforts, the Avengers progressively overcame the entire Ultron army. As the horde of Ultron sentries stormed into the church, intent on dismantling the Avengers and activating the key, with Ultron seemingly vanquished, Iron Man ensured the evacuation of civilians onto the helicarrier while he descended beneath the rock to overload the core. However, as Iron Man cut through the metal, Quicksilver fell victim to Ultron, who, in turn, triggered the city's descent. Iron Man and Thor successfully propelled Sokovia into the sky before it could reach the ground. The Ultron offensive concluded when Vision destroyed the final Ultron sentry, leaving the Avengers. After the Battle of Sokovia, Stark opted for retirement from active duty as an Avengers member. Despite stepping back, he continued to offer financial support to the Avengers, having transformed his father's old warehouse into the Avengers compound in upstate New York. Stark personally visited the facility to oversee its operations and bid a final farewell to the entire team. During a meeting with Steve Rogers and Thor, they discussed Vision's role in housing the Mind Stone within his head. Thor, having deemed Vision worthy by lifting Mjolnir, asserted his confidence in Vision's capabilities, but Rogers questioned the validity, citing Vision's mechanical nature. Thor shared his plan to return to Asgard to investigate the Infinity Stones and those manipulating their pursuit. In his parting words to Rogers, Stark mentioned the possibility of building a country house for Pepper Potts, akin to Clint Barton's choice, and expressed the belief that Rogers would retire one day too before driving away. Afterwards, Stark faced media inquiries about the Hulk incident, dismissing public concerns about Bruce Banner as baseless and irresponsible. Due to his commitments as Iron Man, Stark and Potts took a break in their relationship while Stark pursued his individual ventures. Through YouTube, Stark learned about a masked superhero in New York City named Spider-Man, who exhibited remarkable strength by catching a speeding vehicle. Intrigued by Spider-Man's abilities, Stark investigated further, discovering that the superhero was a 14-year-old named Peter Parker residing in Queens. Parker had gained his powers from a spider bite and independently created synthetic webbing and web shooters using readily available materials. Impressed, Stark contemplated the potential of Parker with Avengers resources, considering him a prospective Avenger. He then designed an enhanced suit for Spider-Man, facing the consequences. Stark delivered a guest lecture at MIT, his alma mater, showcasing the binarily augmented retro framing, a device designed by Quentin Beck. This innovation aimed to recreate and relive traumatic memories to assist individuals dealing with regret. During the demonstration, Stark shared a poignant moment from his past, his final meeting with his parents. Following the showcase, he delivered a speech introducing the September Foundation grant, declaring every student an equal recipient. This generous grant provided the necessary funding for students to pursue their inventions and ideas. However, a surprising revelation awaited Stark as he read from the teleprompter. He was supposed to present Pepper Potts on stage. This revelation caused a momentary pause, given their breakup resulting from Stark's commitments to the Avengers and his preoccupation with building new Iron Man armor. Stark concluded with his final words before exiting the stage, prompting the MIT liaison to seek financial support from Stark Industries for the school's funding. Outside, Stark encountered a woman who praised his funding efforts. Reacting instinctively, he grabbed her hand, suspecting a potential threat. To his surprise, she revealed a photo of her son, explaining that he perished during the Battle of Sokovia. Expressing her grief, she disclosed that she didn't blame Ultron for her son's death, but held Stark responsible, deeply unsettling him. Avengers Civil War. On May 5, 2016, Thaddeus Ross presented Stark with the Sokovia Accords, a document mandating the Avengers to operate under the oversight of a United Nations panel. Still haunted by the immense danger wrought by Ultron, Stark, grappling with guilt, acquiesced to sign the Accords. 1 month after the Lagos incident involving Crossbones, both Stark and Ross visited the Avengers compound, where Stark endeavored to persuade his fellow Avengers to endorse the Accords. During the briefing on the Accords, Ross elucidated that the document arose from the catastrophic events involving the Avengers, citing the Battle of New York and the Battle of Sokovia. Ross presented the grim statistics of casualties and the exorbitant costs of damages incurred. The presentation, however, upset Wanda Maximoff, causing a pause. Despite the emotional impact, Ross asserted that the Accords would be signed within days. Following Ross's departure, the Avengers convened in another room to scrutinize and debate the Accords. Sam Wilson and James Rhodes immediately clashed over their disparate views. Vision mused that their very existence might have fueled the conflicts they sought to quell. Amidst the heated debates on whether to sign, Stark remained conspicuously silent, prompting Steve Rogers to discern that Stark had already chosen his stance, aligning himself with the pro-Accords fashion. Stark recounted the tragic tale of Charlie Spencer's death in Sokovia to the group. He emphasized the necessity of placing the Avengers under scrutiny, asserting that without oversight they risked becoming indistinguishable from the adversaries they opposed. He also acknowledged his culpability in Ultron's creation. However, Rogers perceived the Accords as a hindrance preventing the Avengers from fulfilling their crucial role, while Stark warned of impending external imposition if they failed to regulate themselves, with dire consequences. The debate between Stark and Rogers escalated, with an unexpected ally in Natasha Romanoff, who, despite her previous aversion to government oversight post-Hydra uprising and the battle at the Triskelion, surprisingly sided with Stark. The discord reached a critical point when Rogers abruptly left upon learning of Peggy Carter's passing, leaving Stark unwavering in his belief that signing the Accords was the prudent choice. Fighting with a friend. In his continued endorsement of the Sokovia Accords, Stark entered the Joint Counter-Terrorist Center, actively participating in managing the aftermath of the bombing of the Vienna International Center. Upon learning of Captain America and Falcon's unsuccessful attempt to prevent the Winter Soldier's arrest, Stark welcomed their return. He acknowledged Secretary Thaddeus Ross's intent to prosecute them for their actions. Concerned for Maximoff's safety, Stark had Vision confine her within the Avengers compound due to the incident in Lagos resulting in the removal of her US visa. During a conversation with Steve Rogers, Stark once again sought to persuade him to sign the Accords. In an effort to sway Rogers' stance, Stark presented Howard Stark's pens, historically used by Franklin D. Roosevelt to sign the Lend-Lease Bill. When questioned about Pepper Potts, Stark disclosed their current relationship break, prompting Rogers to apologize for broaching the topic unknowingly. Stark reflected on the aftermath of Aldrich Killian's war, mentioning how he had dismantled the Iron Legion for Potts. However, he acknowledged that he had resumed donning the armor to combat threats like Hydra and Ultron. Stark admitted responsibility for Ultron's creation and expressed his reluctance to give up being Iron Man. He hoped that signing the Accords would mend his relationship with Potts. The conversation briefly delved into Stark's father's relationship with his mother before Rogers conceded his inability to ignore crises. In a plea for Rogers to sign, Stark assured him that Bucky Barnes would not be sent to a Wakandan prison. As Rogers contemplated signing, they discussed incorporating safeguards into the Accords. However, when Stark mentioned Maximoff's confinement, Rogers challenged him on detaining a young individual, equating it to Japanese internment during World War II. Stark defended his actions as necessary for the Avengers, but Rogers left the discussion. Escape from the JCTC. During Bucky Barnes' psychological evaluation, Stark observed closely as the psychiatrist questioned him about his time as an assassin for Hydra. However, a power failure interrupted the process, leading to Barnes freeing himself and attempting to escape. While Everett Ross addressed the situation, Stark contacted Friday and decided to personally confront Barnes without relying on his Iron Man armor for protection. Stark, accompanied by Natasha Romanoff and Sharon Carter, engaged Barnes in combat. Stark utilized his gauntlet, initiating the fight by firing a flash beam that temporarily blinded the Winter Soldier. He then blocked a gunshot with the gauntlet and proceeded to dismantle Barnes' weapon. Despite Stark's efforts, Barnes overpowered him and successfully escaped. Stark realized that Barnes was likely still with Steve Rogers, who, along with Sam Wilson, had also eluded capture. Following the Winter Soldier's escape, Stark met with Secretary Thaddeus Ross, who informed him that a special force unit would now handle Rogers due to Stark's involvement in the escape. However, Stark convinced Ross to let him bring them in, pledging to wear the Mark 46 for the mission, a proposal that Ross accepted. Departing the base, Ross granted Stark 36 hours before lethal force would be authorized. As Stark contemplated his next move, Romanoff reminded him of their limited resources. Stark, considering potential allies, disclosed to Romanoff that he knew of someone. Meanwhile, Romanoff approached T'Challa to seek his assistance, and Stark flew to New York City with the intention of recruiting Spider-Man. Recruiting Peter Parker. Having discerned Spider-Man's true identity as Peter Parker, Stark opted to pay him a visit at his residence. He patiently waited for Parker to return from school, engaging in playful banter with Parker's aunt, May. Upon Parker's arrival, Stark persuaded him to deceive his aunt by making her believe he had applied for Stark's scholarship. Entering Parker's room, Stark was impressed by Parker's resourcefulness in using discarded technology to assemble computers and other devices. As Parker began to explain that he hadn't applied for the grant, Stark interrupted him and proceeded to showcase videos of Spider-Man in action saving civilians. Stark praised Parker for his extraordinary powers, particularly highlighting footage of him halting a speeding car with his bare hands, emphasizing the vehicle's weight and speed at the time of the intervention. Parker initially denied being the person in the video, attributing it to edited footage. However, Stark discovered Parker's Spider-Man suit and equipment, prompting him to confess the truth. Stark inquired whether anyone else knew about his identity, and Parker assured him that it was a secret. Stark then commended Parker for his homemade web shooters, expressing surprise that Parker had crafted the webbing himself. In a lighthearted manner, Stark joked about upgrading Parker's suit and suggested that he needed an improvement. Stark inquired about Parker's motivation for becoming Spider-Man, learning that Parker aimed to utilize his powers for the greater good, driven by a belief that neglecting the responsibility could lead to harm for innocent people. Stark empathized with this perspective and recognized Spider-Man's potential value in the imminent clash of the Avengers. Seated next to Parker, Stark decided to formally recruit him onto his own team, acknowledging the potential benefits Spider-Man could bring. Impressed by Parker's commitment, Stark humorously proposed a trip to Germany, suggesting that he would inform Parker's aunt about the educational excursion. In response, Parker playfully webbed Stark to the door. With Parker agreeing to join the cause, Stark assigned Happy Hogan the task of delivering Parker's new suit and escorting him to Germany. Failed negotiations. Stark discovered Steve Rogers' plan to escape from Leipzig-Halle Airport, prompting him and his team to evacuate the area and await Rogers and his group. Upon Rogers' arrival, Stark, donned in his latest armor, attempted to persuade him to surrender the Winter Soldier to the authorities. Secretary Thaddeus Ross had ordered the use of lethal force if necessary. Rogers argued that Helmut Zemo had orchestrated events, posing as the psychiatrist interviewing Bucky Barnes. Iron Man countered by emphasizing Barnes' responsibility for the Vienna International Center bombing and the need for justice. Rogers contended that Zemo planned to unleash more Winter Soldiers, leading to a standoff. To resolve the impasse, Stark enlisted Spider-Man to restrain Rogers using his web shooters. Despite Stark's frustration to Spider-Man's fanboy antics, Rogers remained steadfast in his opposition to the Sokovia Accords. Before apprehending Rogers, Hawkeye deployed an arrow to release him, while Ant-Man returned Captain America's shield. Detecting the renegades approaching the Quinjet, Iron Man flew to engage Hawkeye and Scarlet Witch. He instructed War Machine to confront Captain America and ordered Spider-Man to maintain a distance while using web-based attacks. Pursuing Hawkeye and Scarlet Witch, Iron Man impeded their progress with missile strikes. With his former allies seemingly trapped, Iron Man bantered about Scarlet Witch hurting Vision's feelings when she fled the Avengers compound. Scarlet Witch expressed disdain for being confined, citing it as a response to the Lagos catastrophe. Iron Man casually greeted Hawkeye, inquiring about his activities during retirement from the Avengers and playfully asking if he had taken up golf. While engaged in conversation, Hawkeye intentionally launched an arrow that missed Iron Man, prompting him to humorously shoot it out of the sky. To Iron Man's surprise, Hawkeye revealed it was a ruse, leaving him vulnerable to being trapped under numerous cars manipulated by Scarlet Witch. Pinned beneath the wreckage, Iron Man acknowledged the danger, with Friday alerting him, though he had already noticed. Extricating himself, Iron Man assisted Black Widow, who, along with Black Panther and War Machine, had narrowly avoided harm when Captain America and Ant-Man used Pym particle discs to hurl a truck at them. Observing Captain America's relentless determination, Iron Man reluctantly summoned his trump card, Vision, to join the battle and provide the advantage needed to bring Captain America's team under custody. Clash of the Avengers. In due course, Vision unleashed a formidable burst from the Mind Stone in an attempt to intimidate Captain America into surrendering, followed by offering a final opportunity for capitulation. Assembling his team, Iron Man positioned himself opposite Captain America's team in a bid to compel his ally to yield. Despite Iron Man's efforts, Captain America adamantly refused, prompting Iron Man to command his team to engage their renegade counterparts with the specific directive to capture them alive. Iron Man initiated one-on-one combat against Captain America, and during the melee, Hawkeye launched an explosive arrow at the Mark 46, achieving little more than pushing Iron Man back. Amidst the chaotic confrontation among the Avengers, Iron Man opted to engage Falcon in an aerial battle, and when Hawkeye fired a barrage of arrows toward him, the suit effortlessly traced their trajectory and systematically neutralized each one. While posed to incapacitate Hawkeye with a precisely aimed shot, the left repulsor malfunctioned. Seeking an explanation from Friday, Iron Man discovered that Ant-Man had infiltrated the suit, sabotaging it from within. Friday taunted Ant-Man by suggesting the voice he heard was his conscience. Iron Man and Ant-Man exchanged banter until, growing impatient, Friday ejected Ant-Man using a fire-retardant foam, sending him plummeting back to the ground. As it became evident that Iron Man's team was poised to emerge victorious in the battle, Ant-Man harnessed his powers in reverse, transforming into Giant Man, reaching a towering height of 60 feet. Iron Man observed in awe as Giant Man seized War Machine from the skies. In response, Iron Man instructed Giant Man to release War Machine only to be ambushed by Falcon, who deployed the Red Wing drone to incapacitate Iron Man in midair. The drone disrupted Iron Man's flight trajectory and disintegrated upon impact with the armor. Collaborating with War Machine and Spider-Man, the trio endeavored to devise a strategy to halt Giant Man's advance while he assisted Captain America and Barnes in their escape. Spider-Man proposed an idea inspired by a moment from The Empire Strikes Back, humorously labeling it as a reference from a really old movie, prompting War Machine to question Spider-Man's age. Employing his web shooters, Spider-Man entangled Giant Man's legs, allowing Iron Man and War Machine to ascend and deliver a powerful blow to his chin. While they successfully toppled the colossal Ant-Man, the descent caused Ant-Man to knock Spider-Man out of the air, sending him plummeting onto the concrete from a significant height. Iron Man swiftly descended to assess Spider-Man's condition. After ensuring Spider-Man was alright, Iron Man determined that it was time to send him back to New York City, issuing a threat to call his Aunt May if the young superhero did not comply. Despite protests, Spider-Man succumbed to exhaustion and collapsed. Iron Man then took to the skies in pursuit of the hijacked Quinjet carrying Captain America and Barnes, who had escaped with the help of Black Widow, having subdued Black Panther. War Machine joined Iron Man in the chase, with Falcon tailing closely. Rhodes instructed Vision to use the Mind Stone to disable Falcon's flight gear, but the android miscalculated, inadvertently hitting War Machine's arc reactor, draining power from the suit hundreds of feet above the ground. As War Machine hurtled toward the ground, Iron Man altered his course in a desperate attempt to save his friend, but was unable to save him before the crash. Immediately instructing Friday to scan for life signals, she contacted emergency medical personnel upon confirming War Machine's survival, albeit with paralysis. Falcon landed nearby, expressing regret, but Iron Man, consumed by anger, retaliated by blasting him with a repulsor beam, finishing off the battle. Clash Aftermath. Following the conclusion of the Clash of the Avengers, Stark arrived at the Columbia University Medical Center to assess James Rhodes' condition. As Rhodes underwent x-rays, Stark questioned how Vision could make such a critical mistake. Vision admitted to being distracted by Scarlet Witch, a revelation unknown to both him and Stark. Exiting the operating room, Stark was approached by Natasha Romanoff. He briefed her on Rhodes' condition and expressed disappointment in her for allowing Steve Rogers and the Winter Soldier to escape, indirectly leading to Rhodes' accident. Despite Romanoff's assertion that their actions were misguided, Stark insulted her by labeling her a double agent for aiding Rogers. Stark informed Romanoff that T'Challa had exposed her betrayal to Thaddeus Ross, suggesting that the government and the Joint Counter-Terrorist Center might soon apprehend her. Dismissing her perspective on the matter, he remarked that betrayal seemed to be a recurring theme for Romanoff. Witnessing her departure from the facility to go underground, Stark displayed a diminishing faith in his former teammates. The Raft. To locate Steve Rogers, Stark visited the Raft, where his imprisoned teammates were held. En route, Friday informed Stark that the therapist assigned to conduct Bucky Barnes' psychological evaluation had been killed by Helmut Zemo. She revealed that Zemo had framed Barnes for terrorist attacks, leading Stark to realize his previous misjudgments. Upon reaching the Raft, Thaddeus Ross greeted Stark, who promptly sought to organize a pursuit of Zemo for justice. Ross, in the aftermath of the Clash of the Avengers, refused to take orders from Stark, asserting that Stark was fortunate not to face arrest himself. Despite Ross's skepticism, he permitted Stark to address the prisoners, where Stark was visibly disturbed by Scarlet Witch's containment. As Stark walked through the cell block, Clint Barton confronted him, expressing anger at Stark's perceived betrayal of their former Avengers comrades. Stark argued that he did not anticipate Barton's presence there, but Barton contended that the facility was for criminals, a situation Stark had played a role in creating. Stark accused Barton of choosing the wrong side, highlighting Barton's decision to abandon his family to defy the law. Walking away, Barton vehemently accused Stark of being willing to break their backs, citing James Rhodes' injuries from the previous fight. Stark proceeded past Scott Lang, who asserted that Hank Pym was justified in distrusting the Starks due to his connection with Howard Stark. Remaining composed, Stark questioned Lang's identity as he passed, disappointing Lang. Approaching Sam Wilson, who inquired about Rhodes' condition, Stark pressed him to reveal Steve Rogers' whereabouts. Despite Wilson's reluctance, Stark acknowledged his earlier mistake and expressed a genuine desire to assist Rogers after learning about Zemo. Stark disabled the audio feed, prompting Wilson to disclose that Rogers was heading to a Hydra base in Siberia and advised Stark to go alone to aid Rogers. Understanding that Ross would be unhelpful in the pursuit, given his determination to apprehend the Winter Soldier for his perceived role in T'Chaka and the numerous other deaths, Stark chose to keep the information to himself. As Stark headed toward his helicopter, Ross inquired whether Wilson had provided intelligence on Rogers' location, but Stark denied it, vowing not to answer any of Ross's calls if he reached out to the Avenger compound. Aboard his helicopter, Stark contemplated how he would approach Rogers in the aftermath of recent events. Donning his Mark 46, he flew to Siberia, utilizing the rain to conceal his movements, hoping to elude Ross and prevent Rogers' arrest. Unbeknownst to Iron Man, Black Panther trailed closely behind his own jet, determined to find and eliminate Barnes once and for all. Helmut Zemo's secret. Stopping into the Hydra Siberian facility, Iron Man swung open the doors to find Captain America and Bucky Barnes prepared for his arrival, on guard and ready. In a cordial greeting, Stark observed that Rogers appeared defensive, acknowledging the strain of the day. He then turned to Barnes, assuring him that he was not currently targeting him, having decided to heed Rogers' perspective. Highlighting the clandestine nature of his presence, Stark mentioned that Thaddeus Ross was unaware of his whereabouts, emphasizing his violation of the Sokovia Accords by engaging in conversation with Rogers without Ross's approval. Despite the outstanding arrest warrant, Stark agreed to temporarily set it aside, expressing a willingness to assist in locating Helmut Zemo before he could unleash his Winter Soldiers. Stark referred to Barnes as the Manchurian candidate and urged him to lower his weapon, assuring that they wouldn't engage in combat. Upon reaching the main room, the Mark 46's thermal scanners revealed Zemo had already eliminated the soldiers. Zemo then revealed himself from a bunker, explaining his successful plan to lure Stark to the base after a year of meticulous planning. Rogers realized Zemo's Sokovian origin and his motive for revenge related to the Battle of Sokovia. Blaming the Avengers for his family's loss, Zemo had orchestrated a scheme to dismantle the team. Zemo proceeded to unveil video footage depicting the night of Stark's parents' demise, exposing Hydra's use of the Winter Soldier to assassinate them and secure the Super Soldier Serum from their car trunk. Stark, gripped by horror, witnessed the brutal killing of his parents by the Winter Soldier, culminating in the destruction of the camera that recorded their deaths. Having confronted the painful truth about his parents' fate, Stark absorbed the shocking revelations and turned to Rogers, demanding to know if Rogers had been aware of Barnes' role in their death. Rogers admitted knowledge of Hydra's involvement in their deaths, but claimed to be ignorant of Barnes being the killer. Seeing through the deception, Stark insisted on the truth, compelling Rogers to confess that he had known Barnes was responsible for years but had concealed that fact. Horrified by the betrayal from his friend and fellow Avenger, Stark stepped back, contemplating his next course of action in light of this revelation. Battle at the Hydra facility. Consumed by rage due to the repercussions of Captain America's recent contentious and biased actions, Iron Man loses control and launches an attack on Bucky Barnes in a quest for vengeance for his parents. Striking Captain America across the face and disarming Barnes, Iron Man proceeds to carry him across the facility, pinning him down by placing his foot against Barnes' arm while aiming his blaster at his skull. In the midst of their confrontation, Helmut Zemo seizes the opportunity to escape from the facility. Iron Man attempts a point-blank shot at Barnes' face, but Captain America intervenes, deflecting the attack with his shield before trying to push Iron Man away from Barnes. Acknowledging their past friendship, Iron Man seeks to remove Rogers from the conflict using leg clamps, which Rogers manages to break free from. Iron Man seizes Barnes, carrying him into a wall. Barnes employs his prosthetic arm to damage Iron Man's head, affecting the repulsor beam. In retaliation, Iron Man directs a missile towards Barnes' face, but Barnes skillfully dodges, causing the missile to obliterate a significant portion of the Hydra Siberian facility. As the two become separated, Barnes reunites with Captain America, while Iron Man finds himself momentarily trapped beneath debris. As Barnes proceeded toward the exit, Iron Man liberated himself and pursued, only for Captain America to block his path. Captain America asserted that Howard and Maria's deaths were not Barnes' fault, emphasizing Hydra's manipulation of his mind and Vasily Karpov's orders. However, Iron Man remained unswayed, commanding Captain America to step aside. Captain America damaged Iron Man's leg stabilizers before Iron Man, in turn, utilized the laser to restrain Captain America while he pursued Barnes. Swiftly catching up with his target, who was scaling the building to reach the helicopter hatch on the roof, Iron Man kicked him across the facility and prepared for another potentially fatal shot. Undeterred, Captain America refused to yield, deflecting a deadly repulsor blast back at Iron Man. This act disabled the Mark 46's targeting system, prompting Captain America to employ a wire to pull Iron Man down as he persisted in chasing after Barnes. When Captain America hurled his shield at Iron Man, Stark skillfully shot it out of the air, rendering Captain America defenseless and unable to assist Barnes. Unable to target Barnes with missiles, Stark chose to confine Barnes within the bunker for their ultimate confrontation. With Friday reporting that his weapon systems couldn't lock onto Barnes, Iron Man utilized his own eyes for precision, shooting Barnes and destroying the main hatch, imprisoning him inside. Now confined, Iron Man swiftly advanced towards Barnes, engaging in hand-to-hand combat until he began to overpower him under the weight of his suit. While holding him down, Iron Man questioned if Barnes even recalled killing his parents, to which Barnes insisted that he remembered everyone he had killed for Hydra. Captain America intervened, leaping at the duo and knocking both himself and Iron Man back to the ground floor. Final showdown. As Iron Man and Captain America confronted each other, Captain America asserted that nothing could alter the events of years past. In response, Iron Man unequivocally declared his refusal to listen to Rogers any longer, particularly since the Winter Soldier had killed his own mother, a transgression Stark was unwilling to forgive. Stark then aggressively charged forward, launching an attack on his former ally, demonstrating his willingness to go to extreme lengths, even contemplating killing Captain America to reach the Winter Soldier. In the ensuing melee, Iron Man swiftly dominated Captain America, but Bucky Barnes intervened by striking Stark with Captain America's shield, turning the confrontation into a 2-on-1 brawl. Confronted with uneven odds, Iron Man countered by unleashing a repulsor blast on Captain America before finding himself pressed against the wall by Barnes. In an attempt to disable the suit, Barnes employed his robotic arm to remove the arc reactor, prompting Iron Man to counter with a unibeam that disintegrated a significant portion of the arm. A recovered and furious Captain America then charged at Iron Man, aiming to protect Barnes from execution. He deflected repulsor fire with his shield and forced Iron Man back against the wall, delivering a relentless pummeling. Despite the protective capabilities of the Mark 46, Iron Man soon found himself outmatched, owing to Captain America's enhanced strength from the Super Soldier Serum and his superior combat skills. Recognizing his inability to match Captain America's proficiency in close quarters hand-to-hand combat, Iron Man instructed Friday to analyze Captain America's movement patterns to identify exploitable weaknesses. Iron Man skillfully dominated Captain America in combat, dismantling the shield and subjecting him to a brutal beating. Levering the strength and repulsors of his suit, Iron Man seized the advantage, launching a relentless assault that overwhelmed Captain America. In the aftermath of the intense battle, Captain America, visibly fatigued, attempted to reason with Iron Man once more, vouching for Barnes as a friend. Iron Man acknowledged their past friendship but continued the assault, delivering further blows to Captain America before tossing him aside, as Captain America rose to resume the fight, defiantly claiming that he could endure this indefinitely. Iron Man directed his repulsor beam squarely at his face, presenting Captain America with a final opportunity to yield and conclude the confrontation. As Captain America remained resolute, Iron Man recognized that he would not back down and initiated a repulsor charge. During this moment, a wounded Barnes seized Iron Man's boot, diverting his attention, and Iron Man retaliated by delivering a kick to Barnes' face. Exploiting this distraction, Captain America successfully reversed the course of battle, utilizing his shield to dismantle the suit's helmet. Rather than delivering a fatal blow, Captain America opted to strike the main arc reactor, rendering the suit powerless. Now drenched in blood and relying solely on the suit's backup miniature arc reactors, Iron Man found himself incapacitated, unable to keep fighting. Captain America reclaimed his shield and assisted Barnes to his feet. As they departed, Iron Man, though weakened, asserted that Captain America was undeserving of that shield, emphasizing its origin in World War II, crafted by his father. Reluctantly, Captain America relinquished the vibranium shield, returning it to the Stark family, and departed the scene with Barnes, leaving Iron Man alone. Spider-Man's beginning. After the Siberia confrontation, Stark and Hogan returned Peter Parker to his New York City apartment and instructed Hogan to hand over the Spider suit to Parker. Expressing astonishment, Parker sought confirmation about keeping the suit, which Stark granted. He advised Parker to exercise caution, refrain from impulsive actions, and not stress Hogan, who would monitor his activities. Curious about the timing of their next mission, Parker inquired, and Stark reassured him that he would receive a call when needed. Stark then shared a hug with Peter, using the excuse of opening the door for him, and departed with Hogan. Over the next 2 months, Parker regularly updated Hogan on his Spider-Man activities, detailing the crimes he thwarted, and Hogan relayed this information along with Parker's exploits to Stark. Picking up the pieces. With his bond with Captain America seemingly severed and the team in disarray, Stark embarked on a quest to redefine the Avengers' purpose in the aftermath of their fractured leadership. After bringing Peter Parker to his residence, Stark returned to the Avengers compound to contemplate the future of the Avengers without Captain America. Simultaneously, Stark had been working on advanced tech to aid James Rhodes in walking again after his injury during the Clash of the Avengers. During a discussion about the Sokovia Accords and Rhodes' conviction that they made the right decisions, Rhodes fell while testing the technology. Shortly afterward, a mailman delivered a package to Stark, mistakenly addressing him as Tony Stank, much to Rhodes' amusement as he playfully taunted Stark. Inside the package, Stark found a phone and a letter from Steve Rogers, apologizing for concealing the truth about Stark's parents. Rogers offered his help, emphasizing that he and his team were just a phone call away. Around this time, Rogers liberated the imprisoned Avengers from the raft, and Thaddeus Ross sought Stark's assistance. Pretending to be preoccupied with other matters, Stark put Ross on hold, enabling Rogers and his team to escape successfully. Sometime later, Stark received another call from Ross regarding Natasha Romanoff, but once again placed him on hold. Advising Spider-Man. While Stark attended a party in India, Spider-Man intervened in an attempt to thwart illegal smugglers associated with the Vulture, but he ended up being dropped into a lake and nearly drowning. Utilizing the tracker embedded in the Spider-Man suit, Stark remotely controlled the Mark 47 to rescue him, arriving just in time to pull Spider-Man from the water. In a nearby park, Stark took the opportunity to counsel Spider-Man, questioning the rationale behind his decision to take on those criminals instead of relying on others. Parker, curious about a potential tracker in the suit, received confirmation from Stark, who acknowledged that he had incorporated various features into the suit, including a heater that dried him off. When Parker inquired if those criminals were the Avengers, Stark dismissed the idea, asserting that going after the Vulture was beneath their pay grade. Stark urged Parker to forget about the Vulture, causing a brief outburst at the party. Despite Stark advising him to continue helping ordinary people, Parker insisted that he was ready for more, drawing parallels to Stark's own actions during the Clash of the Avengers. Stark reminded him that in their previous encounter, Captain America would have easily defeated him if he'd chosen to do so. Concluding the conversation, Stark instructed Parker not to intervene personally if he encountered the Vulture's crew again. Instead, he emphasized the importance of contacting Happy Hogan to handle the situation. With this guidance, Stark ended the call and returned the Mark 47 to the Avengers compound while he departed from the party, leaving Parker to contemplate the advice he had received. Ambush at the Staten Island ferry. Taking Parker's information seriously, Stark decided to alert the FBI about Vulture's illegal activities. Several days later, Stark called Parker to offer an apology and commendation for his actions in rescuing classmates in Washington, D.C. However, Parker was in the midst of attempting to thwart Vulture's crew during a weapons deal at the Staten Island ferry. Throughout the phone call, Parker tried to distract Stark, eventually hanging up on him much to Stark's irritation. Growing suspicious, Stark donned his Mark 47 armor and arrived just in time to witness the ferry on which Spider-Man was about to be torn apart due to the aftermath of Spider-Man's recent battle with Vulture. The rogue Chitauri gun, having lost control, had fired down the ferry. With both Shocker and Matt Gargan already defeated by Spider-Man, Iron Man intervened to rectify the situation. Using Stark Industries technology and the lasers in his armor, Iron Man skillfully fused the severed sections of the ferry back together. When Spider-Man offered assistance, Iron Man acknowledged that he had done enough and instructed him to meet in New York City. In the subsequent confrontation, Iron Man reprimanded Spider-Man for disobeying orders and jeopardizing lives with his impulsive actions. Accusing Stark of indifference toward the stolen weapons, Parker was met with Stark stepping out of his suit. Stark insisted that he did care and had in fact contacted the FBI himself. Moreover, Stark emphasized that he was the sole believer in Parker's potential, regardless of his age. He warned Parker that if someone died due to his actions, it would weigh on his conscience, and if Parker himself perished, it would haunt Stark forever. Parker expressed his attempt to emulate Stark, only for Stark to push him to be better than him. Stark demanded the return of the Spider-Man suit, much to Parker's disappointment, who argued that he was nothing without it. Stark responded that if Parker believed he was nothing without the suit, then he shouldn't possess it, noting a resemblance to his own father in Parker's words. Despite his reluctance, Parker handed back the suit, and Stark sent him home with clothes he had purchased. Spider-Man's offer. Following Spider-Man's effective thwarting of Vulture and his crew's attempt to hijack an entire plane laden with Avengers weaponry and technology from Avengers Tower, Stark opted to dispatch Happy Hogan to Peter Parker's school to bring him to the Avengers compound. Upon their meeting, Stark apologized for his previous harshness, commending Parker for his heroism against the Vulture. Gathering reporters, Stark presented Parker with the upgraded Spider-Man suit, urging him to wear it for an introduction as the newest member of the Avengers. Stark envisioned Parker having a room near Vision. Surprisingly, Parker declined, expressing his commitment to patrolling the streets of New York City as the friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. Stark, though slightly disappointed, respected Parker's choice, offering one last chance, which Parker declined. Stark instructed Hogan to take Parker back home. Before departing, Parker questioned if it was a test, to which Stark falsely asserted it was. However, as soon as Parker left the building, Pepper Potts inquired about Parker's whereabouts as reporters awaited. Stark informed her that Parker wouldn't be joining them. Now contemplating how to address the press, Stark requested the engagement ring Hogan had held onto for years. Despite Hogan tossing Stark the ring as a last resort, Potts assured them they could devise a better plan. Before facing the press, Potts kissed Stark, expressing confidence. Stark arranged for the second suit to be returned to Parker, acknowledging the young hero's earned right to wear it again. Return to Stark Industries. Several months later, laboring at the Avengers compound, Stark, burdened by guilt over his past distractions, initiated the development of a suit designed for solo world defense. Engaged in crafting his latest armor, the Mark 50, Stark received a visit from Maria Hill, who attempted to persuade him to reconcile with Rogers to resolve their disputes. Stark briefly contemplated reaching out to Rogers, but ultimately concluded that he needed to independently prepare for potential apocalyptic scenarios. Hill then delivered news that Vision had deactivated his transponder and gone off-grid. Stark, growing irritated, reacted strongly to Hill's mention of the last uncontrolled robot he created, which nearly led to humanity's demise. He insisted that the world required all the Avengers. Stark, embittered, dismissed Hill and terminated her employment at Stark Industries. Stark formally presented Peter Parker with an official Stark Industries certificate acknowledging the completion of his internship, and the two posed for a photograph. Stark framed the picture, preserving it among his personal possessions. Infinity War. In 2018, during a jog in Central Park, Stark shared with Potts a vivid dream he had experienced, envisioning the two of them having a child named Morgan, naming it after Pepper's eccentric uncle. Despite Stark's insistence on the dream's realism, Potts assured him that she was not expecting a child, and pointed out that if Stark truly desired to have a kid, he wouldn't be creating another suit of armor. Stark emphasized that the armor's purpose was solely to safeguard Potts and their potential future children. Potts countered, asserting that maintaining a normal family did not necessitate the presence of armor. Stark asserted that there would be no more surprises between them and pledged to treat Potts to a dinner date to celebrate their recent engagement. At that moment, Doctor Strange emerged from a portal and conveyed the urgency of a conversation with Tony. Although skeptical due to their unfamiliarity, Strange's insistence on the universe's fate being at stake, underscored by the presence of Bruce Banner, compelled Stark to take the matter seriously, convening at the New York Sanctum. After encountering Doctor Strange and reuniting with Bruce Banner, Stark was escorted into the New York Sanctum. Wong provided Stark with a comprehensive explanation of the Infinity Stone's history, while Strange listed the known stones, including space, reality, power, soul, mind, and time. Stark sought information about their adversary, learning from Banner that it was Thanos, who had acquired the Power and Space Stones, establishing him as the universe's most formidable force. Discovering that Thanos orchestrated Loki and the Chitauri invasion, Stark recognized him as the true source of his fear and anxiety since the Battle of New York. While leaning against a cauldron of the cosmos, Stark humorously commented on Strange's language, leading to an interaction with the Cloak of Levitation. Stark proposed disposing of the Time Stone, but Strange and Wong explained their sworn duty to protect it. With Thanos possessing 2 stones and the others not on Earth, the logical strategy was to safeguard Vision, housing the Mind Stone in his head. However, Vision had disappeared 2 weeks earlier, and only the elusive Captain America could locate him. Banner urged Stark to call Rogers, but Stark revealed their estrangement and lack of communication. Banner convinced Stark to contact Rogers by revealing Thanos had supposedly killed their teammate Thor. Before Stark could make the call, their attention was diverted by the sounds of a commotion in the streets and airborne debris. Attack on Greenwich Village. Exiting the Sanctum to assess the situation, the quartet discovered terrified civilians fleeing the area, disturbed by the arrival of a Q-ship dispatched by Thanos, which unleashed powerful winds wreaking havoc on the city. Outside the New York Sanctum, Tony Stark, Bruce Banner, Doctor Strange, and Wong confronted the Q-ship. Stark, directing Friday to evacuate the vicinity and mobilize emergency teams, witnessed Doctor Strange employing the winds of Watum to counter the destructive winds generated by the Q-ship. Upon the arrival of Ebony Maw and Cull Obsidian from the ship, they demanded the Time Stone, housed in the Eye of Agamotto. Stark bluntly refused, ordering them to depart Earth. Banner attempted unsuccessfully to transform into Hulk, prompting Stark to bench him temporarily due to the urgency of the situation. Stark equipped himself with the Nanotech Mark 50 armor and repelled Obsidian, leaving Banner astonished at the display of technology and power. As Doctor Strange initiated an offensive maneuver, Stark swiftly propelled a car aimed at him and Wong into the air. Ma, in response, sent Iron Man soaring while simultaneously attacking Strange and Wong with his telekinetic abilities, hurling debris at the 2 sorcerers. Iron Man quickly returned to the fray, urging Strange to also evacuate and remove the Time Stone from the city, a plea met with refusal. Iron Man attempted another assault on Ma, only to be confronted by Obsidian, who propelled him into Washington Square Park, where he encountered Banner. In the effort to shield Banner from Obsidian's aggression, Iron Man found reinforcement in the form of Spider-Man, whom he briefed on the dire situation. Assigning Spider-Man the task of rescuing the unconscious Strange, Iron Man continued to contend with Obsidian. As the battle unfolded, Obsidian's hammer momentarily ensnared Iron Man, bringing him perilously close to defeat. However, Wong intervened at a crucial moment, saving Iron Man from the impending threat. Following Wong's successful containment of Obsidian from a different location, Iron Man broke free and extended an invitation to Wong for his upcoming wedding, soaring away afterward. Ascent to space. After concluding the battle, Iron Man successfully located the Q-ship and ascended into the sky, deploying Item 17A from the Avengers compound. Spider-Man, grappling with diminishing oxygen, removed his mask, struggling to breathe. Iron Man instructed Spider-Man to release and freefall, assuring him of a safe catch. Despite Spider-Man's insistence on saving Doctor Strange, Iron Man countered to say he would lose his ability to breathe as the ship ascended. As Spider-Man began to lose consciousness due to oxygen deprivation, the ship ascended beyond Earth's atmosphere, prompting him to fall off. Iron Man swiftly intervened, summoning the Iron Spider armor to rescue Spider-Man. The nanotech-infused suit materialized, enabling Spider-Man to land gracefully, regain his breath, and establish contact with Iron Man. Rejoining Parker, Stark bid him farewell on the ship and directed Friday to return him to Earth, utilizing a parachute for a descent into orbit. Stark, clinging to the hull, cut an opening to board the Q-ship to search for Doctor Strange and Ebony Maw. In the midst of his efforts, Stark received a call from Pepper Potts, updating her on his location before losing reception midway, much to caught his concern: the rescue of Doctor Strange. Aboard the Q-ship, Stark was accompanied by the Cloak of Levitation, guiding him to Strange and the Time Stone. As they strategized their next move, observing from above, they were taken aback by the unexpected presence of Spider-Man, who had stealthily stowed away, much to Stark's dismay. Expressing his frustration at Peter Parker for disregarding orders, Stark was met with Parker's reasoning that acting as a friendly neighborhood Spider-Man required a neighborhood to defend. Considering Parker's response and realizing the validity of the argument, Stark reluctantly teamed up with him and decided to provide an assessment of the situation. Approaching the ledge, Stark briefed Parker on Ebony Maw's location, holding Strange captive, and sought ideas for a distraction. Thinking on his feet, Parker proposed a plan reminiscent of a scene from Aliens. After hearing the plan, Stark followed through to prevent Maw from further torturing Strange. As Maw continued interrogating Strange for the Time Stone, Iron Man suddenly appeared behind him. Executing Parker's plan, Stark launched a missile past Maw, causing a hull breach that sucked Maw into the vacuum of space, leading to his demise. However, Strange got inadvertently caught in the vacuum, and the Cloak's attempt to rescue him proved unsuccessful. Springing into action, Spider-Man seized Strange, utilizing his new armor's artificial spider limbs to narrowly pull him to safety, enabling Iron Man to seal the breach with his nanobots. Stark observed that the ship was on an automated course toward an unknown destination. Despite Stark's reluctance, Strange urged him to take control of the ship and return them, along with the Time Stone, to Earth. Stark proposed a daring attack on Thanos' territory, catching him off guard. Initially hesitant, Strange eventually agreed to Stark's plan after learning about his history with Thanos over the years. Following their agreement, Strange emphasized that he would prioritize safeguarding the Time Stone even at the cost of Stark or Parker's lives, vowing to let them perish if it meant preventing Thanos from obtaining the stone. Satisfied with Strange's moral stance, Stark officially enlisted Peter Parker into the Avengers. Encountering the Guardians. Reaching their destination, Stark and Peter Parker navigated the Q-ship using an arm piece, attempting a controlled landing on the desolate planet, Titan. Despite their efforts to minimize contact with the planet's surface, the ship crash-landed. Doctor Strange shielded Stark and Parker from the impact using holographic mandalas. Acknowledging that he owed Strange a debt for saving their life during the crash, Stark found Parker hanging upside down, questioning if there was something that could lay eggs in his chest. Angrily dismissing Parker's pop culture reference, Stark then noticed something approaching them, prompted by Parker's warning. A grenade rolled into view and the trio was thrown back as its energy pulse discharged. Immediately ambushed by the Guardians of the Galaxy, Star-Lord, Drax the Destroyer, and Mantis, each group suspected the other of working for Thanos. Star-Lord opened fire at Iron Man, initiating an airborne chase. Stark retaliated by launching a missile at Star-Lord, only to be ensnared by his gravity mine in response. Evading Quill's gravity mine, Iron Man flew toward Drax, attempting to capture and subdue him. The scuffle reached a stalemate, with Spider-Man held at gunpoint by Quill. Star-Lord deactivated his helmet, inquiring about Stark's missing teammate, Gamora. Annoyed by the sudden attack, Stark replied with a puzzling question, confusing Quill, who then questioned the identity of the people they were attacking. Parker clarified that they were the Avengers. After Mantis conveyed Thor's acknowledgement to Stark, both groups discovered they were pursuing Thanos and forged an alliance. Making a plan. Examining the situation and their surroundings, Stark recognized that their sole advantage was Thanos coming to them, allowing them to employ the element of surprise. The plan was straightforward: lure Thanos in, immobilize him, and seize the Infinity Gauntlet. As Stark brainstormed a strategy to thwart Thanos, Drax nonchalantly yawned in the midst of the plan. Star-Lord pointed out that adhering strictly to plans wasn't their MO, prompting Spider-Man to inquire about the specific roles of the rest of the Guardians of the Galaxy. Mantis provided an incomprehensible explanation of their activities, leaving both Parker and Stark bewildered. Stark instructed Star-Lord to gather his team, and Quill suggested that while the plan was sound, he should be the one to execute it for a more favorable outcome. While the plan was being devised, Doctor Strange utilized the Time Stone to peer into millions of potential outcomes for the impending conflict with Thanos, revealing there was only one scenario in which they emerged victorious. Battle of Titan. Upon Thanos' arrival on Titan, Doctor Strange promptly greeted him. Thanos reminisced about Titan, describing it as a beautiful planet with insufficient resources for its population. Faced with extinction, Thanos believed his merciful solution was interplanetary genocide. In a pivotal moment, Thanos realized that Strange had orchestrated an ambush, and before he could react, Iron Man dropped a massive piece of spaceship hull on him. Utilizing the Power and Reality Stones, Thanos freed himself by detonating the debris violently, transforming it into a swarm of bats. The swarm attacked Iron Man, prompting him to flee. Thanos faced a renewed assault from Iron Man's missiles, but he effortlessly absorbed and redirected the energy at Stark with the gauntlet, propelling him far away. With Thanos momentarily restrained, the group advanced to execute the final step of their plan. Mantis urged the others to hasten their efforts before Thanos could break free from her hold. Iron Man and Spider-Man worked together to forcibly remove the gauntlet from Thanos' grasp. Star-Lord confronted Thanos, demanding the whereabouts of Gamora. In response, Thanos displayed signs of anguish, and Mantis sensed his mourning. Nebula, horrified, began to realize that he had sacrificed Gamora for the Soul Stone. In disbelief, Star-Lord demanded that Thanos confirm Gamora's survival, but Thanos sorrowfully admitted to having no choice but to kill her, confirming Nebula's suspicions. Star-Lord, consumed by rage, interrogated Thanos about his actions. Witnessing this, Iron Man attempted to prevent Star-Lord from engaging with Thanos physically, but Star-Lord impulsively attacked him, inadvertently breaking Mantis' control over the Titan. Freed from the mental hold and now genuinely furious, Thanos swiftly broke free from his restraints and ruthlessly overpowered the group. Iron Man launched another desperate assault on Thanos, only for the Titan to redirect his attention to Titan's nearby moon. Utilizing the Power and Space Stones, Thanos promptly obliterated the moon's surface before hurling its fragments down as a barrage of meteors, incapacitating Iron Man. Last man standing. Prior to Thanos completing his encounter with Doctor Strange, Iron Man, the sole remaining Avenger, intervened by restraining Thanos' gauntlet with a nanotech clamp. Surprisingly, Thanos acknowledged and addressed him by name, Stark, remarking that they both shared the burden of knowledge. Unperturbed by Thanos' words, Iron Man accused him of being the source of their cursed existences and initiated the attack, unleashing a barrage of missiles. Seizing the opportunity while Thanos was distracted, Iron Man relentlessly assaulted him with his nanotech suit, utilizing enhanced boosters to kick the Titan before he could recover. Firmly anchoring himself to the ground, Iron Man struck Thanos with repulsor-powered battering rams, driving him back into a wall. Quickly regaining his composure, Thanos forcefully tore off Iron Man's helmet and delivered a powerful punch, sending him sprawling. Just in time, Iron Man reconstructed his helmet as Thanos swiftly removed the clamp from the gauntlet and unleashed a concentrated beam from the Power Stone. Iron Man managed to erect a shield to block the blast. Accelerating toward Thanos, Iron Man skillfully pinned the gauntlet to the ground with a foot clamp, delivering a barrage of repulsor-boosted blows to the Titan's face, causing him to bleed. Undeterred by his injuries, Thanos taunted the Avenger, mocking the considerable effort and struggle expended to elicit just a single drop of blood. Thanos effortlessly freed the gauntlet from Iron Man's grasp, flipping the Avenger onto his back. Thanos mercilessly pummeled Iron Man with his fists, systematically dismantling more and more of his armor with each forceful blow until the Avenger was defenseless. With Iron Man unable to resist, Thanos delivered a potent punch enhanced by the Power Stone to the Avenger's abdomen, propelling him across the area and causing further damage to his armor. In a desperate attempt, Iron Man, now missing much of his upper armor, tried to fend Thanos off with his repulsors, repositioning the nanites on his leg to create new ones. Approaching relentlessly, Thanos resumed his assault on the Avenger, ultimately destroying his helmet. Stark endeavored to defend himself with his bare hands, but Thanos seized and trapped his left hand. In a last-ditch effort to fight back, Stark swiftly shifted the nanites from his left arm to his right, forming a sword and stabbing at the Titan. However, Thanos effortlessly tore the sword from Stark's hand and ruthlessly stabbed him in the abdomen, bringing the battle to an end. Cradling Stark's head, Thanos expressed his respect for him. Despite his intention to kill Stark, Thanos revealed that he hoped those who survived his mission would remember Stark. As he prepared to deliver the final blow, Strange intervened, offering the Time Stone in exchange for Stark's life. Thanos accepted the deal, took the Time Stone, and departed from Titan. Stark healed his wound using the last of his nanites. When Stark questioned Strange about his decision, Strange cryptically informed him that they were now in the endgame, Thanos' victory. Stark and his allies found themselves in a state of anticipation as Thanos moved closer to realizing his objectives, harnessing the combined powers of all the Infinity Stones. Witnessing the disintegration of many allies, including Doctor Strange and the Guardians of the Galaxy on Titan, Stark experienced horror and distress. Despite his attempts to reassure Star-Lord, Doctor Strange conveyed that this outcome was inevitable. In a moment of helplessness, Stark could only watch as Spider-Man disintegrated in his arms. He embraced the boy, attempting to provide comfort, while Spider-Man pleaded with Stark to save him until he ultimately accepted his fate and emotionally apologized for falling short. In the aftermath, only Stark and Nebula remained on Titan. Nebula, overcome with despair, acknowledged Thanos' success, and Stark mourned the loss of his friends and the triumph of Thanos, forced to accept the situation as he clutched Spider-Man's ashes. Returning to Earth, immediately following the snap, Stark and Nebula utilized the Guardians of the Galaxy's ship, the Benatar, to depart from Titan. During their journey, they realized that the ship's fuel cells had sustained damage during the Battle of Titan's climax. Although they attempted repairs, they only achieved partial success, allowing them to head back to Earth. However, after just 2 days, the Benatar ran out of flight power, leading to a gradual depletion of air and stranding them in space. Despite their efforts to address the issue, they failed, leaving them adrift. 22 days after the snap, Stark and Nebula engaged in a few rounds of table football in the Benatar's bridge. Stark proceeded to teach her the game, maintaining their finger positions. As the game progressed, Stark and Nebula found themselves nearly tied and decided to play again. Despite Stark attempting a goal and missing his aim, Nebula emerged victorious, and Stark graciously acknowledged her with a handshake. Moving to the front of the Benatar, Stark used his helmet from the Battle of Titan to record a message for Pepper Potts. In the recording, he advised Potts not to share it on social media due to the somber circumstances. Stark reflected on his survival journey, including meeting Nebula, receiving treatment for his injuries, repairing the ion charge on the ship, and bringing them an extra 48 hours of time, consuming the remaining food rations. Stark informed Potts that the ship's oxygen would run out the following morning and expressed his hope to pull off one last surprise. Advising Potts not to dwell on his predicament, he suggested she might grovel and feel guilt in the upcoming weeks while he was gone. Drifting off during the recording, Stark concluded by promising to dream about Potts, as it had always been his recurring dream. After finishing the recording, Stark donned his jacket and fell asleep, with Nebula placing him in the captain's chair. During his deep sleep in the chair, Stark was disturbed by a subtle increase in light, causing him to wake up to a beaming light outside the Benatar. The glowing light revealed itself to be Captain Marvel, surprising Stark. As the decision was made to return to Earth, Captain Marvel carried the Benatar back, landing at the Avengers compound where Stark would resign. Upon arrival, Captain Marvel, accompanied by Nebula and Steve Rogers, assisted Stark as he exited the ship. An emotional Stark shared with Rogers that he couldn't stop Thanos, to which Rogers acknowledged his own inability to do so. Stark then revealed the loss of Peter Parker, but before he could say more, he was greeted by an overwhelmed Potts. In the Avengers compound, the remaining team discussed the possible location of Thanos since his arrival on Earth. As they reviewed photos from their system, Stark came across an image of Peter Parker among the casualties of Thanos' snap, prompting him to reflect on his failure to protect the young hero. Stark inquired about Thanos' whereabouts, and Rogers responded that they had no leads. Stark turned his attention to Thor and inquired about what had happened to him. Rocket Raccoon responded, revealing that Thor felt guilty for failing to kill Thanos. As Rocket discussed each team member's unsuccessful attempt to stop him, Stark, taken aback by the talking raccoon, humorously mistook him for a stuffed Build-A-Bear. When Rogers asked Stark if he had any leads on Thanos' location after weeks of hunting, Stark mockingly dismissed the idea, asserting that he was defeated. Stark addressed the team, sharing the vision he had and emphasizing that he didn't want to believe it but saw it coming. Despite Rogers urging him to focus, Stark angrily declared that he needed Rogers in the past tense, and it was too late for that now. Fumbling around the table and removing a tube from his arm, Stark confronted Rogers, explaining that his attempt to create a suit of armor around the world was to prevent the current situation. Recalling the events of the Avengers Civil War, Stark reminded everyone that he lost without Rogers' assistance, even though Rogers had insisted that if they lost, they would lose together. After relinquishing his arc reactor to Rogers in an attempt to stop Thanos, Stark succumbed to exhaustion and collapsed in front of the team. Bruce Banner administered a sedative to allow Stark to rest and heal after his extended time in space. While Stark rested, the remaining Avengers discovered Thanos, only to realize that the Infinity Stones had been destroyed, prompting Thor to decapitate him. Reunited again, Stark eventually tied the knot with Pepper Potts and became a father to a daughter named Morgan. The family later settled in a cabin in New York. Despite the devastating loss of allies and half of the universe's population to Thanos, Stark found a semblance of peace in the ensuing 5 years. In 2023, Stark stepped outside the cabin to attend to Morgan, ensuring she had lunch. When Morgan seemed preoccupied, Stark called her by her full name, prompting her to emerge from the tent wearing her Mark 59 helmet. Advising her against wearing the helmet, as it was an anniversary gift for Potts, Stark took it off and inquired about her lunch preferences. Curious about where Morgan found the helmet, Stark discovered she had located it in his garage. As they were about to re-enter the cabin, Steve Rogers, Natasha Romanoff, and Scott Lang approached Stark with a proposal to travel back in time, retrieve the Infinity Stones, and undo Thanos' actions. Stark disagreed, expressing concerns about manipulating quantum energy and the potential consequences on their original timeline. Upon learning from Lang about his return to the past, Stark dismissed the possibility, asserting that such an occurrence was a 1 in a billion chance akin to a cosmic fluke. He refuted the idea of a time heist, considering it a pipe dream. Despite assurances from Rogers and Romanoff that they could bring everyone back by snapping their fingers, Stark maintained skepticism, lacking a logical basis for a time heist. During a conversation with Lang, who emphasized adherence to strict time travel rules, Stark hesitated and ultimately rejected the proposal, citing concerns about following the logic of Back to the Future, stating that it didn't align with quantum physics principles. Despite the group's resolve to rectify the past, Stark resisted joining the heist until urged by Potts, who instructed Morgan to intervene. When Rogers presented it as their second chance, Stark asserted that he already had one and invited them to stay for lunch. Solving time travel. During the evening, while engaged in post-dinner dishwashing, Stark inadvertently sprayed water on an old photo featuring himself and Peter Parker. Prompted by a surge of nostalgia and contemplation about time travel, Stark took it upon himself to experiment with one of the theoretical models compatible with Scott Lang's quantum tunnel. Moving to his work table, Stark commenced the creation of a time-space GPS intended to facilitate particle factoring and spectral decomposition for seamless time travel through the device. Despite initial skepticism, Stark was astounded when the device successfully materialized. Perplexed by this unexpected outcome, he expressed his surprise with a swear word before noticing Morgan on a staircase, cautioning her against swearing and instructing her to go to bed. Stark shared with Morgan that he had something on his mind, prompting her to inquire about juice pops, a request he agreed to fulfill after his discovery. Following the juice pops, Stark instructed Morgan to go to bed and recounted a quick story, concluding with an expression of love. In response, Morgan reciprocated with an affectionate 3,000, leaving Stark pleasantly surprised. After ensuring Morgan was asleep, Stark joined Pepper Potts in the living room. While conversing with Potts and glancing at his lab table, Stark spontaneously revealed that he had deciphered the workings of time travel. Potts, astonished by this revelation, sat with him, acknowledging their fortunate survival compared to others. Stark, however, expressed a reluctance to act on his discovery, contemplating abandoning the pursuit of saving everyone. Potts acknowledged her failure in dissuading him, prompting Stark to playfully consider locking his optimism in a box at the bottom of a lake for rest. Potts questioned if Stark could truly find rest, leading him to decide to assist his team in executing the time heist. Acknowledging the slim chances of survival, Stark recorded a heartfelt message to his family in preparation for any potential adverse outcomes. Returning to the Avengers. Despite Stark's initial reluctance to assist, the remaining Avengers persisted in exploring the potential of time travel. In an attempt to send Scott Lang through time, they inadvertently caused time to pass through him, resulting in Lang experiencing various ages, from baby to child to old man. Faced with the lack of alternatives to reverse the snap, the Avengers were on the verge of losing hope when Stark unexpectedly arrived at the Avengers compound, surprising Steve Rogers. Upon parking his car in front of Rogers, Stark correctly deduced the failure of the Avengers' initial time travel attempt. When Rogers inquired about his arrival, Stark exited his car and explained that the EPR paradox had affected Lang, allowing time to pass through him. Rogers speculated that Stark had found a solution to time travel, and Stark admitted to inventing a time-space GPS. The two reconciled, with Stark emphasizing his aversion to resentment, a sentiment shared by Rogers. Stark delved into the circumstances of his life before joining the heist, expressing a desire to use the Infinity Stones to revive the deceased without sacrificing lives in the process. In mutual agreement, Stark and Rogers reconciled and collaborated on the time heist. Before diving into the heist, Stark returned Rogers' shield, prompting initial hesitation from Rogers. Stark, however, reminded him that his father, Howard Stark, had crafted that shield for him, urging Rogers to keep it out of the house to prevent Morgan from taking it sledding. Anticipating the need for a unified team, Stark entered the Avengers compound equipped with gear, where he immediately noticed Thor's arrival and playfully remarked on his resemblance to the Big Lebowski. Inquiring about Rocket Raccoon's involvement with the time machine, Stark unintentionally misnamed him, resulting in a humorous insult. Stark then unveiled the advanced tech suit, developed with assistance from Hank Pym's designs, and collaborated with Bruce Banner to send Clint Barton into the past. The mission proved successful, with Barton returning from his homestead to a time before the snap. Subsequently, Stark, along with the Avengers, collaborated to strategize the optimal times and locations for their time travel ventures. Banner cautioned that they only had enough Pym particles for a single round trip per person, considering the myriad historical locations of the stones. Stark emphasized the challenge of finding convenient entry points in each timeline, leading the team to select New York City in 2012, Asgard in 2013, and Vormir and Morag in 2014. With their heist scheduled for the next day, Stark used his helmet to record a message for Morgan, contemplating the possibility of not surviving. Additionally, he introduced one of his AI systems as Edith, even dead, I'm the hero, uploading it into one of his glasses. Convinced of the success of their resurrection efforts, Stark arranged for the glasses to be given to Nick Fury, with the intention that Fury would pass them down to Peter Parker upon his potential resurrection. The following day, as the team gathered, Stark and the others listened to Rogers' speech about their losses and the opportunity to reclaim what they had lost. Recognizing the gravity of the plan, Stark exchanged a look with Rogers, acknowledging their determination to win at any cost. Positioned and ready, Stark instructed Banner to activate the tunnel, and the team embarked on their time travel journey to 2012. Infiltration into Stark Tower. The initial team, consisting of Stark, Scott Lang, Steve Rogers, and Hulk, journeyed back to New York City on May 4th, 2012, amid the Battle of New York. Rogers briefed the group on their familiarity with the locations of the Infinity Stones. While discussing the need to keep a close eye on each other and execute a swift exit, the 2012 Hulk inadvertently smashed a Chitauri soldier through the wreckage, causing concern among the team. Hulk was tasked with locating the Time Stone at the New York Sanctum, adopting a strategy of smashing obstacles to avoid arousing suspicion. Stark and Lang headed to Stark Tower to retrieve the Tesseract, while Rogers concentrated on securing the scepter. Stark positioned himself on a building, observing the 2012 Avengers interrogating Loki and instructing Rogers to enter Stark Tower, remarking on the imminent capture of Loki. With Lang discreetly shrunk on Stark's shoulder, they successfully infiltrated Stark Tower without detection. As Stark observed his past self and the Avengers dealing with cleanup duties and apprehending Loki, he humorously commented on the size of Captain America's buttocks fitting into his old uniform. Following Black Widow's acquisition of the scepter, the strike team entered the building, prompting Stark and Lang to hide out of sight. Stark noted that the strike team was affiliated with Hydra before hushing Lang's commentary. Stark then propelled Lang toward his 2012 self to approach the Tesseract. With their strategy in place, Stark swiftly exited the tower and positioned the scepter near an elevator, allowing Rogers to rendezvous with other S.H.I.E.L.D. agents. While Rogers engaged in obtaining the scepter from Agent Jasper Sitwell, Stark donned a S.H.I.E.L.D. uniform, blending into the surroundings as his past self arrived at the location where they would encounter Alexander Pierce. Instructing Lang to infiltrate 2012 Stark's shirt, Stark directed him to the area where his past self was located. As Lang maneuvered under 2012 Stark's shirt, he detected the scent of Axe body spray, prompting 2023 Stark to explain its presence as an emergency stash. Under Stark's guidance, Lang entered the inside of his arc reactor and was directed to pull a lever, causing temporary mild cardiac arrest for Stark's past self. Capitalizing on the distraction caused by 2012 Stark's collapse, 2023 Stark informed the security guards that assistance was needed for his past self. While 2012 Stark grappled with cardiac pain, 2023 Stark observed Lang pushing the briefcase with the Tesseract and began to seize it, making a quick exit. Despite successfully securing the Space Stone, an enraged 2012 Hulk burst through the door, sending Stark and the case flying. As the case opened and landed at the feet of 2012 Loki, he swiftly grabbed the Tesseract and escaped. Stark regained consciousness after the sudden knockout, surprised by the impact from Hulk's force. Lang informed Stark that the plan had gone awry, prompting Stark to acknowledge the mistake. With no other choice, Stark retreated to the alleyway empty-handed. Infiltrating Camp Lehigh, Lang and Stark rejoined Steve Rogers, who had successfully secured the scepter. Faced with the limited Pym particles available for the return journey, Lang cautioned the group about the impossibility of returning home. In a sudden realization, Stark proposed acquiring more Pym particles to retrieve the Tesseract, revealing its location in a military installation to Rogers. Acknowledging that he didn't know the exact date but knew the location, Stark decided to improvise and set a date, April 7th, 1970. Rogers entrusted Lang with bringing the scepter back to 2023, emphasizing the absence of a way to return home if they failed. Stark dismissed Lang's concerns, suiting up alongside Rogers to travel further back in time to the designated date and secure the Tesseract in S.H.I.E.L.D.'s possession. Upon arriving in 1970 New Jersey, Rogers and Stark infiltrated Camp Lehigh. Inside, they discovered a doorway containing information in plain sight. Stark closely examined the doorway with his sunglasses, realizing they could discreetly follow the inner walls using the elevator. Choosing the elevator route, Stark and Rogers attracted the suspicion of a vigilant S.H.I.E.L.D. worker. Once Stark wished Rogers good luck upon arriving on the floor he tracked down, he successfully infiltrated a facility housing the Tesseract using his lenses. He located the Tesseract near a vault, burned the ridges of the lock, and successfully took it, securing it in a briefcase he'd stolen. However, during the operation, Stark encountered the 1970s version of his father, who was searching for Arnim Zola. When Howard began asking questions, Stark fabricated a cover story, claiming to be a visitor from MIT named Howard Potts. Despite Stark's accomplishment in pilfering the Space Stone, Howard engaged his alternate son in conversation, prompting them to step outside. While Rogers obtained more Pym particles from the 1970 version of Hank Pym, Stark conversed with his alternate father about the flowers he was carrying. Howard mentioned that his wife was expecting a gift after working tirelessly, and Stark learned this way that a child was on the way. Once outside with his alternate father, Stark discovered that Howard's baby would be named Almanzo, surprising Stark. Howard advised him to take his time, and as they chatted, asked Stark if he felt nervous when his own child was born, to which Stark admitted that he did. Answering further inquiries, Stark shared that he raised his child based on the lessons he learned from his father, fostering a connection through their shared experiences of fatherhood. Stark then delved into the wisdom he gained from his father, emphasizing that no amount of money could buy a second of time. Having reconciled their different experiences of fatherhood, Stark noticed Rogers at the base with the Tesseract locked in a briefcase. As his alternate father prepared to leave, Stark expressed gratitude for his contributions to the country and hugged him, leaving Howard momentarily perplexed. Stark clarified that he was thankful for what Howard had done for his country before bidding farewell. With the necessary tools to return home, Stark and Rogers journeyed back to 2023. Death of Natasha Romanoff. The entire Avengers team successfully returned from the past, each having acquired their respective Infinity Stones. After Stark came back from 1970, Hulk briefly addressed the team to ensure that all the stones were accounted for. However, upon returning to the present, Stark discovered that Natasha Romanoff had sacrificed herself on Vormir in 2014, allowing Hawkeye to obtain the Soul Stone. In the aftermath of Barton conveying Romanoff's sacrifice, Stark and the rest of the Avengers observed a moment of silence to honor her memory. Once the team had mourned Romanoff's death, they gathered by the lake. Stark, curious about Romanoff's family, asked Rogers, who revealed that the Avengers were the only family she'd ever known. Despite the team's attempts to provide reassurance, Thor, in denial of Romanoff's loss, prompted Stark to remind him that he had simply asked a question. Stark witnessed Thor expressing frustration about bringing her back using Infinity Stones, while Barton argued against such a notion, emphasizing that the sacrifice could not be undone. As Hulk listened, he angrily threw a bench, asserting that they must not let Romanoff's sacrifice be in vain. The team, despite the emotional turmoil, resolved to proceed with their plan to use the stones to resurrect the victims of the snap. Assembling the Infinity Stones. Assisted by Rocket Raccoon and Hulk, Stark consisted the Nano Gauntlet, a device capable of harnessing the power of the 6 Infinity Stones. Using his holographic technology, Stark precisely maneuvered the Infinity Stones and successfully affixed them to the Nano Gauntlet, expressing a mix of shock and happiness upon completion, only to be startled by Rocket Raccoon. Once the gauntlet was carefully placed on a table, Stark observed Thor volunteering to bring everyone back to the dead, a decision that was abruptly halted. Thor explained his sense of responsibility to save the universe, a sentiment understood by Stark, though he pointed out that Thor was not in critical condition. Hulk then stepped forward to wield the gauntlet, citing the perilous consequences of using the Infinity Stones, nearly fatal in his previous encounter. The decision was made for Hulk to bear the gauntlet, and Stark specified that Hulk should only bring back the victims of the snap to the present with no other alterations out of fear that his daughter might cease to exist. After instructing Friday to secure the Avengers compound, Stark witnessed Hulk don the Nano Gauntlet, initially struggling with the immense power of the Infinity Stones. Simultaneously, the 2014 version of Nebula modified the quantum tunnel, enabling 2014 Thanos and his forces to arrive in 2023. Despite the excruciating pain caused by the raw energy of the stones, Hulk managed to snap his fingers, falling unconscious shortly afterward. Stark used his suit to cool down Hulk's scorched arm, while Ant-Man observed the sudden appearance of numerous birds. Barton received a call from his wife, indicating the success of reversing the snap. Despite this triumph, the Avengers had little time to celebrate, as the Sanctuary 2, 2014 Thanos' ship arrived in 2023, immediately opening fire on the Avengers compound. The ensuing chaos buried War Machine, Hulk, Barton, and Lang inside the debris, while Stark, Rogers, and Thor remained on top. After Stark survived, he approached the unconscious body of Rogers, waking him up and returning his shield. As Rogers questioned the situation, Stark grimly remarked on the potential backlash of meddling with time. Thanos is offensive. Following the reversal of the snap, Iron Man, Captain America, and Thor encountered Thanos from an alternate 2014, fully aware of the success of his plan and his impending fate, who had arrived on Earth. Stark inquired about Thanos' recent activities, learning that he had been inactive. When Rogers asked about the Infinity Stones' whereabouts, Stark indicated that they were beneath the rubble. Thor suggested that Thanos' arrival might be a snap, but Stark expressed indifference. After Thor acknowledged their agreement, he summoned his armor and wielded both Stormbreaker and Mjolnir, while Captain America and Stark confronted the seated Thanos, who awaited their approach. As the trio walked over to confront Thanos, Stark listened to his lecture about their inability to accept change, realizing that some remember the past and struggle to embrace the future, an observation Stark agreed with, gloating about their stubbornness to Thanos. Thanos, having reviewed Nebula's memory files, believed that the universe would be ungrateful for his correction, and revealed a new plan to decimate the entire universe, starting afresh with no recollection of the massacre. Stark, infuriated, watched as the Mad Titan declared his bloody vision for a new universe. Thanos threatened to kill Stark and the team, leading to a fierce battle. Iron Man equipped a hidden blade from his hand and began blasting Thanos with his repulsors. Utilizing extra repulsors from his back, Iron Man instructed Thor to unleash lightning from behind to enhance firepower. As Thor charged his lightning powers, Stark absorbed massive amounts of energy to power up his suit, directing the attack at Thanos. The Mad Titan blocked Iron Man's beams with his double-edged sword and, approaching, broke free from the laser. Seizing the opportunity, Thanos grabbed Iron Man with both hands, only to witness Thor using Stormbreaker to strike Mjolnir. Thor then utilized Iron Man as a human shield, knocking him down and sending him flying across the field. Rolling on the ground, Iron Man was swiftly struck by a nearby pile of rubble, briefly rendering him unconscious and sidelining him from the ongoing fight. The other Avengers had to face Thanos without Stark, resulting in one of them being relentlessly beaten. When Captain America valiantly attempted to battle Thanos, the Mad Titan gained the upper hand and summoned his entire army, including the Black Armor, Chitauri, and Outriders. Captain America stood alone against Thanos' formidable army until Doctor Strange arrived with reinforcements to engage Thanos. Stark then regained consciousness from his concussion and witnessed his allies returning from the dead, including Pepper Potts in her iron suit. Battle of Earth. With the Avengers and their allies assembled from various worlds to confront Thanos' army, Iron Man descended to join the lineup as they prepared for battle. Landing alongside his teammates, Stark observed Captain America wielding Mjolnir and rallying the team to fight for their planet. The entire coalition, comprising the Avengers and other allied forces, charged with determined fury, advancing toward Thanos' army. As Thanos deployed his Black Armor, Chitauri army, Sakaran army, and Outriders to eliminate them, Iron Man soared across the battlefield, using his unibeam to target nearby threats. He teamed up with Pepper Potts, who was armored in her own iron suit, engaging in aerial combat together. While fending off numerous Outriders from above, Iron Man descended to the ground, using his laser beams to blast incoming threats. Emerging victorious in his fight, Iron Man found himself under attack by Cull Obsidian, landing on a piece of rubble after being knocked down. Attempting to defeat Obsidian with his repulsors proved ineffective, but Spider-Man intervened, using his web shooters to pull Obsidian down and allowing Ant-Man to crush him to death. Stark removed his helmet to catch his breath, having narrowly escaped death. Parker extended a helping hand, revealing his experience of being turned to dust in space after passing out. Parker shared that Doctor Strange was with him on Titan and urged Stark to join the battle. Stark, growing closer to Parker, silently conveyed gratitude and hugged him during the ongoing battle. Stark approached Doctor Strange, who was banishing a group of Thanos' force into another dimension on the battlefield, and inquired if this was the future among the 14 million possibilities where they would emerge victorious. Strange responded that if Stark knew the necessary course of events, it would disrupt the outcome. Despite his skepticism, Stark chose to maintain optimism and expressed hope that Strange's prediction could prove accurate. Following Thanos' airstrike on the battlefield, Captain Marvel unexpectedly obliterated the Sanctuary too, leaving Stark surprised. Having recovered from his earlier incapacitation, Stark turned to Strange, who, visibly shocked, indicated that this was the single timeline he foresaw leading to victory. Finally comprehending why Strange sacrificed the Time Stone 5 years ago to spare his life and realizing what needed to be done, Stark briefly seized Thanos' arm, holding onto the Nano Gauntlet, but was knocked aside. Thanos arrogantly declared himself inevitable before executing another snap of his fingers. Self-sacrifice. Despite appearing to have secured victory in the battle for the Nano Gauntlet, nothing transpired when Thanos snapped his fingers. Upon Thanos' gaze shifting towards Stark, he disclosed that he had transferred all 6 Infinity Stones to his Iron Man armor. Shocking Thanos with this revelation, Stark affixed all 6 Infinity Stones onto the knuckles of his hand, feeling the surging energy envelop his body. With all the stones at his disposal, Stark faced Thanos once more, declaring himself as Iron Man before taking a profound breath. Having settled the matter, Stark snapped his fingers in front of Thanos, witnessing the disintegration of all surrounding troops and armies. Accepting his inevitable defeat, Thanos sat down and crumbled to ash. As a mere mortal wielding the powers of the universe, the catastrophic force of the snap charred the right side of Stark's face and body. Collapsing amidst the debris of the Avengers compound, the combined toll of gamma radiation and raw energy from the Infinity Stones proved too much for him. War Machine approached Stark, discovering the severity of his injuries from the stones just as Spider-Man arrived. Parker attempted to contact Stark, who was slowly resisting but began experiencing pain. After learning they had won the battle, Parker was escorted away by Rhodes, prompting Pepper Potts to try reaching out to Stark. Stark softly greeted Potts as his last words, prompting her to ask Friday to check his vitals. Potts assured Stark that he could rest now, eliciting a smile from him before his passing. Holding Potts' hand, Stark glanced towards his right, allowing his arc reactor to lose its power. As the Iron Man armor powered down, Stark peacefully succumbed to his sacrifice, surrounded by Potts, War Machine, and Spider-Man. Thor and Captain America observed, both devastated and honored by Stark's selfless act to save the universe. Witnessing this, the Avengers, the Guardians of the Galaxy, and Captain Marvel took a knee to pay homage to the legacy of Stark and his noble sacrifice. Funeral and tributes. Stark's self-sacrifice became the salvation of Earth, ensuring the ongoing survival of all life in the known universe. However, the impact of his death resonated deeply with his friends and family. Those closest to Stark were particularly affected, having witnessed his demise firsthand. Given their significant relationships with him, a week after his passing, a recorded message from Stark to his wife and daughter, created before the time heist, was shared with them in the presence of Happy Hogan, James Rhodes, Steve Rogers, Bruce Banner, Thor, and Clint Barton, all of whom Stark considered akin to close family. Stark's funeral took place at the Stark Eco Compound, where he was mourned by his family, the Avengers, Guardians of the Galaxy, Doctor Strange and Wong, the Van Dyne family, T'Challa and his sister and general, Nick Fury, Maria Hill, Thaddeus Ross, May Parker, Barton's family, and Harley Keener. The original arc reactor, initially gifted to Potts as proof Tony Stark has a heart, adorned a wreath set adrift on the lake. Following the funeral, Hogan asked Morgan if she was hungry, and she expressed a desire for a cheeseburger. Recalling Stark's first post-Afghanistan request, Hogan vowed to fulfill Morgan's wish for cheeseburgers in her father's absence as a way of looking after her. Worldwide impact. The global impact and overwhelming sorrow following Tony Stark's death were monumental. Worldwide, Stark's memory and the legacy he forged as an Avenger was commemorated through various expressions of art, media, and merchandise. Cities like New York, Venice, and Prague featured murals honoring Stark. Among the tributes was Heart of Iron, the Tony Stark story, a biographical film celebrating Stark and his enduring impact, produced shortly after his demise. The void left by Stark as the world's most renowned superhero sparked speculation about his successor, a topic explored by Quentin Beck. Stark's protege, Peter Parker, strove to uphold his mentor's reputation, although Happy Hogan noted that no one, not even Stark himself, could fully live up to his name. A year after Stark's passing, arrangements were completed to designate Spider-Man as a part of Stark's legacy. Equipped with the Edith AI, Parker gained control over Stark Industries' weapons, drones, inventions, and electronic devices. Nick Fury, on vacation, instructed Talos to deliver the glasses to Parker. After Parker's identity as Spider-Man was revealed, an article dubbed him Iron Man Jr., and his reputation suffered despite legal assistance from Matt Murdock. Hogan, eager to defend Stark's legacy, was cautioned by Murdock about the need for legal representation during the investigation into missing Stark technology. And that, my friends, is the life of Tony Stark, aka Iron Man. Let us know what you thought of it down in the comments, and make sure you like and subscribe if you want to see more videos like this. Thanks for watching, and from all of us here at Cinematica, we'll see you next time.